Hello and welcome in, boyos. It is time for an off-season podcast. It is the January podcast of the boys of summer. It's been a minute. So, Eric, how we doing?
Oh, I'm ready, man. I am hyped. I'm ready to go. I'm in baseball mode, especially after my guys Notre Dame had a very great season. Come
We
to an
already
end.
to rep the gear coming off that big loss. Didn't even
Oh
stand
fuck yeah.
a chance in that game.
I'm proud of them boys. I'm proud of them boys. But my head's turned totally to baseball now. I can almost hear the whips of the cracks of the bat and the something of the mitt. The whips of the mitt. I'm ready to go, man. I'm ready for spring. I'm excited. And the funny thing is, I don't know about you. I really don't watch much spring baseball, and I do that for a reason. It's not that I'm not excited for baseball and I'm like not in the mood. I'll watch a few innings here and there, especially if the Cubs have like a big prospect up. But I just love opening day so much. And when I don't watch much baseball in spring and I just kind of wait till opening day, it just feels like I don't know why. Like I don't want to oversaturate myself with spring ball as much as I would like to. But man, dude, opening day is like my favorite day of the
Oh,
year.
I feel like it's not even close between week one, opening day, like opening tip,
Oh,
NBA season. Like it doesn't
love it,
compare. There's
man.
just something different about opening day of baseball. There's just
Yeah.
aura to it. And I kind of like stat tracking that day because it's like you have that one pitcher that pitches well or the one guy that hits 200 home runs. You're like, well, he's on pace for 340
Everyone in the chat, when their dude does anything, it's like,
324
oh,
home runs
oh.
and all that kind of stuff. And then you be in first place, you take the screenshots, you say never gonna
Yep.
relinquish it and whatever else.
I
And
still remember like 2 years ago, Scherzer like gave up a few home runs, and I remember Chad going in there like, "Oh, Scherzer getting up," and then that was the year he ended up like winning Cy Young or like having 20 wins. And I'm like, these opening day, you gotta love opening day overreactions, but
I
you also
believe
gotta
Ian
love opening
Happ
day.
hit a leadoff home run one year, and I remember
Yep.
having him in one league, being like, "All right." And I think that was an early game. I think the Cubs were
Yeah.
like to play that day, so I was like, "All right, first place, thank you, Ian Happ."
Fuck yeah. It's nice
And
seeing it up there for a little bit when you're in the hundreds early in the rotos. Oh yeah, or when you stay
yeah,
there all the time, like me and you.
exactly. Well, not everybody can just always perennially be in the top three, just basically every year, like some people are in Roto. So, some people got to take advantage of those maybe 1 or 2 days at the start of the year where maybe they get hot early. But anyway, let's talk about the baseball season and the off season, which we are currently in. Reactions to the MLB off season. What do you got for me?
Well, I mean, everyone went to the Dodgers, right? No, I mean
Warriors,
pretty much. It's a
is now the
it's
time to get fired up about it?
yeah.
Do we want
I'm
to get
ex
fired up on this pod about how pissed we are?
Yeah. No, I honestly like I love that. Again, another thing I love about baseball is I love the baseball offseason. I hate the way NBA does it. I hate the way the NFL does it with everything flying.
Really?
I could
Well, that's a
not keep
hot
up.
take because a lot of people prefer it to just all be one and have all
Totally.
the stars signed right away.
Instant gratification society. I totally get it. But it's one of those things where I love the fact that from November to literally still now, 2, 3 weeks before spring training, any day could have news of trades or signings or
Yeah,
this or that. And
there's
there's
always
something.
something to talk about.
Yeah, and exactly. There's a life to it. There is nothing I love more than listening to like baseball radio in the off season. Like
Mhm.
NFL off season doesn't hit as much. Whatever. The MLB off season radio it is amazing. I love it. And no, I just love the way they do. I hate it was so I don't know about you, dude. It was so hard keeping track of NFL free agency this year. Like I couldn't like look away for 10 minutes without three more. And I'm like, I don't even know who went where. I mean, I was like, holy crap, this is nuts.
Yeah,
Go baseball.
yeah. Who outside the Dodgers, you have anybody that's having like a really good offseason or really bad offseason from a team standpoint?
I think surprise. I really kind of like what the Diamondbacks have been doing. I know they're in the West with the Dodgers, and it's got to be very hard for those teams to keep trying to. Because I mean, it's going to be tough to for them to compete year in and year. I mean, they got it. You're fighting for a wild card. I mean, there's going to be years you never know they can win a division, but I do like the Diamondbacks trying to stay competitive and doing what they're doing. But
Mhm.
I mean, it's tough because again, a lot of these top fish have gone to the Dodgers, and it makes it really tough. But I really like the move they made. Corbin Burns, man, that's a big deal.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, it's a pretty big quality signing. I wonder how Tyler feels about that. It's going to be more of a hitter-friendly ballpark, way more so than Camden Yards was certainly the last
Yeah.
year. So, could see a little bit of an ERA spike for Corbin Burns. We've seen the fastball velocity for him decrease over the last 4 years or so. So, does Corbin Burns still have ace stuff left in the tank? Yes, is he still top five pitcher, or is he going to fall into Gallon land? Yeah, that's gonna be a new adjective we might have to unveil this
Gallenland.
year. the non-ace territory, but we shall see. I don't really have a whole lot of hot takes from the MLB offseason. I mean, there's still a lot of guys that have yet to sign. I obviously love the acquisition of Kyle Tucker from the Cubs. But I don't
Oh
feel
yeah.
like there's really a team that's really standing out to me being like, yeah, man, they really won the offseason, or they really lost the offseason or
I
anything like
like what the Yankees did to respond to losing Soto. I mean, losing Soto was really rough, but for them to basically get
trying to
Bellinger for nothing.
recreate it in the aggregate, as some might say.
You're right. I mean, they got Bellinger, they got Freed. I know some people think he might be on a little bit of a downward spiral. I mean, they were out there making moves. I mean, I knew they were going to respond quickly after they lost Soto, and that's got to be tough. I mean, that's got to think into Cubs fans' memories right now, because if Kyle Tucker has a year and then gone with all the prospects we gave up, that's going to bite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sure is. We'll talk more about the Cubs later. I think we'll probably put aside some time later in the pod, talk about the Cubs. Maybe we'll have put away some time at the end to talk about the MLB CBA.
There
Salary
we go.
cap, salary floor. Maybe I have some takes on that. But let's jump into the boys this summer.
Let's do it.
We have a draft date finally. I know some guys aren't happy with it, that it's too late, and
Ooh!
I know, I know. I was warming up to the idea of drafting a little bit earlier, but I'm certainly not going to draft in January, not going to draft in early February. And anything after like the second week of February, I was kind of open to, but we just didn't have the availability for it. But we found a date where all 14 of us can draft on and be there for it. So that was the first priority. Wasn't going to try and sacrifice, make somebody do it on their phone or not be able to attend, just so you guys can draft and trade your teams away and all that kind of stuff early. That shit can wait. You got plenty of time. If you want to make trades, go make trades now. But we got Sunday, March 16th at 7:15 p.m. Central Time. So look forward to seeing you guys all there. Maybe Chris will be in town for it. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple others will be in town. My place is always open for anybody who wants to come over and draft from here. Some high-speed
Sunday
internet.
makes that kind of tough. I know I haven't been able to make it in
Yeah,
the past,
yeah,
but yeah, Sunday makes that kind of
that's
tough.
true. Because it's Sunday. Well, St. Patrick's Day is the next day, though. Do we have school on St. Patrick's Day?
We do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we probably do.
Our school's wild. Our spring break's not till late April, so
Oh, wow, that is late.
it coincides with Easter.
So anyway, Erica, before we jump into like the teams and the transactions and all that kind of stuff, let's talk about what we see from this current landscape of the league. Last year was our big reset year, as some might call it. We had a lot of players going off the board. A lot of the big names got signed to contracts that maybe won't be kept this year. But the way the landscape's kind of looking, and you can kind of even enter the draft room, or you can kind of go to free agency to see what's there. What is your takeaway about what are you expecting to be available this year?
It's interesting because now that we've been through a cycle of this and we're kind of seeing, certain things like, is there tendencies? Is there this? Because for most of us, I mean, this was our first 3, 4 years ever doing a keeper baseball league, and it was kind of cool to see like what difference was the first draft compared to the second draft, compared to with the A contracts, the B con. So I think we're starting to see a little bit of a trend because this has happened before. If we go back and look at the podcast a few years ago, I think we went into one of these drafts saying, "Wow, there is no pitching."
Yeah,
I mean, literally, there is no pit. Wow, there's no pitching. Okay, wow. We went into a podcast very similar to this one, saying the same thing. I
yeah,
do think hitter wise, there's a little bit more length. I think you
yeah,
can get very solid everyday players pretty far throughout, but the superstars aren't really there, and that's where it's going to be tough. I do think this is a better draft than the famous Cedric Mullins, and I forget who the other big one was, that Michael
Michael
Harris.
Harris.
Michael, I do think there's better than that. I will say that. I don't think we're
Yeah,
that thin, but it's still, and you're always going to find gems. We know this. You're going to find two, and that's the beauty of baseball. You're
yeah.
going to find guys for $2, $3. They're going to be huge, and we don't see it now. But right now, it's slim pickings. If you don't have many superstars on your team, you're sweating a little bit, I think.
Yeah, and it was supposed to be then a couple more that also got injured too. I mean, Acuna and Strider were supposed to headline this draft too. Well, I guess Strider was available 2 years ago, and Acuna was available last year, but now we're seeing that both of them are going to not be ready for spring training. So we'll have to see if that kind of drives their price down. If we look at their ADP, I mean, Strider is being drafted behind Joe Ryan, Grayson Rodriguez from last year. So, Strider's kind of down there. And Acuna, he's averaging an ADP of 22. So kind of midway through the second round, kind of late second round pick there for Acuna, which His 1 year as of this time last year, we were looking at him being like, what did he put up? Was it 40-40?
Yeah,
Yeah, 41 homers and 76
47.
stolen bases. That's right, 40-70. How could I forget? In that season. So it's just like, well, coming off a second ACL tear in his
Yeah.
other knee, I don't know if he's going to steal 73 bases this year. So, what are you willing to pay for that? But yeah, I mean, if I go down, this is all the hitters ranked, and you have your Tatis, your Julio, Acuna. Okay, those are solid baseball players, obviously. Those are guys that can win you a league that are five
Yep.
category contributors and all that kind of stuff. But then, our fourth best hitter, Jackson Merrill, in his second year. James Wood, unproven. O'Neal Cruz has his flaws, although I have a soft spot
He's
for
got
O'Neal.
that ceiling, man. He's way on
He
the
does
floor,
have
but
that
he's got
ceiling.
that ceiling.
And it doesn't take long to be like, wait, are you saying Ian Happ is the 10th best
Right.
player available?
Yeah.
The 15th best player available, Jordan Westberg? And
And there was and Jordan Westberg, there was a point last year, Kyle. I mean, on my team, I had Westberg and Hap. Westberg was like the guy I was flipping in and out of my lineup, like,
yeah,
he can go and he can that. And like you said, he's the 15th best guy available right now. Now, granted, there's not been some guys thrown back in, but
yeah,
we'll talk about what we think on that situation. But it's not
we
a
can
ton.
here in a little bit.
I do think there's a little bit of length. Like if you keep scrolling down, and I do think that again, you're seeing okay average everyday players, but are you spending $20 on guys like that?
Yeah, I mean, we have your Rafaelas, your Burlesons, your Parker Meadows, Colt Keith, Michael Bush,
Michael
Robles,
Bush.
Blade. Like those guys are probably going to be in lines. They're going to have to be, based on what we've
Oh
seen this
yeah.
year. What I noticed big time about this draft is a lot of those names I mentioned: Tatis, Julio, Acuna, Merrill, Wood, O'Neal Cruz, Santander, Doyle. What do they all have in common?
Well, injury histories for sure for
You're,
most of
they're
them.
outfielders.
Yeah, they're out. Yeah.
Outfield is a little bit deep. Outfield is where basically all these guys play. But if you look at first base, and if you go into this draft needing a first baseman, here's your best first baseman available: Alec Boehm, who hit 15
Yep.
home runs last year. You need dingers
Goldschmidt.
from your first baseman. You can't get 15 home runs from your starting first baseman. Paul Goldschmidt coming off 22 home runs.
Yeah.
Toglia, Burleson, Bush, Connor Wong, Andrew Vaughn. Ugh. I
That's
don't,
why
I
I'm
don't
surprised
need a
Crimmy didn't want some Vlad on his team, man.
I was like, first base, and then you go to second base. The top second baseman, Bryce Terang. Okay, like if you need speed, Bryce Terang's solid. He stole 50 bases last year. Everybody who's going to want steals is going to be going after Terang. But then the second base, Westberg, Garcia.
Yeah.
Second base isn't that great. It has some depth to it. I mean, then you have Jimenez,
It's
Glaber,
always been a pretty thin
Rafaela,
position fantasy wise, though, for sure.
Colt
Yeah.
Keith. Yeah, I mean, all those guys are startable. Third base, Lawrence Butler, Mark Vientos, Jordan Westberg, Alec Boehm, Willie Castro, Connor Norby.
I was expecting Alex Bregman to be in there, but that changed.
Yeah, third base is thin. Shortstop, you have O'Neal Cruz, Zach Neto, Bogarts, Bichette, Xavier Edwards. You could find a shortstop here, especially if you need a little bit of speed. But, it's infield. Holy cow, is it thin? And catcher is
And
just catcher.
and I know I brought this up last year, I think in the after draft show, and I think I even did it a little bit before when I looked at a lot of the ADPs and stuff. I know we're not a drafting league, and I get that. And I know some people wonder, this and that. But when you're talking about when you start getting to ADP 200, you're talking about 14th round.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about this should technically be the 14th best player on your team. I know it
Mhm.
doesn't always work out that way, but if everything was parity and we all drafted from scratch, right, we would be at around ADP 200
Yeah.
at round 14.
Yep.
So if that's your third or fourth guy you're taking, right, I mean, that's it's tough. It's tough,
Mhm.
especially if you don't have many keepers. If you have 12 keepers and that's your third or fourth guy, sure, because your 12 keepers are good. But if you only have 7, 8 dudes and you don't have superstars, and that's now your eighth, ninth, 10th best player on your team, that's when you're going to be thin.
Yeah.
And I think I noticed more so than ever last year in the league, people's rosters were thin. They
Yeah.
were thin. It's
I
tough.
agree. And then as I'm combing through some of these rosters, the other thing I noticed, as you mentioned it, is the pitching. And a lot of these teams like have some pitching depth. Like, I know Peter's got a solid pitching team, but like Justin has decent depth. Chad has decent depth. Like they have some, some starters that maybe not frontline starters, but then you're like, okay, this team really needs an ace.
Yeah.
Well, where are you going to find that ace?
Yeah.
because your top pitchers, Hunter Green, Castillo, Glasnow, Schwellenbach, Grayson Rodriguez. I don't consider any of those guys really aces. I mean, Castillo's been a borderline ace for a long time,
But he's had down years
3.4
too. Yeah.
ERA, but he's not bringing you the strikeouts he used to. He's not bringing you the ERA, 3.64 ERA, and ironically, he's never brought you the whip, and now all of a sudden he's kind of bringing the whip the last couple of years.
And the odd man out. And he wants to pitch in Seattle. If he gets traded to a Boston or New York, that only hurts his value.
Yeah, because Seattle's a very pitcher-friendly ballpark. If he were to go to Yankee Stadium, that might be over for him. So yeah, I mean, I don't really have a lot of faith in like any of these guys being like, oh, I can draft this, and I know this person's going to be a top 10 pitcher.
Right.
I don't think
No
that's
certainty.
fair. As long as they're healthy. I mean, I guess Strider down there is a guy where it's just like if he's healthy, he'll be in the top 10, but I think he's already not going to be ready for opening day.
Sasaki's and that's the thing. Like, how much does Sasaki get spent on? Jared Jones is in there,
Yeah.
so I think there is some decent. But again, if this is your two or three in your rotation, and you're taking Ronaldo Lopez and Shane Manaea as your two or three
Some
starting
people need a
pitchers,
one and a two.
yeah, and that's my point is I don't think some of these, and I agree with you. I know we talked about this during the draft last year. I like we're gonna when we get to your team, for example, or whoever has bets now. Who has Mookie Betts?
I do.
Looking at his stats, I don't think he's a $55 player.
Yeah.
But in our league, if you throw him back in, someone's going to pay $50 for him.
Yep.
And that's kind of my point. Like it makes it really tough, but that's what makes the league fun. It's
Yeah.
crazy because I don't think his stats were worth $55 last year. And
Mhm.
maybe and I think you may I don't know if you'd agree with that, but
No.
you're also not
Yeah,
throwing him back
I
in.
mean, I do agree. Yeah.
You're not going to throw him back into the Wolves because they're look how many teams have money. Someone's going to spend $50 to get Mookie Betts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And that's
if there's
what's
nothing
tough
else
about it.
available, especially from an infield standpoint, he's eligible at second base and shortstop.
Right.
Not to mention outfield, which outfield's usually tough to fill anyway.
Austin Riley's another one. Is Austin Riley's stats last year worth $40?
Yeah,
No.
we'll kind of get to him here in a sec. So that's kind of our player pool here. Now here's what we can do. We'll go to our player pool here.
Right.
And I can kind of sort this because Fantrax is incredible by our hitters and pitchers. And I can kind of sort them by their current contracts. Let's change this to last year's stats and we'll say all the players in the league. All right, so here's our list of all the players in the league sorted by their kind of contracts because the high contracts are most likely to be thrown back because you're not going to
Right.
throw back the $5 guys. And
Sure.
if you are, then they're garbage anyway. Bobby Witt, he'll be kept. Soto, he'll be kept. Aaron Judge, I imagine Peter's going to keep Aaron Judge. Yeah, at 51. He's an ADP2 overall, 58 homers last year, 144 RBIs. You keep that. But then you get to Mookie Betts, like you said. Yeah, no, I'm not dying to keep Mookie Betts at 51. I'm not being like, ooh, look at what I have. He's really
Sure.
good. Like Mookie Betts could probably be had in trade for not much value because I don't really value a guy at that kind of value that much. But last year, in 450 at bats, he has 75 runs, 19 homers, 75 RBIs, 16 stolen bases, and a 372 on base percentage. That does not scream $51 to me, certainly. But like you said, the replacement cost of what he would go for in the auction is more than that.
Right.
Uh,
Someone's going to spend 50. Yeah.
Freddie Freeman will probably be available. He's not a $47 player, so I guess we can add him to the player pool.
But that's my thing though. You just said how thin first base is. There's teams with money. Someone's going to spend 40 on him.
Yeah,
Someone's going to spend
probably.
$42, $43 on Freddie Freeman.
I think
So,
that Jordan won't though, because I think he's kind of got his money tied up
you
in
think so? Yeah, he does have a lot of money tied up. Yeah.
So because he acquired Jordan Alvarez for
Yeah.
46. So I can't imagine.
And that was the one with me where I was like, man, I could keep Jordan. I think he's a dog, but at the same time, I was like, do I pay 46 for him? And that's where I was kind of like, it was tough.
So yeah, he's gonna keep Jordan. Chad's gonna keep Kyle Tucker. So Otani kept. You're gonna keep Jose Ramirez. So Austin Riley, like, I don't think he's a $40 player, especially the way he played last year. He didn't even hit
Sure.
21 runs last year. Granted, he was hurt. He only had 425 at bats. If he played the full season, he would have hit 20. And he heated up towards the end of last year and kind of got back to normal towards the end of last year. He just kind of ran out of time. But if anybody looks at this, especially like there's some teams out there like Dex's team who has all this money to spend, who doesn't really have studs on his roster, like it's maybe he just swings a trade for a guy like that. I don't know. I messaged him this morning about it. So yeah, I think it would make sense. Devers, he's gonna be kept. Dane traded for him. Corbin Carroll kept. Olson, maybe 37. I don't know.
Right.
Trey Turner probably kept by Justin. Pete Alonso by Peter or
I think that's a tough one. Yeah, I mean
on the fence. He had a down year last year,
Tyler's a
3,400
big Alonso guy, I think, though.
yards. He is an Alonso guy, but he does have depth at first base. He's got Berger,
Right.
he's got Pasquantino, and he also has a third baseman as well.
I think Robert gets thrown back in, but is he even
Yeah.
worth 35? You know?
Yeah, and you'll keep Vlad, you'll keep Schwarber.
Yeah.
Yeah, Seager you traded for. I'm gonna imagine you're gonna keep him, and Rosarena will probably be thrown back, another outfielder. But
Right.
now we're kind of already down into, you know, that added what, maybe two top 50 guys to the player
Yeah.
pool.
And arguably some could be, you never know, right? But maybe we, yeah, two, three guys we added in that list. Yeah.
Hmm.
And that's hitters, right? That was no pitchers, but
Yeah. So
I
I
don't
guess
know.
go
I
with pitchers.
yeah,
I don't know. Peter's curious because he's got Garrett Cole for 46.
right.
I mean, at this point, I wouldn't be in favor of keeping Garrett Cole for 46, but maybe
No,
he listens to the pod and goes, I don't want Garrett
I
Cole to be the one ace that's available.
I
And
do think more pitchers get thrown back in, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're ace. Like Gauze, like Lopez probably gets thrown back in based
I
on the
think
year he had
Lopez
last year.
doesn't because I think that Lopez, I heard from the grapevine that Lopez has been hard to acquire via trade.
Oh
So
wow.
it
Okay. Well,
sounds
then there
like
you go.
Lopez might be kept.
You got
Um,
that inside info.
Burns probably kept. Cole, I think Peter probably just keeps Cole.
I think he does too. Peter kind of sometimes goes against the grain. I think he's just going to keep him.
I don't think Krim should keep Nola, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did.
He just doesn't
No,
have enough superstars. He
yeah.
needs guys.
Gausman will probably be thrown back for 35. Gallon,
Gallen probably.
maybe. Maybe thrown back. Webb is probably going to be kept. I mean, if he
I
traded,
had Webb and I traded him to Jordan in that trade, and that's where
yeah,
that was him and Jordan were my two expensive guys that I was like, if I had to get rid of two guys, those were the two that I was keen on trading because I was right on the fence with them.
So I mean, maybe guys do change their tune. Maybe Webb gets thrown back. Bobby Miller thrown back. Maybe Peralta 31. Maybe he gets thrown back. I'd probably just keep him for the strikeouts. Framber Valdez 31.
I'm saying there's really nobody. I mean,
Probably
it's not
keep
much.
that. Musgrove, but yeah, it's tough times to need pitching. So we can kind of use some of that to kind of gear some of our conversations about how we view some of these teams. Because the way I've always looked at players is I look at what their actual value is. If a guy is, if I have him for 30 and I think he'd go for 20 in the, or go for 40 in the draft, I feel like that's $10 value. And then I value that more than I value just the names in general this time of the offseason. So, do you want to do trades one by one? You want to do them all together, or how do you want to do
Don't
trades
matter to me. We can do that. I don't know how many there's been in the off season. Has there been five
here?
or six?
There's been one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, 8 trades.
Eight trades. Okay.
We'll just go through the trades now. Nothing like too, well, there's one kind of that's a little bit groundbreaking, but we'll start with the furthest one away, which is Isaac Paredes for Ha-Seong Kim. At this point in the offseason, Isaac Paredes was still a Cub. This was on November 20th. Traded him for Ha-Seong Kim. This was by Dana. Dana, welcome back to the league. And with that, I like this move for Dana. I think when he
Yeah.
was a Cub, he wasn't really too valuable. He didn't play well with the Cubs, but going to the Astros and hitting balls over the Crawford boxes in left field, that's a huge win for Dana. I've tried to acquire Isaac Paredes from him actually, and he was a deal breaker in a trade with me and Dana. So, huge win for Dana here. I don't think that Ha-Seong Kim is necessarily a keeper at $9. So I think it's a big win here.
Especially without a home right now. And I think Kim's going to miss the first month of the season, as far as I know. I like him a lot, but Paredes in that situation where he's at, he's going to start every day and he's going to be in that lineup hitting behind, Altuve and possibly if Bregman comes back and all those guys. So Astros lineup's going to take a little bit of a hit, but I think Paredes fits in, like you said, perfectly there. So I like this move a lot. He's one of those why not keepers. I mean, like you said earlier, when you have guys that are $1, $2, $3, if you don't have keepers, but they are guys that are in that range. Just keep them. I mean, just
Yeah.
$4 or $5. Yep, there's another roster spot, and I think Paredes falls into that category. I think Kim would too, but he's got to find a home. And if they say he missed 2 months, do you keep him? I mean, and that's where it's tough. So I like that move for Dana for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think huge win. So I think that's a big win by Dana. I'd give Dana probably an A here. Turn a keeper into from a non-keeper into a keeper. Krim, I'll give a D here. Maybe even not because you just gave up an asset and didn't really get one back, I feel. So,
Yeah.
next move, which is you making a pretty big deal, I'd say a mild, medium-sized deal with our reigning champion, Jordan,
Yeah.
where
We
you,
just faced each other 2 weeks earlier and they're like, hey, you want to swap some players?
yeah. I guess we didn't really. We probably should. We haven't potted. Did we? Did we have a end of the season pod? I don't
I
think we.
don't can't remember. I don't think so. We
I
did a
guess yeah.
playoff
Maybe
one.
congratulations, Jordan. Fuck you. We have
Silver medal. Woo.
we sent Spencer Steer, Carlos Rodon, and Bryson Stott, and you got Vlad back. What were you thinking here?
Here, I looked at Stott as a keeper almost all season, but towards the end, he really, really trailed off. And he was one of those guys where I know I'm going into this draft with a lot of salary. I might be going in with the most or second most in the league. Stott was just one of those guys I could not keep at 19. And to be
Mhm.
fair, so kind of was Rodon. Rodon was another one of those guys where I was like, man, I like him. He's going to get your 200 Ks. He kind of bounced back last year, but there's
$15 for Rodon.
right. It's one of those things where it's like, could I have kept him? Sure. But the way I looked at it was, again, Steer I would have kept as well, but I looked at Stott I'm not keeping. So I looked at it as Rodon and Steer essentially for Vlad, and to get a superstar bat, pretty much first round pick talent, and Vlad in a contract year in a position like you said that is pretty not a whole lot of depth. Even though I did have Steer, but I gotta jump on that. My offense was loaded last year, so to be able to almost get like another superstar and unload some salary I wasn't planning on keeping, I think it was a win-win move. And I liked it for Jordan too, because I don't think any of the players he got back are bad. I personally wouldn't keep Stott. I think you can make an argument for Rodon, but I think it was a decent trade.
Yeah, you loved that value for Stott for the longest time. You were
I
patting
did.
yourself
I mean,
on the
dude,
back.
if you look at his first 3 months, one of the best second basemen in
Yeah.
baseball, though he
Mhm.
was. He killed it, and then he just
Yeah.
fell off the face. And I still like him in the lineup. If he hit second and or first in that, I mean, that would be nasty. But
Yeah. Still contributor. I mean, still productive, but only 65 runs scored, 11 homers, 32 steals will play, but for $19, I'd
I
rather.
did not need the steals. I was
Yeah,
the last guy that
that's
needed
true.
steals.
That's true. I was surprised to see that Carlos Rodon actually pitched 175 innings last year. That
He
actually
ended up
was,
being really solid after a shaky start,
yeah,
and that's where I was like,
3.96 ERA, 1.22 WHIP, and the strikeouts, 195 is a decent amount of strikeouts, but
that's what I'm saying. I was kind of on the fence. I almost looked at it as I was giving up Stott for Vlad, kind of, because I don't know if I would have kept Rodon.
I
I
mean,
don't know.
Carlos Rodon in this auction would be the what, maybe eighth, ninth best pitcher. He
Yeah,
probably goes for more than 19
I
at a
agree. That's what I'm saying. That's why I wouldn't say he's not a keeper either.
Yeah, I'll let's see here. I'll give both parties a B plus here. Yeah, I think that both kind of got something desirable. I mean, Vlad, huge bounce back season last year. So his contract ended up being a pretty decent bargain. So I think you both did pretty solid there. A good
Can't
exchange of
complain.
assets there. Solid deal. Next, we have Jordan making another move with you. Just, what was it? 7 days later, you guys just couldn't get enough. You went back for seconds.
I
You
sure
gave up
did.
Logan Webb and Yordan Alvarez and got back Bryce Miller. So now you took another one of his pitchers back, or you took.
Yeah, I like Bryce Miller a lot, and I know he's not on my team, which will be another follow up trade. But I really like Bryce Miller a ton. And again, I just mentioned earlier, Logan Webb, yes, looking at the out like what it's looking like, Logan Webb probably easily goes for $30 in this draft. Jordan again probably goes for that much. But again, I had so many big contracts on my team. There was no way I could just sit all off season and keep them all. So I felt like this move made sense. Obviously, he's getting two super high caliber players, but I felt like the contract I got back and Bobby Miller was good. Then I kind of flipped around for some more offense next. So
Bryce Miller, not Bobby Miller.
sorry,
Um,
Bryce Miller. Yeah, Bryce Miller.
But yeah, I mean, it's funny because you look at the stats, and man, Bryce Miller was basically better in every single category than Logan Webb last year, which wasn't really expected. You talk
Yeah.
to people that are like in analytics people, and they're not impressed with the offerings that Bryce Miller has. But he's just kind of one of those guys that defines the peripherals and gets results. So I mean, I'm not a huge Bryce Miller fan, but I mean, I'm not going to argue with a $13 guy with a sub 3 ERA and a
Yeah.
damn near one
He'd go
whip.
for $25 in the draft, I
Oh
think.
yeah, easily. I
Yeah,
mean,
easily.
whether you're buying what he did or not, I mean, it's just that is what
Right.
it is. So to give up Jordan Alvarez, who's a fringe $46 guy, that's pretty expensive, and Logan Webb, who is a solid pitcher for 33. I don't know.
And
Uh,
what killed me last year was strikeouts, and Logan Webb's not a strikeout guy. And
yeah,
again, it's one of those things like if I'm going to have $35 into a
way less than a
pitcher,
strikeout inning.
yeah, I need to get some strikeouts.
Yeah. I'm gonna give you another. I'm gonna give you an A minus here because I wouldn't love keeping Jordan and I wouldn't love keeping Webb, and as much as I don't love Bryce Miller, I mean he's still certainly a solid keeper. So I think you did really well here. Jordan's gonna get a D here.
Oh wow, okay. He's gonna love to hear that.
Yeah, he loves getting a
He's
D.
just getting more speech ammo apparently, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Next, we have you flipping Bryce Miller for Corey Seager. So even though you acquired Bryce Miller, I gave you a good grade there. I don't like this move at all. I don't like
No.
you acquiring Corey Seager
And
uh,
you're such a Corey
44.
Seager fan. That's surprising to hear. Me and
$44.
you are
I like
usually
the player. I like what he provides, but not always from a fantasy perspective because he's always hurt, it seems. There's always at least one IL stint. I guess you can still pencil in 30 home runs and I guess maybe like 80 RBIs, but you're getting no speed at all, basically no steals. The
I don't
runs
need that though.
scored, not great. He's just kind of one of those at value players I don't really love. He's just, yeah, every year he's a $35 player, and I feel like
He's
his
one of those
stats
guys,
are,
though, and I know we say it every year, and it's the big what if. If he plays 150 games,
hmm.
he easily makes it past that what he's worth. It's just you might only get 120, 125 out of him, which makes it
And,
tough.
and if Jacob DeGrom starts 35 games this year,
Yeah, right. And it's one of those tough things too, because that Texas lineup, that Texas team last year was like an anomaly. Like they obviously made the World Series the year before, and then like what the fuck happened to the Texas Rangers? I think Corey Seager is your perfect candidate really for a big bounce back year.
Mhm.
And not even that he did bad last year. I just
Yeah.
feel like people kind of forgot about him a little bit. I think this is kind of that perfect storm for a bounce back year in that lineup.
Yeah, I don't know. I like the value of Bryce Miller a
Sure.
lot
Oh yeah.
more than the value of Corey Seager. Especially for an off-season trade, maybe an in-season trade, it makes a little bit more sense. Well, an
Right.
in-season trade, I actually think Seager comes out ahead, but I would rather have Bryce Miller and the extra $20 to than Corey Seager at that value. Plus, I also just think that Corey Seager's skill set is easily replaced in the draft. I mean, finding a guy
And
that hits home runs like isn't really that hard
I
to
will
find.
say I'm also a little cursed because I will say this, Kyle. There was a few years ago I did not trade a cheap Seattle Mariners pitcher
Hmm.
coming off a Cy Young award, and I did not make that move, and it absolutely derailed my next season. I did not trade
Yeah,
Robbie Ray at six
yeah.
dollars
For
to
Aaron
your
Judge.
father for Aaron Judge. Yeah, and that's going to be burned in the back of my mind forever. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to trade the Mariners pitcher this time. I'm going to get Corey Seager, and he's going to go out there and win AL MVP. So we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, if Ellie De La Cruz, oh, you're going to have an interesting roster crunch though with these third basemen and shortstops. I guess we'll have
Oh,
to
I
get
love it.
a little bit, but I do love the pairing of Corey Seager and Ellie De La Cruz though. Pairing those two together, if you combine those two stat lines, then you really have something special there.
And Jose Ramirez and Vlad.
Yeah, well, yeah, whatever. Next we have the Wahoo
Pair
Man
anyone together, it's great.
and Chad making a surprising trade. So Justin getting on the board here with Chad. Chad's been itching to make moves all offseason. Giving up Bryce Harper. I was surprised to see Bryce
I
Harper coming
was
up
too.
the best player
Yeah.
on the deal here. So Bryce Harper, he's going to be a $31 C player here. He's been one of our better values ever since he was drafted hurt a couple years ago. But Justin had to give up Jack Flaherty, who's a $1 B contract here. And he had to give up Jake Cronenworth, who's another $1 player here, $1 player here to acquire Bryce Harper. So here's like where the two alternating universes, the two heads kind of go head to head here. I don't know how to describe this. I don't have the right metaphor, but do you prefer getting the player or do you prefer the value that was had here? What do you make of this trade?
It's tough in the league landscape because I do think it matters for each team. I do think sometimes you have to look at your team and see, does this make sense for me based on what I have compared. Maybe I wouldn't make a move compared to a move Justin would make or something like that. But what I've noticed, and this has happened, I know we talked a little bit about this pre-show. Jay, former league member, two drafts in a row came in with like no money whatsoever, barely even participated in the draft and won the league. So I'm not saying that's made my mind up, but the more I'm looking at it, and that's kind of going back to my Seager trade, taking on some salary over Miller.
Mhm.
Better players matter. Better players matter. And I'm not saying that the two guys that were back aren't going to be good, but Flaherty is an injury concern. He bounced back last year, came out of nowhere. Granted, he's a $1 contract. We love
Yeah, I
him.
mean,
But would
even
you,
if he only throws 90 innings, that's still a
right,
value.
but would you be shocked if Flaherty had a 4.5 ERA this year? Would you be shocked at that?
Yes, I would, considering his, well, no, okay, I'm looking at the wrong thing. No, considering his
Right. Then that's what I'm saying. So
Years before that.
we can be in a world where Flaherty has a 4.5 ERA and nobody really knows, nobody really cares about it because oh Jack, okay, whatever. But we know Bryce Harper is going to hit 30 to 40 home runs with 110, 120 RBIs, have a 400 OBP, and he's playing a position that you just said is bare. I think, and again, when I look at Justin's roster, I actually really like this move for Justin because I do think he has a lot of those keepers that you could just keep for cheap, but he was lacking superstars. He needed superstars, and I think this move makes a lot of sense for him. I'm not saying it's perfect. You're right. Flaherty and Cronenworth, cheap keepers. It's nice to go into the draft with money. Who you spending money on? Bryce Harper's a nice one to spend money on. That's why I look at it.
I want to be critical here. I really want to look at this and be like, I really like those values. Cronenworth is like, it's probably not a guy you really want in your starting lineup. You like him for his counting stats a little bit, his RBIs and
Like
runs,
you
and
said, he plays. He could be your last guy in a lineup. But
he's
but
gonna.
when he's Justin's third guy in his lineup, that's not good.
But it's a dollar. I mean, it's like basically like the
Sure.
last guy in the draft, and he's not. He would be above the last guy in the draft. He would get taken before. If you threw him back, he'd probably go for more than $1. So I think he's an okay value, but he's not gonna really not a guy that you're gonna miss. Flaherty for a dollar. I mean, it's just. I think even if he only pitches 100 innings, it's a value. But if he pitches 170 innings, then it's just like one of the best values, if not maybe the best value in
When
the.
does it turn into a Jordan Montgomery
Um,
situation, though?
yeah, maybe. We'll kind of see there. So, I think it was a little bit of a price tag, but I think you do bring up valid points that, Bryce Harper is, you can't really find many Bryce Harpers, if any, in the draft, especially from an infield position.
I
You,
don't think people
kind of what
realize
Justin
the
needs.
lines he puts up, man. I mean, if he's playing 150 games, he's a top five fantasy baseball player every fucking season. Every season.
And I think Bryce probably doesn't have the salary to keep him because he's already got enough salary. So we'll go win-win here. I'll be a little positive. I'll say, Chad, you're gonna get an A- here, and Justin, I'm gonna give you a B+ here because I
Yeah,
think we kind of did get what you're looking for. Each team kind of comes out a winner here.
I like
Um,
it. We're being
yeah,
positive. Look at this.
yeah, I know. As much as I want to just tear everybody down, maybe
Well,
I'll
does
just
this one get torn apart?
turn,
Let's see. Oh, it's
turn a new leaf.
yours. Oh, here we go.
We got Dana making a trade with the commish, myself, Dana giving up Gunnar Henderson, and I gave up Rafael Devers and Teoscar Hernandez. So for this trade, I didn't really view Devers as like a tip-top keeper. Looking back on it now, it's probably like, oh yeah, for 39, he'd be one of the best players available. He's going to be kept and stuff. So I wasn't really too high on Devers, although I did have a few people that were messaging me about Devers. And so I was like, okay, he has value, even though I don't really value him a whole lot for that salary. And then
Really?
Teoscar Hernandez would puts up good number for $18.
Yeah.
I mean, if he replicates what he did last year, 33 homers, 99 RBIs, 84 runs, 12 stolen bases, and a 339 on base percentage for $18. I mean, really solid value. But at the same time, Gunnar Henderson, could be a top 5 player this year. Was a probably top 10 player last year. 37 homers, 92 RBIs, 21 steals, a 364 on base percentage, and 118 runs scored, all for $32. I think that's really one of the best values in the league for what you're going to get, a superstar, true superstar there if he puts up that kind of line this year for $32. So I couldn't really pass that up. Kind of consolidated some assets there and kind of like the return and the player I got.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like it for both sides. I'll say this though. I like Devers more than Riley.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know if
That's
do you
not
think the
enough.
deal would have got done with Riley instead? Because I don't think
I
so.
tried. I
Okay,
tried.
because I like Devers a lot more than Riley, and that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. Is again, it kind of brings back my point with Bryce Harper. If you bring up Devers' stat line over the last 4 years, you talk about consistently
Oh yeah.
consistent, 350 OBP, 30 bombs, close to 100 RBI. I mean, he's just going to do.
Mhm.
Again, you know what you're getting from
Yep.
him,
Hmm.
and just for that reason alone, like you said, he's going for $40 in the draft if he's thrown back in easily. He's just gonna. I mean, it's just the nature of the landscape. We're gonna say that a lot today. Teoscar, if he gets thrown back in that lineup, is gonna go for 30
30,
plus dollars.
30,
Yeah,
35. Yeah.
he's gonna go for 30, $35. So, and one position I noticed, and I hadn't noticed it as much in past years, and I don't know if it was just because of what it was or just the landscape of the league. It felt like a lot of people were thin in the outfield last year. It just, and I know you
You
said the
need
draft.
when you need four of them.
Yeah, you need four of them. When you're talking 14 teams,
Yeah,
that's what 56
56.
starters. If I do my math right,
Yep.
that's a lot of MLB outfielders we're using. So whenever you can sometimes get an outfielder and just feel safe, like I can plug Teoscar in there each and every week, it does feel nice. But again, shortstop can be a little bare too. There's only so many superstar shortstops. Overall, like I said, I like this team for both. Deal for both. You're looking at it like, hey, you can't get much better than a $32 MVP Gunnar Henderson. Totally agree. But I also really like this for Dana because I think you're getting two absolutely surefire keepers at this point. And there's nothing saying, I mean, Teoscar re-signing with LA was huge. And that's why I really thought you were going to hold on to him because I know you've had Teoscar multiple years, I feel like in the league.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I had him
I
when he
was
was on like Seattle and stuff too.
Right. I was pretty shocked that he was had as well as he was because I mean he in that lineup, man, he's gonna rake again. I mean, I used to be a Teoscar hater, but it's hard to go away from that. Again, another kind of consistent 30 homers, 90 RBIs kind of guy. So I like it for both. Kind of what you said on the last couple
Yeah.
trades. I'd give a B plus to both.
Yeah, so I mean, looking at outfield, what I was kind of pulling up here is we talk there's 56 basically starting outfielders. So the 56th outfielder ranked overall is Luke Raley from Seattle. If you sort by score, I could probably look at ADP, but I don't know if I can pull up ADP on this screen here or where I'd have to find that.
And that's not
Um,
counting some people maybe even having outfielders in their
yes.
utility slot,
So
you
then
know?
you go, okay, outfielders are in the utility spots. Maybe like 10 people have that. So that brings you down to 66. That brings you to Willie Abreu and Harrison Bader. But then you also have your outfielders like O'Neill Cruz, who are shortstop, and outfielder
Yep.
who's first base, and Dylan Moore and Christopher Morel and other guys who are available at other positions that you're probably going to maybe play in the infield too. And now you're looking at your 70, 80s, and you're like Sal Frelick and Charlie Blackmon and Jose Ziri and Blake Perkins are like guys where you're like, oh, these guys are starting in outfields this year.
Right.
Holy cow. Maybe I should maybe do it by projection instead of by last year's stats, might be a better way to kind of look at it.
But even still, I mean, I really felt like many times last year, and I felt lucky because I did have Suzuki, I had Hap, I was loaded in outfield, but it just seemed like everyone was looking for outfielders last year
Mhm.
all the time.
Yeah, because I mean, it's you could have stars there and still find a place to play them. Where it's just like you can't really have more than two shortstops unless you really
Right.
got an open
Yeah.
utility, two open utility spots. But you can have three, four outfielders and still acquire one. So, yeah, outfield's kind of a spot where you can kind of have some flexibility there and acquire that. So, yeah, yeah, I was a fan of the move. There is kind of something that happened here that'll have to be explained here in two trades from now, or the trade after this one. But we'll kind of get into that here in a second.
Yeah.
So next trade we have is Carlos Correa for Mitch Keller. Dave, welcome back to the
Hey,
league.
hey,
Uh,
return to the blah.
swinging a deal, giving up Carlos Correa, acquiring his guy, his pirate, Mitch Keller. I don't hate Mitch Keller. Mitch Keller for $6.
200 Ks every year. He's gonna
Yeah.
get you 200.
So 166 strikeouts last year,
Oh, he was
425
down a little
ERA,
bit. Yeah.
1.3 whip. So kind of a big time down year last year, coming off the year before where he pitched well. So I don't really know exactly what we're gonna get on Mitch Kelly. He had 210 strikeouts the year before, but this past year back down to 166. But for $6, I mean,
I mean,
for
you just
like a
keep him. Yeah.
yeah, for $6 basically says like you're a fringe starter, which is like fine, you're going to keep him at that point. But it's not like Carlos Correa is and much of an asset either. Seven
Yeah.
bucks last year. He kind of had a
It's tough because he
quiet.
has years where he is fantasy relevant, but he also has years where like he's literally borderline not startable.
Yeah.
I mean, literally not because he doesn't steal. His OBP's always been awful. So if he's not getting 30 bombs or 25, 30 bombs with 90 RBIs and 80, 90 runs, which sometimes he doesn't do that, he's borderline not startable.
An argument could be made for Correa. He's a tough guy to project because of the injury. He played 86 games last year, so basically just over a half of a season. If you multiply all his stats by two, that's 110 runs, 28 homers, 108 RBIs,
Should
zero
all be
stolen
career
bases,
highs, right?
and a 388 on base percentage. Now you kind of got to shave a few off because that's over 162 games. And it's also he's never going to play 162 games ever again. He is let's see his high at a 148 4 years ago, then 136 and 135, then 86. So he's never going to play 162. So maybe you kind of find a halfway middle point. But If Correa hits you 22 home runs and has 80 runs and 80 RBIs and a
Yeah,
388 base
that's in
percentage,
the lineup. Sure.
that's in the lineup. I'd keep that for $7. You can't bank on it with Correa. So maybe, the reports out of spring are positive. Maybe you look at it and go, well, maybe I'll just talk myself into keeping him. I mean, there's got to be a reason why Dana acquired him. So
I
maybe
like it because Dana's rotation's pretty loaded, and he just looked at it like, let me get a little extra offense.
so maybe it makes sense. So yeah, I'll give Dana a C plus because I'm not sure if you keep Correa, and I'll give Dave a B minus because I think you probably keep Keller for $6, even though I don't really like the player. He's not going to lead you to a championship.
Yeah, I think it's a straight swap, keeper for keeper. A little bit of offense here, a little bit of pitching there. I think it makes sense for both teams. Yeah. Oh, this one.
Oh man, are you ready for this?
Yeah.
Um, our most recent trade, that
Caused a fun little storm. Good timing, right? Good stuff.
shockwaves amongst the group chat, amongst the league. Chad packaged together a nice little package here, maybe a not so nice package at all, actually, where he sent Ozzy Albies, Alex Bregman, Taj Bradley, and Max Fried, those four players, all for Shohei Ohtani, coming off a year where Shohei hit 54 homers, 130 RBIs, 134 runs, 59 stolen bases, and a 390 on base percentage. Is that like is it the
Oh
greatest
yeah.
fantasy baseball season in the last 50 years?
I wouldn't
I
doubt
mean,
it.
right
Yeah.
since Bonds, right? Since the 73 homer season.
Yeah,
Uh,
because his OBPs were video game numbers. I mean, he had like 500 OBPs, man. It was nuts.
I mean, that's a better season than Acuna's 2 years ago,
Yeah.
even though
Oh
Acuna
yeah.
had more stolen bases. But I mean, I think was it better OBP than Acuna that year? Did Acuna have a 400 on base percentage that year?
You know, I don't know. That's a good
But
question.
I mean, the counting stats: 134 runs, 130
More
RBIs.
homers.
I
Yeah.
mean, clear cut. There's not a draft this year where Shohei Ohtani is not the first player taken off the board. However, there wasn't a draft last year where Acuna wasn't the first player off the board. And how'd that work out for me?
Yeah.
But I digress. Holy cow, Chad got an incredible steal here. Let's go Chad A plus, Crim F, is basically how I feel about this. Max Fried, he is a $29 player. You can make an argument that the pitching landscape would dictate that he could be kept for 29, but taking on a lot of salary here, 3.25 ERA,
And
1.1.
he's in New York.
He's in New York now. The balls are going to fly out of there. The strikeout rate is now lower than a strikeout in inning. He's never been a big strikeout guy. He's just kind of more of a middling kind of guy. Taj Bradley, I was like, oh, maybe Taj Bradley for $3. Maybe that's a solid keeper, but he's basically Mitch Keller. He's 138 innings last year, 154 strikeouts, good strikeout rate, 1.22 whip and a 4.11 ERA. So you're going to keep him for $3, but not a guy I'm like really excited to have in my rotation. What do
Chad's
you
been cooking him in the oven the last 2 years, mentioning him in the chat every few weeks, and then he just pawned him off and got Otani. That's what fucking happened.
what before I move on to the other two, Bregman and Albies, do you have any other thoughts on the keepability of Taj Bradley, Freed, and kind of the players they are, and you expect them to?
Again, like you said, the landscape. You keep him. I actually think Freed is borderline. Again, I do think in a redraft, the name, this and that. I do think he goes for around that same price. I'm not going to act like he's going to go for $20. I don't think he would. But so I do think yes, you keep Bradley. Yes, if I was Chad, yeah, you probably keep Freed. But yeah, that's what I'll
Okay,
say on those two.
so we move on to Bregman, who doesn't have a team, and who the draft dictated last year. Last year, the draft dictated that Alex Bregman was a $28 player. Did he play well last year, Eric?
No,
No, he did not. So why would he still be worth $28? He is not. Not only does he not have a team, not only will he not be playing in Houston anymore, hitting balls over the Crawford boxes and in the short right field porch as well. So he's going to go somewhere where it's harder to hit. He's not getting any younger. He is how old?
31 or
30
two.
years old.
Yeah.
So I guess he's not past his prime, but he's not getting
But the
any
numbers
younger.
have also indicated, and again, he's clearly already hit his peak. He's not
Yeah.
he's not 2019 Bregman anymore. And over the
Not
last few
stealing
years,
bases anymore.
yeah, and over the last few years, he's a very solid fantasy player. He's solid. Now, again, how much
Carlos
is
Correa.
Is he 28? He's 28, right?
Yeah.
I actually think out of all the players that were, I think if he got thrown back in, I don't know if he would go for 28. Now,
No.
again, I do think it would be close. I'm not saying people would get him for 18 or $19, but I see a world where he would go for around 23, 24 in the draft or $22. And again, when a guy named Otani is involved in the trade,
Yeah.
that's not enough.
No, it certainly
That's
isn't.
not enough.
That Ozzy Albies $29. Eric,
Same
did
exact. I
Ozzy
could say
Albies
this.
have a good year last year?
No, and you
He
want
had
to talk
10
about a
home
dude.
runs.
And you want to talk about, I mean, Ozzy Albies, I like the player, but you want to, we talked about Devers being consistent. We talked about, you know what you can get from Bryce Harper. You don't know what you can get from Ozzy Albies. He is so up and down, whether he's hurt, whether he hits 30 bombs, whether he hits 20 bombs, whether he gets 100 RBIs or 70. His OBPs sometimes have been awful.
294
Awful.
3 years ago, 303 last year.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. So again, if you have Ozzy Albus on your team, are you starting him? Yes, he is that type of player where you start him. Do I think Ozzy Albus goes for $30 in the draft? I don't know if he does. Again, 23, 24, because somebody's going to need him. Somebody's going to need him. But that's different. Someone can make the argument that all these guys are keepers. That's fine. That's not why I'm mad at the trade. I'm mad at the trade because Shohei Otani
You
is
have to be
involved,
blown away.
and this is not enough. And I don't I hate I always hate when people do this, but I have to say it. And I'm not saying it's obvious because, and I'm not even mad that like my trade didn't get accepted, but would Vlad and C or would Vlad and I even forgot what I forgot what I said in the chat, but I think it was Vlad and Seager or something like that. I know you're taking on salary, but you're getting two superstar players. And I just think with this, you're treading water. Krim's team was already one of the worst teams. Does this really make him better, or does this
Give
tread
them a
water?
hell of a lot less money to make it better.
Right. And again, there's not superstars in the draft, and I get that. And I told Krim off season, I said, if you trade Otani, it's because you need, yes, you want to get three or four dudes back, but you need superstars back. Not three or four. You maybe get one superstar, a borderline superstar, and two good contracts. Something along those lines. I know you're not going to get four all-stars back. That is getting a little crazy, but I just feel like there was so much out there more for Otani, and I was actually kind of shocked when I saw it. I really was.
Yeah, I
It
was.
could work out. Otani could tear his wrist second week into the season, and all four of Krim's guys can be very solid producers this year. No one could say that those four guys won't be. But Shohei Otani, man, that it's just I don't know.
Yeah. I can hear Krim right now going, look, from my perspective, I looked at my roster and I certainly needed guys that could help be more consistent. I looked at
Yes.
the draft and I didn't
Yep.
want to go into the draft with having $250 in my pocket, needing to build an entire team in the draft when you guys just got done sitting here saying that you can't build the team through the draft this year. There's not a lot of guys there, especially in the infield. You just went through all the second basemen and shortstops and third basemen, and they all suck. And I got two pitchers. I got this, I got that. And if you look at the stats, I acquired a lot of stats. And I can hear it. And the argument could be made. But I'm not going to be the one to make it because I just think that the value that he got was just awful. And I think that it's just a surefire way to guarantee mediocrity this year because he didn't get superstars back. He got okay players at like borderline superstar contract levels. And I just look at his team now and I don't like the way it looks. So yeah,
Yep.
sure, he's got less money to spend now, and yes, he acquired some stats, but this is not going to be one of our better teams this year, and it's not the kind of value that you should get from a guy like Otani. And the way I kind of talked about value earlier, Otani is a $41 player. He would go for the Acuna price of last year. No reason why he wouldn't. Maybe even
He
more. He'd
might go
probably go for
60. He might
maybe
go 60.
Acuna went 62 last year, I
Yeah.
think. So he'd go what, 60, 65? So
Sure.
there's $25 of value built up there, of surplus value. So if you look at those players, okay, Taj Bradley, let's say even Taj Bradley went for 10. Okay, that's $7 of value for Taj Bradley. Breed is not going to go for more than 29, so there's not really value there. Albies is not going to go for more than 29. There's not really value there. And even if Bregman went for 30, maybe okay, $2 of value there. The value does not add up. And you gave up the superstar. So it just is a trade that makes absolutely little sense. I won't say it makes no sense. It makes little sense, especially
Yeah.
considering the other offers that I were trickled in that I've heard. I had an offer form of I gave him up Devers, what's his name? My first baseman. Oh God, I go to my freaking
Naylor.
Naylor, and oh God, I gave him one more. It was, I think it was
I hope
Royce.
so.
Was it Lewis? I think it was like Royce, Lewis, Naylor. No, he wanted Lewis, Naylor, um and Riley. And I was like, that's a fair price. Not
Yeah.
hating on the price. Royce Lewis, Josh Naylor, and
I feel like
Austin
that's about what I was
and
saying, a
Devers. Because
superstar, and then yeah.
because Devers isn't like a great value, but you're getting 80% of the production. You're getting that superstar. Then you're getting the value out of Naylor, who would go for 25 in this auction, for 8. And then you got Royce Lewis, who would go for 20 in this auction, who I have for 7. So there's where your value is coming into play. And then you're getting the superstar as well. I put on the table, I put Wheeler on the table. I tried finagling some other players in there, like Nimmo. I think I ended up offering like Nimmo, Royce Lewis, and Devers. And then my final offer, I said, well, how about you throw in like Cal Raleigh or one of his other outfielders, the guy from Cincinnati? And he's like, no, I'm not going to give another player with that. And I was like, okay, I don't blame you. Like your analysis of what the value of Otani is fair, all that. But then to turn around and trade him for that, it was just head scratching. So what I think happened is I know that Dana wanted Otani. I know that I wanted Otani. And what happened is after I got a final offer from Krim and it wasn't something that I was willing to take, and I made that deal with Dana for Gunnar Henderson, I think the well dried up. I think he didn't have any buyers left for
Well,
Otani.
I even sent him a message. I said, "Hey, now that Kyle's out on Otani, let me know. Like, because you made that trade, I'm like, let me know." I literally have the message, and that's where I offered Vlad and I offered Seager. And again, I know you're not super. I get it, but it's just one of those things where it's like, take the superstar for sure players, and I just don't get like, I don't know,
It seemed
like
like a panic trade.
yeah, I think, and I agree. I think Naylor, Lewis, and who else did you say? Riley?
Devers.
Or yeah, Naylor, Lewis, and Devers. If that was the 3-for-1, I probably would have done that because again, those are 3 guys that you can count on. I think Naylor might even have a bigger year in Arizona than he did in Cleveland.
I think
Um,
I never officially offered that. That's what his price was. I think my final offer was like Devers.
do you regret not offering that? Because I do think that's a pretty damn
I think
fair
it was
trade.
I think it was like something like Devers, Nimmo, and Royce Lewis. I think was like my final
See,
offer. Or
and
Otani, and I think I just wanted one more outfield, Friedel. I wanted him to throw in Friedel for $8. And
and
Friedel was a deal breaker for him.
yeah, well,
So
yeah, Friedel when he plays has sometimes been solid, but
yeah.
yeah,
ADP 248 for
yeah.
Frito there. Okay. So that's that. Yeah, I already gave my grades. F for Krim and A plus for Chad. The rich get richer. Chad's reign of terror shall continue after that trade. So
And I genuinely like I said, I know that a lot of those guys get kept, but with how many salaries Chad had, and that's where I think
yeah,
Krim has a lot of the luxury.
Chad,
Chad
there's no way in hell Chad was keeping Albies, Bregman, or freaking what's his name?
He might have kept one or two of the guys, but there's no way he would have been
He
able to
has
keep
too
all
many
those guys.
keepers already. He's been open
Yeah,
about that. He can't keep all
yeah.
those guys, and he
He know,
could not only could he not afford it, he didn't have the roster space
right.
for it.
And that's
All
why
those guys
even
would have been available at those prices for free.
and that's why even looking at the team, that's where I think Krim could have even swapped the deal around a little bit. Like if I was Krim, I would have asked for Otani. I would have asked for something like Lindor.
Yeah. How do you
I
not
would have
get
asked
Lindor?
I
How
would
do
have
you not
asked
get
for
Carroll?
I would have asked for Lindor just to take. I would have asked for Lindor, either Gray or Flaherty, and I would have also asked for Bellinger.
Bellinger's, eh.
But even still, $16, 120 ADP. I mean, he Krim needs bodies. We get that, but I feel like Lindor, Flair, it might, and even that might not be enough. But it's one of those. I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't
it
know.
was just like, hey, here's my scraps. Give me the best player in baseball, the best player ever, actually.
Right.
The guy here's
Because
all
I
the guys
think
I
Krim,
won't be
Krim would have
keeping.
had a better chance going into the draft because Krim really would have had a ton of money going in, even
Hmm.
having Otani, right? But we knew he needed superstars. Krim could have sat there and not everybody. I get once you get a guy or two, it changes. But he could have penny pinched a lot of people in the draft and gotten every top guy for $40 if he wanted.
Hmm.
But now that's no longer an option.
Yeah. All right, so let's go into our team by team breakdown. We're going to do something a little bit new. Instead of doing like a power rankings or giving you kind of like a grade, all these teams are incomplete. Obviously, a lot of teams are in different areas of what the assets that they have, the money that they have to spend, and all that kind of stuff. So it doesn't really do us any good to do a power rankings or like a grade, and a lot of teams haven't made transactions this offseason. So it doesn't really do us a whole lot of good. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a grading system of 1 to 5 stars of a star rating on what shape is your team at heading into the draft? So we're gonna have our top teams are gonna be close at 5 stars or above, and then our lower teams may not get many stars at all. So we'll just start top to bottom. I'll go in alphabetical order. We'll start with the Beantown boys here. Eric, you want me to take this one, or you got it?
Sure, go ahead. What do you
All
think?
right. This is one of my favorite teams. I think that the Beantown boys are in a great position. When you talk about what kind of assets do the Beantown boys have that aren't available in the auction, they have a lot. They have top tier pitching. They have Tariq Skubal, Blake Snell, and Bailey Ober's in top tier pitching, but he's decent. And he's got a closer, pretty close to top tier, Edwin Diaz for 15. A lot of salary with that pitching staff. It's a little bit of an expensive pitching staff. It maybe he keeps Pete Fairbanks, but I think he's got enough keepers outside of Pete Fairbanks in some other directions. So it's a good start to the rotation. He can kind of fill out the rotation with maybe some 4, 5s, and 6s in the draft and probably be okay. Have a pretty solid rotation if that's your start. Then you have hitting wise, you have Salvador Perez, you're keeping for 4, I would imagine. Olson could go either way. India, if he was in Cincy, you probably keep him, but in Kansas City, I don't like the fit in Kansas City for him. I probably wouldn't keep him for 8. You probably keep Abrams for 12 with the
Oh
steals.
yeah.
We're going to see where he stands with the team in spring. If they sent him down at the end of the year for gambling at the casino. You got to love Jaron Duran for 11. One of the best values in the league. Tyler O'Neill for 4. I like that. Juan Soto for 54. I'm imagining he's going to keep him. You got Tristan Casas. He probably keeps Ward. I don't know about Soler. So I kind of look up and down this roster and I'm like, okay, he has a top bat. He's got a top 5 player in Juan Soto. He's got a really good value in Tyler O'Neill. He has some steals or not with O'Neill, with Jaron Duran. I mean, he's got some steals with Duran and Abrams. He's got some top tier pitching in Skubal and Blake Snell. And like the things that he needs, like he's going to need some pop from maybe like an infield position. He's going to need to fill out his rotation, but those are all things you can fill in the draft. And I'm actually right off the top here, Eric. I'm kind of doing the opposite of bearing the lead. I don't think there's a team in this league that wouldn't trade positions with Bryce right now.
Oh, I don't know about that. I do think he's one of the best rosters in the league. I think it's pretty well rounded, but I don't know if I'd say he's the most talented roster. Yeah,
You don't have to be, but I like the position that he's in because he is going to have
oh
a
sure. Oh yeah. I mean, there's a lot of teams that would trade spots with him for sure. I mean, like you said, that rotation is going to be one of the best. Although there's just some guys, and I hate to jump on that train, but Snell always worries me because there is a little bit of the inconsistency there. He's like I hate to say the worst multiple time Cy Young winner in baseball history, but it's just one of those weird things. So it's
Yeah.
tough. But the offense is solid, but I do kind of worry about it, especially if he does throw Olson back. Um, you have Soto and you have Duran, but is there really anything you can count on after that? I mean, solid guys, solid
Does it
guys.
change your opinion if he keeps Olson? Will you like it more keeping Olson at that value?
How much money would he have going into the draft? If
Right
we go,
now, his active lineup has 248, but I'm
but he's got
assuming there's a
16 dudes
couple
in there.
guys in there like
Some of those dudes aren't being kept. Yeah,
yeah, I mean you could probably subtract 8 for India, and he's got too many guys in
probably
here.
Soler,
Olaire
maybe.
9. So let's see, that's 1. If he keeps Ward 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So yeah, so if you subtract out India and you subtract out
That's
Solaire, that's
$17.
going to be an extra $17.
Still
So
not
that would give
much,
him 231. So that'd give him $69 to spend in
right?
the
And that's not a ton. You can make a little bit of a move there. It's tough because again, first base is thin. Does he feel like he can go out there and do a different spot? Like for example, I might throw Olson back and try to get a Tatis.
hmm
I don't know. I mean, again, it's a
Got
gamble,
outfielders. That's the only thing.
right? You can't predict that. It's tough, but that's something I would do. And yeah, he's got a lot of outfielder, but he could put Casas at first.
hmm
But so I don't know. It's just tough right there. So we'll see what's going on with that. But again, I don't hate Olson. I mean, obviously he hit 50 bombs just a year and a half ago, and there's nothing saying he can't do that again. He's in a good
hmm
lineup. But I could go either way on it. I think he is one of the best offenses. I'm not downing this team at all. I think this is one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the league, no doubt about it. I think there's a very big difference between the top 3 or 4 teams and then everybody else in the league. And I definitely think Bryce is one of them.
hmm
But I do think it's very well balanced. It's definitely maybe the most balanced team in the league, but we'll have to go through some of these other ones here. But I like it. It's a good team. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, well, I guess I'm coming in a little bit hot early then. A little bit hotter than you, I guess one would say.
I mean, it's
So
definitely a top 3 or 4 team right now. I don't disagree with you. It is.
I'm gonna I guess I have to say it. I'm gonna go 5 stars here.
Okay. I'll go 4.
Maybe you talk me off. Maybe you talk me off a little bit.
I'll
I'll
go
go four and
4.
a half. Four and a half
I just
stars.
think, and again, not that he wouldn't replace it, because if he got rid of Olsen, now he's got $90 going into the draft. So it's safe to say he would replace it with something. So it's not like, but I'm not in love with the offense. But again, I also think sometimes I don't realize how bad some other offenses are. And then I realize, actually, it's not bad. It's
Yeah.
solid, you
hmm
know? So
All right. Let's go to my team next. Still sticking with Burns when I PV here. So right now I have my 12 potential keepers here, probably in my lineup. Obviously, Austin Riley can be had, Christopher Morel can be had. Christopher Morel is kind of an interesting case because not that I'm saying he's like gonna light the world on fire, but for $7, maybe somebody wants to take a flyer on him. Somebody wants to give something up for him or package of Riley and Morel. But I like the offensive pieces that I have. They give me a little bit of everything. I'll need to find some steals in the auction here, based on what I have here. But I like the kind of start that I have here. Some high ceiling guys and Mookie Betts and Royce Lewis and Gunnar Henderson. Some good floor guys and Josh Naylor and Nimmo. I kind of know what I'm getting here. I'm gonna have to obviously build the offense a little bit. Can't have an offense with only 5 guys. But this pitching staff, I think, is the best in the league. I think there's no arguments there. I don't think there's even an argument that there's a pitching staff better than mine. We have Zach Wheeler. A lot of people would like to have my pitching staff. We have Zach Wheeler at the top, then DeGrom, King, and Cole Reagans. I think all those, Chris Sale. I think all of those guys are top 20 arms in the league.
yeah.
I think ADP, that gives me the ADP 18, 36, 36,
Oh yeah.
59, and 62. I think all those guys are being drafted in the top 20 for pitching. And I like Cutter Crawford for $1. Not going to light the world on fire, but for $1, I will absolutely keep that. Don't plan on keeping Hader, don't have a spot for him, but I plan on throwing him back and being in on the bidding for him because I'm going to need a closer. And then Woodruff for $1 as well. Even if he's not ready for opening season, if I got to find a few guys there or a guy or two to fill in my SP5 and let the dogs eat, let the other guys eat while Brandon Woodruff gets back up to form for $1. It's not incredibly expensive. It's not like I'm spending $150 or anything on this rotation. I think it's best in the league.
And that's what kind of what I'm saying when it comes to your team is I would rather be your team than Bryce's, because I feel like you can cleanly go into the draft, not have to worry about pitching at all. You got how much money going in?
I have 228, so I'll have $72 to
I
spend.
think I think your offense is still good enough right now. I know you got to fill spots. I totally get that. But your offense is good. You can go in with different strategies, but what's stopping you from dropping 40 on a superstar and just, filling the rest? I think you could drop 40 on a superstar, have have it led by Betts, Naylor, and again, hopefully they stay healthy, right? Lewis. But
hmm
you could that core 5 you got right now is very solid enough, right? I think if you added another superstar bat, your offense is still going to be one of the 3 or 4 best in the league as well. Now
hmm
you might take a different strategy where you $10 here, 15 here, 10, maybe I don't know, but I think your team's really well set up where you can go into the. It's nice to go into the draft knowing exactly what you need instead
Yeah.
of last year where some guys literally had to get 26 dudes and you're like, okay, well, what's going on? Oh, this is happening, and it's hard to keep track of a lot of that. You can confidently go into the draft and go, I need lineup. Let's just focus on the positional players and how they fall. I'm going to put pitchers up, bid on them, bid on them. Bid.
Yeah.
I mean, it's you have a very clear path, and that's why
Going.
I think we're talking about two of the better teams between you
Yeah.
and Bryce. And I'm not trying to down Bryce. I'd
Mhm.
rather be your team.
Hmm. Interesting. I mean, I probably would be too, but I was just giving Bryce his flowers a little bit there. Yeah, I mean, the nice thing is like if you look at the gaps that my team has, catcher, well, there's plenty of catchers available. Outfield, I just got done saying how many outfielders there are. Like, if there's one position that there's a surplus of in this auction, it's outfield. Pitching. I know pitching, if you go based off last year, all the good pitchers went for at least $20. You couldn't get a serviceable arm for less than $20. Well, I don't need to be in the bidding on any of those. If I want to maybe go after Spencer Schwellenbach because he pitched so well for me last year, or Jared Jones, Brandon Woodruff, hey, he's not going to be ready for opening day and I want to fill out, then I can. I have the flexibility to do that. And then I'm going to need 2 closers. I need to designate $35 for 2 closers and then kind of go from there. Now, the one thing that I will say with this roster is I still think it makes sense for me to trade Zach Wheeler because if I could get that $43 back, to put towards my offense and still roll out a rotation that starts with Chris Sale, Cole Reagans, Jacob DeGrom, and Michael King. That's still four really solid pitchers. I
I mean, we
still
got to
think,
stop saying DeGron's name until he pitches at least 50 innings.
oh, while he's here, while he's healthy, he's still gonna be
Is
in
he
there.
ever?
So yeah, never. But I
That's
still
why I'm
think
shocked that his ADP is still 62. Like that's a fourth round pick. That's a third and a half round pick, right? No, fourth round. Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
he's not pitched. When's the last time he's pitched 100 innings? When's the last time he's pitched 80 innings? I mean, that's crazy.
yeah. But you just
I mean,
know
don't
you
get me
hold him out.
wrong.
He's
Don't
gonna be elite. If you
don't
look
get me
at him,
wrong. I'm
he's
not saying it's
never.
not bad, but here's my thing with DeGrom. I think if he threw it for not, you're not. He's $12.
Yeah,
If he got thrown back in, I don't think he would go for 25 or $30 either.
he would go for 40.
I don't think so. I really don't think so. I think so many people are. Dude, look at him. He's not hit 100
He's
innings since
never
before
had an
COVID
ERA
existed.
over 3.54. That was 2017.
Dude, I
Even in
totally
the
get
last
that. When
6
he's on
years.
the mound, hey, when he's on the mound, he's one of the best pitchers to ever breathe. I'm not
Yes.
denying that, but he's not even worth $12 at 20 innings.
If I can get 100 innings out of him, it's a win.
Totally. But it's not happened since 2019.
I'll find other pitchers when he inevitably gets
Oh, yeah.
hurt.
I mean, you're loaded.
I'll be
You're
all
fine.
right.
You're the perfect team to have Jacob DeGrom.
He's my
But
guy.
that's what I'm saying. If there was another team where this Jacob DeGrom is their ace, spending $30, fuck that.
Yeah.
You're the perfect team to have him.
So I need to turn Zach Wheeler into some steals or something though. So we'll see. I gotta finagle something out. This offseason's still probably not done over here and from Burns and IPV.
It's
We'll
just
see what I
tough
can
too
do.
because I think we've learned going in with more keepers is better than not. So it's tough to pull off trades right now because I think a lot of teams do have like a solid 12 or 11. So
They're
it's
kind
one
of
of those things,
married to him. They don't want to shake things up. They don't want to go down from I don't want to go from 12 to 11.
right,
I don't have a full slate.
because I need like a preceding move and this and that. That's why it'd be nice to have full rosters and that stuff. Get it all popping.
Yeah.
But it's just tough because I've been in that conundrum too, where it's like I don't want to take on two guys because now there's an odd man out, and I don't want to trade two because now I'm at it's I don't know. It's just tough. It makes it really really difficult.
All right, we go to our third team, Chad. Shout out, Chad. Chad always gets a shout out. The league sugar daddy. Just supporting us, paying the bills, keeping the lights on here in the boys of summer. What a good guy. Shout out to why am I drawing a blank on what's his company?
Wasted potential.
Wasted Potential. Shout out to the Wasted Potential for funding the boys of summer in every way that they can, making sure the lights are on. Another one of our top teams. So you're giving me 5 stars then?
I'll give him 4.5 just because
What are you giving me? What are you giving me?
Oh, I'll give 4.5.
Ooh, 4.5. Okay, couldn't get that 5th star. Maybe by the end of the offseason, I can get that 5th star from you. Yeah, that'll be my challenge. All right. Yeah, so we got obviously a team that's been really solid for the last 2 years. He's still set up. He has the star power.
Oh
He
man,
has
does he ever.
1, 2, 3, 4 players that are
First
drafted
rounders.
13 off
Yeah.
first rounds.
That's
So
insane.
offense pretty loaded here, but all 4 of those players come with some big contracts. 41 for Ohtani, 46 for Tucker,
cares?
38 for Carroll, 29 for Lindor. So he doesn't have a lot of flexibility here.
Who cares?
In his lineup, he's got $235 of active salary right now. You're saying who cares? Go take
Who
the
cares,
floor.
man? I mean, honestly, he's only got 2 spots to fill in the offense. They could be dollar players. It doesn't matter. I mean, it does not matter who he puts in those spots. I mean, he's got 4. I don't think people realize, and again,
He's got 14 guys in his active lineup though, so he's got to drop 2 of these guys.
sure, right. He's got to drop 2 of them. Maybe it is like a Bellinger or something, or maybe an O'Hop or Renfrigo for who knows. But all I know is Mauricio for $1, but he might be behind him. I know he's a top prospect. Here's what I'll say about Chad's team. And again, I know we bring up ADP and people are like, well, it's the keepers and the contracts and their big values. This is a 14-team league. If everything was exact parity, if we did a snake draft, theoretically, everyone would have one dude in the top 14. One dude. He's got 4 in his lineup. That's silly. That is, and one of them's the best player in baseball.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous. And I get some of these dudes are looking for bounce. I know Carroll's kind of looking for a bounce back here. I get that. Lindor, it's proven. Dude's a fucking stud. And also, he's got Soto hitting by him now. I can only see his numbers. I don't really see them decreasing. I mean, it doesn't matter who Chad fills this lineup in with. it's going to be the best in the league. I think mine holds a close candle, but he's got 4 dudes as first round picks. That's silly, silly,
Mhm.
silly, silly. So, like I said, I do worry about the pitching a little bit. But if we're talking from a head, like, are we talking from a roto, a head to head perspective? If we're talking from a head to head perspective, Chad is probably on a routine week. You can't guarantee it all the time because this is kind of a strategy I had last year with my offense. You can't guarantee it all the time, but he should go into almost every week on offense expecting to win 4 out of 5 categories. Whatever
Mhm.
4 they are, whether it's OBP, whether it's home runs, whether it's steal, you should go in with that offense expecting to, I'm going to take 4 categories. So then
Yeah.
at the end of the day, to sit there and make the playoffs and all you got to do is win 2 pitching categories a week. And
Mhm.
again, I know it's not that exact science. I know it's not that easy.
Yeah.
His pitching's not bad. He's got a lot of dudes in the 100 to 112 range. Flaherty, Gray. He's missing an ace. We know that. Can he
Yeah.
get that? Probably. But Chad each and every week is going to give teams fits with that offense.
Mhm.
It's insane.
Yeah, tough to argue with that. And that's why like guys like Renhefo and guys like Cronenworth, they make a lot of sense for this roster
Yes.
to balance out guys like Otani and Kyle Tucker with a $3 Renhefo and a $1 Cronenworth. Like that's what makes sense is when you have kind of that stars and scrubs approach. And stars and scrubs works when your $1 and $3 guys are actually giving you production, the way that they are going to for Chad here. I don't think this is a roster without flaws, though. I mean, obviously, I don't know how many guys in the league would rather swap places with Chad. Maybe 13, all 13, maybe 12. I don't. I just feel like this roster has a hole or two, especially from the pitching standpoint. He doesn't have a pitcher in the top 100. Getting Flaherty for him was probably a massive deal. And looking back on it now, seeing getting Jack Flaherty a $1 guy is kind of exactly what Chad needed for this roster. A cheap pitcher who can maybe kind of almost lead his rotation and
Well,
maybe
think
open
about
up
this.
an opportunity for him to get a guy like Castillo in the auction or at least be in on the bidding on one of those top pitchers. I mean, it makes a lot of sense knowing he didn't need Bryce Harper on this team. So
And that's what's crazy. It's not just Bryce Harper. This goes back to the Krim trade. Think
yeah,
about it. He had Bregman, Albies, Bryce Harper on. He was not keeping
yeah,
all of these
he didn't
dudes,
need
and
to.
that's where
Couldn't
you have
afford
to
to, he
look
didn't
at.
need to.
And that's why I look at Krim and I'm like, again, Chad can say he was keeping a couple of them. It's fine. We'll play that card, but I just don't see a world like with his roster. Are you keeping Albies at $30 or Bregman
Oh,
at
no.
or Bellinger at 16? I might just keep Bell. I might not even keep either of them. But that's kind of my point. Is I just Krim had all the leverage. You have Shohei Otani. And he just threw all that leverage away. And with guys that Chad probably wasn't keeping, Chad's got a lot of money in his roster already. So it's tough.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, just the pitching isn't great though. So Sonny Gray, he's kind of been a workhorse, but he's 35 now. He's going to be on a bad Cardinals team. Maybe this is the year where it kind of starts to slip for him, $13. But good reliable guy, kind of exactly what this roster needs. Jack Flaherty for $1, Springs for 2. Don't know exactly what we're getting out of Jeffrey Springs, but could be huge. He needs him to be huge. Gavin Williams for 13. Didn't really pitch that great last year. He kind of needs him to break out. And then Devin Williams for 25. If you're spending $25 on a closer, not only is that like more than you should spend on any
That's
closer,
premium. Yeah.
like that has to be like you're getting the top closer in the league. So Devin Williams last year looks like he had a 1.25 ERA and a 0.96 whip. Oh yeah, I'm looking at projections here. I need to want to go back to our year to date or our last year's stats. So yeah, I mean, if you get a 1.25 ERA and a 0.96 whip and a bunch of strikeouts, looks like almost 2 strikeouts an inning. If you extrapolate those over 65 innings and you get 40 saves and those kind of numbers, then yeah, it'll be worth 25. But I also pitching in Yankee Stadium, and not everybody can handle the pressure of being a Yankees player. I mean, we've seen some guys get in there that are just like, I just can't handle the booze and stuff like that. We
Yeah.
saw Trey Turner making a difficult adjustment with in Philly for a while. He finally got used to it when the team rallied around him. But there's a lot of pressure when you're playing for the Yankees and filling the shoes of Mariano Rivera, maybe the
Oh yeah.
greatest closer of all time. So I don't know if it's going to go well for him. That's a lot of risk to take on for a $25 closer. So we'll see if he
I
ends up.
agree.
So I almost think I like Bryce's position a little bit more than I like Chad's position. So
I think Bryce's team's more balanced.
yeah,
Uh,
that's kind of why I kind of am gonna lean that way. So I'm gonna go 4 stars here for Chad. Maybe 4.25 stars or something like that. But
okay.
I
I'm
think
gonna
this
go.
roster is loaded, but it's not perfect.
I'm gonna go 4 as well, and I agree with you. I think it's loaded. It's not perfect, but again, almost every week in and week out, every head-to-head week. I mean, again, there's always that caveat of injuries. Week in and week out, he should. There's not many weeks he's not going to be winning 4 categories from an offensive perspective,
He's
and
he's got a little bit of money to spend. He's got only 235 in the active lineup, and once he drops one or two of these guys, he'll have even more. But like he's gonna need like a Jared Jones, a Castillo, and so he's gonna need to spend 30, 35 bucks on one or two of those top pitchers. So I mean
he's a
that's gonna dry up quickly. He's not gonna really be able
perfect
to fill
candidate
out.
to just go get Cole. And that's what I'm saying. I
Yeah.
think there might be a strategy. And again, I don't know what teams are thinking. I don't know what guys are thinking. But for some of these teams that are already good, what's stopping some of these? Because I think the good teams, there's a gap. There's a decent gap. What's stopping some of these good teams from just dropping one more big salary on a player and just saying, all right, I'm good. My roster is better than yours. And I think Chad's one of
You
those
can't
guys
do
that
anything about it because you can't replace it in the auction.
True, yeah, but I think Chad's one of those perfect candidates where he could go in there and drop 40 on Garrett Cole and go, all right, sounds good,
Yeah.
you know,
Maybe if Garrett Cole's available, I
right?
think he is.
Yeah, exactly. If he's available, yep.
All right, so let's
It's
move
kind
on
of
to
funny that all the rosters we've talked about, we know are like some of the 3 or 4 best teams in the
yeah.
league. So we're about to
Let's
hit some.
go to one of the teams that's not one of the best in the league. Crim's crew here. We have leading off, we have Cal Raleigh, $6 catcher. I tried to kind of see, I got a little temperature check and Crimmy threw it in my face, rightfully so. I was just kind of like, hey, can we maybe throw Cal Raleigh in a deal here? And he's like, fuck
Yeah,
you.
Cal Rally's not a throw-in, dude.
And I was like, yeah, 34 homers, 100 RBIs from a $6 catcher. I didn't really realize how really solid
Yeah,
that
he's
was.
a
So,
stud, dude. I had him
um,
last year for the longest time, but and the crazy thing is he got off to an awful, awful start last year, and I had him on my roster for a long time. He really turned it around.
yeah. But I mean, he is only a 2.5 category producer, though. I mean, but from a catching standpoint, that's still pretty solid. But
It was
not giving
30
you much in the steals department, not hurting you in on base percentage, and not really going to help you in runs. But
Salvador Perez that you've been raving about over the last couple of years.
I haven't raved about Salvador Perez. You're gonna have to go into the file set. A lot of guys here that I would not keep. But Krim probably will anyway because he made all those deals that trade for a reason. So I'm looking at this roster. I don't know if I keep Tovar for 12. You're hoping for maybe a continued progression from him, but you're not going to get any walks from him. The stolen bases weren't really there, only 6 steals, the on base percentage below 295. He doesn't walk at all, strikes out more than anybody. And you need some more development there. You like Friedel. Kalenic is starting to lose his job here, and I don't keep him for 12. And I'm just like looking up and down this roster and just like, man, I don't really count guys that I would like keeping here. Really, the only guys I would personally keep on this team would be like Mason Miller, Taj Bradley, and like maybe Friedel and Raleigh. That's like the only guys that I would personally want to keep that I think is like an actual good value.
I like his rotation more than you. I think if he kept his rotation exactly as that, if he kept because he doesn't have any keepers. Let's keep that in perspective. I think he could safely, and I think he needs to keep all 6 of those pitchers. And I think Krim would go into the league with at least could comfortably say a top 4 or 5 rotation.
You're keeping Nola for 41.
I think he has to. What choice does he have? You think Nola gets thrown back in and goes for 30?
I'm 35. Why would you keep a guy for
But
41?
that's what I'm saying. At that point, Krim needs so much. Do you take that gamble to save $6?
Yeah,
No,
because you think Nolan's
no.
going to go for 42?
I think he could. Yes.
Oh.
I mean, he's a top 20 pitcher in baseball.
At 31 years old, who's kind of had been hot and cold the last couple of years. He had 4.46 ERA the year before. His whip isn't that great anymore. He's not striking out the batters he used to. And he's just not getting any younger. There's no
He
way in
still had
hell.
200 strikeouts last year. He's fine.
Yeah, it comes from a volume standpoint, which you expect to be there, but
But I mean, but here's the thing. He's going to be one of the best strikeout teams in the league because let's look at Mason Miller getting 100 Ks. Nola's going to get 200. Kikuchi's actually a really good strikeout pitcher. Max Fried we know is not quite there, but if he pitches 180, 190 innings, he's right around 170, 180. He's not quite a strikeout an inning, but Taj Bradley's a big strikeout guy. Jose Brios is about a strikeout an inning guy. So
what? He
Krim,
had 150 strikeouts on 190 innings.
who?
Barrios.
Barrios. I'm seeing 190, 150.
Uh,
But
yeah.
but that's what I'm saying. The 3.6 and a 115 with 16 wins. I don't know why you wouldn't. The wins quality starts were how many?
Uh,
21. That's probably up there in the top 6 or 7 in the league, dude. Barrios is
no.
yes, yes. Barrios is an easy $12 keeper. With the pitching landscape of if Barrios was thrown back in, he would be $20. If if Kikuchi was thrown back in, he would be 15 to $20. I mean, Kikuchi last year or 2 years ago, we're talking again 200 strikeouts, 181 strikeouts. Yes, his ERA was a little bit higher last year, but the pitching's such a premium. Again, I'm not saying Krim's staff is good. I'm saying he needs to keep those 6 guys, and if he does, I think that's going to be a top 5 staff in the league. You also remember you have so many of the top pitchers. Me and Chad have so many of the top hitters. We're going to see a lot of bad lineups and rotations. I don't think this is one of the bad rotations.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean it has some length to it, I guess.
Right. And
But
you
it's
need that.
also not really the cheapest. And
No.
I look at it from a value standpoint. I guess I'm a little underweight on Kikuchi for 7. You know, I can't sit here and like Mitch Keller for 8 and not like Kikuchi for 7. I just don't like a over 4 ERA and over 1.2 WHIP, 16 wins quality starts, and get really excited about it. But if he gets you 206 strikeouts again, I guess you're going to be really happy with that. But I don't really trust the Angels either to
Right.
do the right
See,
thing with.
my thing was, and I know he could have traded Otani, and I talked to him a little bit about that. My thing was, I think the perfect candidate for him was there's a lot of good teams that could have been like, man, I would have really liked Mason Miller. And
Mm.
Mason Miller was I think is a very coveted $3. You're
Oh yeah.
talking a hundred Ks from a closer. That's a ton. Now, granted, he plays on Oakland. Maybe he only gets 20 saves this year, 25. That's a question mark.
Yeah.
But I think Krim could have really done well getting
He had
two just like
28 last year, and I would expect that number to go up, not down, because he
right.
didn't even start the year as the necessarily clear
I
cut.
think he might have.
Even
I think
bad
he might have, but I'm not
even
sure.
bad teams get saves.
Sometimes, and it depends. If they win 50 games this year, who knows? But my thing with Mason Miller is he could have, even if you got two dudes around 100 average draft position, two guys, cheap guys, but around 100 ADP, that would have lengthened him. And then he could have kept Otani. Something along those lines. I just think Krim was, yeah, I don't know. We're railing on him a little too much there, but I like his staff. I think it's not bad. Granted, do I love the prices? No. Do I love the names involved? No. He needs a lot of help on offense, but that's where he made that trade where he's kind of treading water with Albies and Bregman and Raleigh. But I think he can go into the draft looking for another superstar bat and feeling content with his pitching. Not loving it, but content with it.
Yeah, I mean, he needs another arm and he's going to need a big bat, and that's going to basically run him up basically his entire budget because of all these guys. So even if he tries to
Yeah.
go get Acuna and an arm, 25 for an arm and 50 for a big bat, I mean, that's only going to leave him $26 for the rest of this roster,
Yep.
and
It
there's
sure is.
too many holes to fill here. So
I
yeah,
agree.
I mean,
I agree.
looking closer at the pitching, I don't think you're wrong, especially when a lot of teams are going to need pitching. I mean, it's a middling rotation. It's not in the top, but he might be serviceable. And if all those guys go back to their career, if Albies goes, back to what he can do with the 30 home runs, 20 steals, if Bregman has another 30 home run season in him or something, it could be a decent, but I don't see a path to this team being in the top 3.
No, I don't either. I mean, I
But
don't either.
I guess
I
you
agree there.
talked me off of 1 star and into like a 2 star for him.
There you go. Yeah, if we're going to 5-star rating, I'm gonna yeah, I'll say a 2-star. I'm right there with you. I'm right about there. That'd been funny if I talked you into it and I would have went 1 star. Yeah.
All right, we'll go to Dana here. Dana, this offseason, has made a few moves. He's acquired, obviously, a few guys that are on his roster. He's got some nice pieces to kind of build on now. Kirby is kind of his starting pitcher. Probably I'd call him an ace. Now he's got Bryce Miller also in Seattle, who's a great 2 to have. Framber Valdez, that's a 1, 2, 3 that kind of measures up with most teams. Then you
Yep.
kind of go and say, okay, on his offense, he's got a $6 Ketel Marte, great value there. He's got Devers as one of his big bats now that he acquired. Paredes is going to contribute. One of the top catchers if he keeps Will Smith for $15. I wouldn't, for the record, but he
Shot.
will. No, I know you would. And Tasker Hernandez and Brent Rooker, a big bet. 39 homers last year, 11 steals,
It's one of
112.
the better values in the league too. $5.
Yeah, for $5. And he's looks like in our league format, he's gonna have outfield eligibility. And most he's utility only, but in ours it looks like outfield. He's got some really solid pieces here. I'm pretty impressed with what I see here. What do
And
you
here's the thing: almost every bat in his lineup. I mean, I would the only one I would say is Correa. Every bat in his lineup is 30 home run potential.
Yeah.
And
Well,
and that's what I'm saying. I think yes, Will Smith has 30 home. Yes. No, don't go well on that one. Come on now.
his career high in home runs is 25.
Uh, Does that not mean he's got 30 home run potential? I never said he did it. He's got would you be shocked if Will Smith hit 30 home runs?
Yes. Yes, I would.
Okay. All right. But every guy in his lineup has the potential to do it, except for Correa. I think he's pretty stacked there. And honestly, looking at his pitching staff right now, we're grading teams right now. Yours is the best. I don't think it's crazy to say Dana's is next
Hmm. I would
because,
probably take Peters above this, but Peters has got some questions to answer.
but it's
But
definitely two or three.
yeah,
I mean,
I'd say
I
I'd
mean
say probably
Valdez,
three.
I think is an ace. Kirby, I think is an ace. Valdez started off actually really tough last year, and when you really look at what his final line was, and again, by the way, a guy like Framber Valdez who had a whole point less ERA than Barrios had 5 less quality starts than Barrios. I'm telling you, 21 was a lot for Barrios. He's easy $12 keeper. But um, George Kirby, Miller, Valdez. Again, you throw in a guy like Iglesias. I think it's the same thing with you said with Devin Williams. I don't love paying 21 for a closer, but again, with the position Dana's in, it's not the worst thing in the world. We don't know where Kyle Finnegan is going. If he goes to the Cubs, all of a sudden a $3 Kyle Finnegan is the closer for the Cubs. Holy shit,
Yeah.
that's an easy keeper. So I
Yeah.
think Dana is also one of the teams I think going into the draft in a very, very good spot. I've said all podcasts, I think there's a big gap between the top teams, and a lot of them were the same teams last year, and the rest. I think Dana is one of the only teams that wasn't great last year. I think I was riding his team a lot last year because a lot of these were the same guys. They just didn't quite get it together. Dana is one of those teams that I think is going to make the biggest jump this year based on off what we're seeing so far.
Yeah, I think so. I think so too. And it looks like he'll have a little bit of money to spend too. I don't know what he's going to spend it on. We can kind of talk about that here in a sec. Yeah, I mean, Framber Valdez he's the Anthony Rizzo of the pitching position, where it's just like, it kind of looks ugly at times, but then at the end of the year, you look down and Anthony Rizzo has 30 home runs and 100
Yeah.
RBIs. And Framber Valdez, you look down and he's got 180 strikeouts
Boom.
and a
Great
3.7
ERA.
ERA.
Yep.
Or maybe even a sub 3 ERA as he's had several years, a decent whip, not a great whip, but a decent whip. And I think with Kirby and Bryce Miller, do you keep Eovaldi for 19?
And I think that's a tough one because again, I think with the way the pitching is, I think there's going to be a team that freaks out in the draft and spends about 15 to 20 on Eovaldi. I think it's just like you said earlier. I think it's very similar to last year where to get a solid pitcher, it's at 20. So if he feels comfortable with his staff, I think you could throw him back. But again, I think it's a really good staff where it's like you can never have enough arms. Where if I was leaning towards it, I would keep Eovaldi.
Interesting. And then Iglesias for 21. If he replicates what he did last year, you might keep that for 41. But another guy, he's going to be 36 this year. I don't know if you're feeling really great
He was
about
just
that. Man, a
disgusting
point
last year, though. He was
0.7 whip, a
disgusting.
1.95 ERA. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Kind of overshadowed a little bit by some of the other closers that we had, the Mason Millers of the
But even
world.
a guy like Noah Schnall, you mentioned
36.
just having $1 or $2 keepers. Noah Schnall is a guy that can just go again. Not great counting
I'd keep
stats,
him for
but
one.
yeah, oh yeah, he was a rookie last year. He kind of has a top prospect pedigree, and again, not great. Maybe he's not in your lineup, but we're talking a 350 OBP or 343 OBP, 10 steals, 15 like it's a guy that why not for $1? And I think that Dana's set up pretty well. I think he's definitely going into the draft. We'll see after. We'll see what decisions are made. I think he's going into the draft in that category of top 3 or 4 teams.
Yeah.
I would maybe, like I said, I would maybe put his. I know you gave Bryce a lot of credit earlier. I would maybe prefer to go on as Dana over Bryce. I think you could argue Dana's team's better than Bryce. I think I would rather go on as you, but I do think you could argue Dana's team's better than. Again, we're talking hairs, right? I do think these are the top. We're talking 2 of the top 4 teams, so it is interesting to go back and forth. But Dana's team is set up well.
If I go back to Bryce's team, Bryce. I mean, if you compare, he's Bryce has Juan Soto and Tyler O'Neill. This team has Devers, Teoscar, Rooker, Marte. It's kind of got some
Right.
more depth. Bryce has the aces and Skubal, uh,
And
you know,
Snell's an ace. We'll
Skubal,
give, yeah.
Snell, and Ober. Would you rather have Skubal, Snell, and Ober, or the three on Dana's team?
I would rather have Skubal, Snell, and Ober, but I also would very much take the offense that Dana has over Bryce, and I think that's the difference maker. Bryce does have Soto. He has Duran. He's got a couple superstars. But again, I feel like after that, it's a little bit more thin. Olsen, right? It's there. And again, I don't, this is not to down Bryce's team. I think you can make an argument for both. I 100% do. These are going to be two of the better teams in the league, but I don't think it's as far as we think.
Yeah, I think, and then if Finnegan signs somewhere as the closer, I think that's massive for Dana. That really puts him
Two
front line.
closers for 24 sounds a lot better than one closer for 21. If you look at it like
Sure
that.
does, sure does, and you can compete if those are your two closers. That's pretty solid. If Iglesias bringing you the ratios, even if Finnegan goes somewhere and has a close to 4 ERA, like he kind of had last year, and you can have that if you have your three aces there, and you find another pitcher in the auction. He's in great shape. But yeah,
And,
I
and
mean,
and that's the thing
I'd
too,
give him
is
at
his
least four
offense
stars
is
here.
solid. His pitching is solid, and it's one of those things he can kind of go into the draft with the money he has. Do you go in there and spend 40 on an ace? Do you go in there and spend $40 on a bat? I think he's got that kind of direction where he
Does.
really could go both.
Got flexibility. He can have some fun on draft night. He can be in on
Yeah.
everybody, and whoever he kind of wants to
Like
be.
I
So,
think he would be a perfect candidate based on where he has positions filled for like a Tatis.
yeah, he's
Because
gonna
he
need
doesn't have
he
a
needs speed. He
he has
definitely
no
needs steals.
steals in his lineup. Yeah, he's got no steals in his lineup. So I think he's a perfect candidate for a Tatis, maybe an O'Neill Cruz, something along those lines.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's okay. So I'm gonna give him. I'll give him 4 stars. I'm leaning maybe a 4.3 stars.
Ooh, okay. I'm gonna go four. I'm gonna stick safe. I'm just gonna say four. Like I said, I think I gave Bryce a four, Dana four. Like I said, I think it's very very close. But I think we're talking about some of the better teams. Yeah, no doubt.
Oh. All right, let's go to Dex's team. Dex is gonna have he's got a roster full of question marks here. Didn't It wasn't a good year for Dex last year. Started off a little bit strong, finished not so great. He kind of comes into this year with a few assets from some of the trades he made last year, but really not much that is really, really great from what I see here. You're gonna keep Contreras for 16, but he really
Easy.
struggled in the second half. Um,
Oh, dude. But again, and I hate to bring it up again. We're talking a third round pick in a redraft. He's
yeah.
kept. Yeah, I mean
Um,
he's a dog.
Yeah, I mean, looking at that stat line, with 99, 23, 92, 9 stolen bases, 365. I mean, it's basically like kind of close to prime Real Muto at that point, which,
Oh yeah.
16, I think is reasonable. Nico Horner for 6, you're probably keeping him if you get
Keep it.
31 steals. But
Yep.
if he hits low in the order, you're talking about a guy who's not going to hit homers. He's not going to drive in RBIs. And if he hits low in the Cubs order, he's not going to score a lot of runs either. And a 335 on base percentage isn't really lighting the world on
No.
fire. So I don't love a 1.5 category contributor anywhere in my roster, even if he is only $6. I like it more for one than I do six.
Yeah, I mean the runs are usually there. Like you said, if he drops the order, maybe they won't be, but the runs have traditionally been there the last couple of years, 98 and then 86. But you're right. I mean, you're looking at not only is he a two category contributor, the home runs and RBIs you can almost look at as not even like an equal, it's like a negative. So you
Mhm.
really have to be getting those other ones. So I would personally keep him at $6. Again, at a 138 ADP, I think he could do worse than that, especially with his roster. But here's what I'll say about Dexter's team. I think he is a huge X factor on draft night because you talk about having a lot of cheap, just guys you could put on your roster. Jason Dominguez at $1, love
Mhm.
it. Noevo Marte has a huge prospect pedigree, love it. They traded Jonathan India to give him a spot. Nico Horner, we just mentioned $6. Wilson Contreras, $16. Max Muncy in the Dodgers lineup. I know we're getting a little pricey at 18.
Yeah.
Based on Dexter's roster, I'm just keeping that because you need it.
Mhm.
So I don't really hate where he's at because, again, when I look at the rotation, again, I'm not saying this is a good team, but when you look at the rotation, no, you're not keeping Eflin. You'll keep Lugo for 4. Okay. You'll keep Yamamoto for 30. I would at this
Oh,
point,
you do?
yes. Oh, yeah, dude. Yes. 100%. You think he would go for less in the draft?
Last year he pitched 90 innings. I
If
guess a
you're telling me
ERA
Jacob
1.11.
DeGrom is going for 30, dude, then you're crazy if you don't think Yamamoto would.
Well over a strikeout an inning, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, you keep Yamamoto, dude.
I mean,
He's
I have a bad taste in my mouth. I just remember him being disappointing last year. He didn't live up to the hype, but I guess his final numbers weren't bad.
yeah, they were
ERA.
solid. You do worry a little bit about the innings and the six-man rotation, and that's
Yeah,
where I
I
do think
don't.
if there was a guy to pull off of for Dexter to try to get a couple more solid guys, it would be Yamamoto. But again, We talked about $20 being cheap for or expensive for a closer, but honestly, at this point, I'm probably keeping Housley. He was
He was
disgusting.
so elite, 49 saves, and
49. I mean, exactly. And that's where I'm looking at Dexter's team. And I'm thinking, okay, he really outside of Yamamoto and Housley, which again, I'm keeping, he does not have an expensive contract at all on his roster. Dexter could be one of those guys that comes into the draft. And I know a lot of teams need guys, but there's nothing stopping him from, I think, controlling the market and saying, I'll spend 40 on Cole. I'll spend 40 on Acuna. I'll
yeah,
spend 40 on Stride. I think Dexter has a really unique chance. His team's not great, but he's got a unique chance where he's got the pieces in place weirdly. So where if he got 3 or 4 superstars with the $200 he has available, things can change quick with this team.
I don't think so. I don't see it.
Eh,
Um, I wouldn't keep Yamamoto just because I think if all things go right for DeGrom, he's going to pitch 170, 180 innings. Now things aren't going to go right for DeGrom. But I don't think
Oh
there's a
man.
scenario. Do you think that there's any path to Yamamoto pitching 160 innings this year?
Yeah, yeah. He would have last year if he stayed healthy. I know that's the big what if, but he had 18 starts last year. You traditionally get 33. He was a little bit over halfway, right? He had 90 innings. He was on pace for 170, 180 innings last year.
Yeah, I don't know, but I guess if he does that kind of production, maybe, and he just based on this roster, yeah, you probably have to because what else are you going to do other than keep him? I
Right.
feel like this roster is more built for 2026 and 2025, and I would almost this would be one of the rosters where I would almost zag, and
Don't forget
I
about
would
Sandy. Don't forget about Sandy.
yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying is like, well, Sandy, I think he's going to be ready for opening day, for $5. I like that side of it, but this is a roster where I'd buy the dip on Acuna coming off injury, not ready for opening season. I'd buy the dip on Strider. And I would kind of see where I'm at after a month, but I'm probably building this roster towards next year. I wouldn't keep Muncy for 18. That's not really good value there. $18 is a lot for a guy that's only going to give you 3 categories max, and you need him to be healthy, and he's not healthy. Jason Dominguez, you're keeping for a buck regardless. Noel V. Marte, you're keeping for a buck regardless. And we don't know if either one of those guys can produce, but they're both $1 B contracts. So you can't really count on both of them being starters for you this year because you don't know if they're good at all. Nico Horner is a guy who I don't love on that contract. We just got done talking about that. So it's basically like he has no guys on his roster outside William Contreras that can actually count on to produce. And yes, he has money to spend, but he can't fill out an entire offense in the draft because
No,
he
but
has money, but there's not only not enough money to fill out the entire offense, but there's not enough guys available in the auction. And it's easy for us to sit here and be like, well, he can go get Acuna, he can go get a couple outfielders. But yeah, so does everybody else. Is going to want Tatis. Everybody's going to want an outfielder
yep.
or two. Everybody's going to want those guys. So it's not like you can just get all those guys. Everybody's
Let
going
me
to have
ask you this then. Let me
money.
ask you this then. Is there a good strategy in this? Okay. Let's say you are building for 2026. What's stopping him from still spending 50 on Acuna, 50 on that, and then when his team isn't depth and his team is riddled with injuries, he can say, "All right, competing teams, you might not keep these guys, but I see that $3 and $4 keeper on your team. Here's Acuna, here's Cole.
Yeah, I
Here,
would.
that might be better than him trying to find sleepers for $2 or $3 and build towards next
Well,
year.
you
If
kind of
I'm
do both.
Dexter, I'm going in and spending money on dudes and just dangling them, saying, "Hey, you like your team? Give me a couple keepers." And I mean, and that's not even to say his team's out of it. Like I said, I think there is a path for his team to be good, but I still think his strategy should be going in there and spending a fuck ton of money on good players.
I mean, absolutely, because you can always flip as long as they're healthy, unless they pull an Acuna. You can always flip those stars into more assets. But yeah, you wouldn't want to spend like the $20-$25 a piece on a couple different pitchers that maybe they pitch well, maybe they don't, because you don't
Right.
want to spend like $25 on Schwellenbach and then he turns out to be a bum. Then you're kind of left with nothing. But you spend the $2-$3 on a couple guys and hope they break out, and then that's
He
kind of
might be
how
going in with the most money. I have not done the math yet. We don't know what the keepers are. I
looks
think
like it.
because he's not keeping Eflin. I don't think he's keep. So you can take another $30 off the thing on. I mean, he's going to go in with close to I think $200 on the table,
Yeah. Let's see here. What is
and
it?
that's with everybody in their lineup. The number on top, right? Yeah,
Yeah. Um, so the number on top is how much money you have to spend, right?
I think so. And
So
that's also that 186 is counting Eflin in there, right? So I
yeah,
mean, again,
maybe
he's gonna
Dave's gonna have some money. Tyler's gonna have some money. but Tyler's got to fill out a lot of roster spots.
Right. But we're
Those,
talking Dexter's going to probably have well over $200 to spend. And that's what I'm saying. Why not just go in there and 45, 45, 45? I don't, that's what I would do.
yeah, I mean the well would run up quickly then. Yeah, he has $200 to spend, but three $45 players and you're done. Then
Are you? You
you got
got
to come.
70 left still where you can fill out the last six spots.
Yeah, and then you need a closer, you need your pitchers, you need all that. I mean,
Does
that's
he need a closer? That's what I'm saying. His team's in a decent position, though. He doesn't. He's got Helsley. 50 saves is going to, you pretty much need another closer to get you 15 on the year when you got 50 coming from Helsley.
yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go 1 star here.
Okay.
I just don't see it. I think there's too much work that needs to be done, and there's not enough guys available for this roster to compete in 2025. I don't see it. You can take this, Dex. Hopefully, you're listening to this at some point and say this "fuck you, Kyle" challenge accepted. I'm gonna shove it up your ass, and I hope you do. But I really don't see how you can turn this cruise ship around in 1 year.
Yeah. I mean, like I said,
That's
it's
not
going to take
available.
a little bit of maneuvering. I do think this is one of the lesser talented rosters, but I also don't think he's stuck with big contracts in the same way that other people are. Because again, 30 and 20, and then he's just going in and spending as much money as he wants. So he's in an interest. Like I said, I do think Dexter is one of the biggest X factors in the draft. He can run the draft the way he wants, and we'll see what he can do with that. Yeah.
The one thing I was going to say was I clicked over and I looked. I was like, is there a move that makes sense for Dane to acquire Nico Horner? Like, does Dane have a pitcher or a hitter here that he would trade for Nico Horner? Because Nico Horner fits on Dana's roster as just a kind of a cheap speed only
I
guy.
would do something like an Eovaldi, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Eovaldi is a keeper, and that's the exact opposite of what I'd want if I was Dex, because you don't really
Yeah, I
like
disagree. You got
there's
two
an
hundred
ace
dollars.
upside in
Throw
Eovaldi.
another depth piece into that rotation. You got $200 to spend. Now you got Yamamoto. You got Lugo. Lugo was really good last year. Like he was. I know he's older. I know it was random. Seth Lugo. I don't think people realized how fucking good Seth Lugo was last year. And I know that might
Oh,
sound silly,
yeah.
but Yamamoto, Seth Lugo, throw in Eovaldi again. It's not great, but
How about $1 Nolan Shanuel
there you go.
for 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 $6 Nico Horner, 1 year of Nico Horner. When we were talking about the trades, one of the things I forgot to mention though is like the number of years like for the Teoscar, it did hurt to give up 2 years of Teoscar for 1 year of Gunnar Henderson. I kind of forgot to cover that a little bit.
And that's
Um,
sometimes things we don't think about as much, and that's why I know we bring, and again, I know we bring up ADP a lot, but it's not the only factor because, like you said, an A contract that's even maybe $10 more expensive might be better than a guy that we've talked about this many times. Where right when that draft is over, C contracts do not matter essentially. And I know there's a little bit of trade deadline, and you got to keep under the salary cap and this and that, but C contracts, I shouldn't say don't matter at all, but they lose a lot of value right when the draft ends because now it's like boom, season started. Now you can go over that cap a little bit. Now you're not trying to get
yeah,
under before the draft. So there is a little bit of that,
yeah.
definitely.
All right. Did you said 2 star? What did you say for Dex? How
I
many stars?
said two. Like I said, I think him and Krim are in different spots because Krim's got more guys, depth guys. But I also think Krim fucked himself by not having money. Dexter's in the other hand where he's got a lot of cheap guys and he can go in the draft. So I look at them similarly, but just in
Maybe
different paths.
I'll give him 1.5. I'll give him an extra half star because he doesn't have nothing. I mean, he does have some decent pieces of Sandy Alcantara and Helsley and Lugo and
Let's
stuff.
not forget we had dudes going with zero guys in the draft last year. There was a couple teams that went in with zero guys. He's got 8, 9 keepers, I think.
Speaking of someone who will never win a championship in this league, we
Woo!
have Eroc's Dynasty Squad here. A team that is absolutely loaded on offense here. We have Ellie and Jose Ramirez, both in the top 6 of ADP. Couple that with Vladimir Guerrero, we have 3 first-round draft picks. Not quite up to Chad standards here, but you sprinkle in a couple more depth pieces like Kyle Schwarber at 27 ADP, Seiya Suzuki at 80, Corey Seager at 43, and maybe we are looking at the best, most well-rounded offense in the league. We got homers here, we got steals here, we got some OBP here. No OBP liabilities here in this lineup at all. The pitching staff leaves a little bit to be desired. We'd love to see Eric maybe round out the pitching in some kind of way, which is going to be an uphill battle in the draft. But Eric, you got to feel good about where you're at in the offseason here.
Yeah, I do feel pretty good about it. Like I said, we'll see. And again, that's where I wavered with this Gilbert, or not the Gilbert, the Seager Miller trade, where I was like, man, I know I kind of need pitching, and getting Seager just loads my offense up more. But again, that was just one of those. I'm gonna get the better player who I think is better right now, and I'm just gonna make that choice because it's fucked myself in the past by not doing that, by trying to penny pinch and going with 10 more bucks. It just doesn't work for me. So, obviously, the big what if for me is Senga. I think if Senga, we only have 1 year of data. If he goes back to that 1 year of data, I have Gilbert and Senga. And that to me is a very great 1-2.
Mhm.
Again, it's a what if. We don't know if Senga is going to return the way he did. If he does, I think Gilbert Senga is going to be right up there as a 1-2 with anybody else personally. I think it would be. Reese Olson and Michael Walker last year actually did really good. I'm a big Walker fan. I know. I mean, really, when you really look, and again, he doesn't get the 200 innings, but if you look at what Walker has done the last 3 seasons, just I think this might be crazy. I think he's one of the better $2 values in the league, just because he 3 point when he's out there
Two
and when
bucks
he
is two
pitches.
bucks.
Yeah, why not keep him? And I think his ADP is even lower.
3.3 ERA every year the last 3 years. Sure.
Yeah, and that's why I don't think my rotation's in as bad as I need pitching, no doubt about it. I need a closer, no doubt about it. But I can go and do the draft and spend $1 on my 2 last outfield spots and fill out my bench with $1 offense. And I could go out there and make a couple big splashes on pitching with the limited salary I have. And I feel like I can go in after the draft and feel very good about it because I don't think my pitching is bad. And especially we're gonna see some other rotations coming up. There's far worse in my
Yeah.
opinion.
So yeah, I mean, you need to spend on a pitcher. It looks like you have 225, so it leaves you with 65 bucks here to spend.
75. Come on,
25,
math
yeah,
guy.
yeah, math guy. Sorry, I carry the one. $75 to spend. So I'm
Not a
assuming you
lot.
need to spend like 30 bucks on a starting pitcher. So that brings you down to 45. You need to spend 15 on a closer. So that's going to bring you down to 30. So I mean, then that's going to give you $30 to spend, and you can say I
Yeah.
can either maybe get something in the outfield, or I can get another solid pitcher, or maybe you look to make another move this offseason. And I was going to actually, before we started the podcast, I was gonna be like, well, maybe this is a good home for Zach Wheeler. Would make sense for
I
Eric's.
cannot take on another salary,
Yeah,
dude.
I was gonna
What
say,
would you
but then I was like,
what
he
would
has
you
two.
offer for Zach Wheeler? Because you would not want to take on salary. So I
Yeah.
would take on salary and then have no money in the draft.
So I was like, yeah, you don't have a lot. You already have too much big salary on this to
Right.
probably want Zach Wheeler. So I didn't even bother bringing it up. So yeah, I just kind of like let that go. So I mean, yeah, it's kind of a sleeper rotation depending on what you can get. If you can get what we've seen flashes of Reese Olson, that could also be
He
things.
was
But yeah, I
really
mean, it's
solid last year. And I got him late in a random trade. And like I said, the wins aren't there, obviously. But I mean, the last 2 years, when
Detroit's
he's
going
been
to
on
be
the
good.
mound, little over 100 innings. Not bad for $1.
Yeah, and you really need Kodai Senga here. But I mean, you're talking about a lot of what ifs. You're talking about can I
Oh,
get
sure.
prime Reese Olson? Can I get something out of Senga? As Walker can continue to be himself. So, a few what ifs here, but you can't really argue with the hitting, the offense that we see here, coupled with you have enough money to address the needs of what you have here. Is there like a signing for Kenley Jensen where he does turn into a keeper, like if he signs with the Cubs or signs with somebody
Uh,
you're
I
kind of
don't think so. Just because, again, here's my thing. If Jansen does become a closer, there's a little bit of me that would think about keeping him. But I really like my 12 guys, and I don't know what one I would take off.
yeah.
Like I'm actually surprised I haven't gotten more interest on a guy like Eugenio Suarez, a $7
Yeah.
guy. And when you really look at again, you want to talk about
Okay.
consistency. When you look at his last 3-4 years, we're talking 30 bombs and 80 to 90. Not amazing. OBP's not always there, granted, but again, a $7 guy that's 30 and 90, 30 and 85. And I was just a little surprised that someone is like, hey, I'll give you a little pitching for Suarez or something, but
Mhm.
it hasn't come to be.
Yeah.
So
OBP is not great, not what you want. But you can't argue with this Aramis Ramirez archetype here of
yeah.
30 home runs in 3 of the last 4 years. You're going to get close to 100 RBIs as he typically does.
And again, I think that Arizona
Speed and
lineup is better this year.
who did they bring in anybody? I know they got Carroll and stuff,
They
but
got Naylor,
oh yeah, that's right, they got Naylor.
and
So
I know Walker's a dog, but I got a soft spot for Naylor. I think Naylor's going to kill it in Arizona.
yeah, well, I guess losing Christian Walker and gaining Naylor is kind of a wash though.
But that lineup's loaded still. Ketel Marte, Carroll, Suarez. It's
Yeah,
good.
maybe it's a decent lineup. So yeah, I mean, Suarez is actually a pretty solid piece there. So yeah, I mean, offense is loaded, and you could afford to get rid of him too. You got enough pop here up and down the
Right.
lineup that he's the kind of guy that you could look to move. So yeah, I kind of like it here. I'll give you oof, man. I'll give you 4 stars here. Yeah,
I'll
like I
take
said,
it.
it's not perfect.
Right.
Man, it's tough to differentiate between you, Dana, and Bryce on what I actually like the most because,
It's
I
very
think
different.
that this offense, you can't really compete with this offense. It's really up there with Chad. I think this offense is probably even better than Chad's, and you have some pieces in the rotation. It's not perfect, but I think you should be able to address your needs. But I think what's going to happen is you're going to see guys like you're going to go into the draft, you're going to be like, okay, well, I'll get Jared Jones and I'll get Castillo, and then my rotation will be good. But then when those guys go for 35, 36, 37, 38, because so many guys need pitching, and
Yep.
it's not like there's a lot out there. I mean, I just named the 2 top guys that are by ADP. You got Hunter Green, Castillo, Glasnow, Schwellenbach, Grayson Rodriguez. Every team's going to want those guys. And so it's easy to look at this and be like, well, I'll just get one of those guys. Well, yeah, everybody's going to want those guys. But then you're going to have to look at it and be like, well, actually, the guy you ended up with is Sean Manaea for $28 is what you had to spend on him. And then you're
Right.
like, oh, actually, my rotation doesn't look as good.
Oh, sure.
Especially if teams like Dex and Tyler and other teams that have money just outbid you. And you can't
And
justify spending that kind of money, $44 on Castillo.
and another interesting aspect of it too is, granted, we're a 14 team league, so there's going to be some spots that are thin and this and that. But again, going back to your team, going back to Dane's team with the pitching, you guys have probably, and again, we're going to look at Peter's team, which you said has very good pitching too. Are we looking at you guys pretty much collectively having 10 out of the 15 best pitchers on just 2 teams, 2 or 3 teams? I mean, and that's where I'm saying, like, I remember you mentioned it last year when I said, man, people drafted bad. And you said, well, if everyone drafted bad, doesn't that mean that, like, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And my thing is,
We did we there was
if
no
two,
perfect teams leaving their auction
I mean,
last year. I remember saying
if
that. Like,
two,
each team has their own hole.
I don't know. I kind of called the 4 teams that were good and all the rest of them were shit. I did say that. I'm like,
Better
these
than
4 are
some better
good.
than
These are shit. No, you're good. But basically, what I was saying was, if 2 or 3 teams have this abundance of all the pitchers, it's going to make all the other ones kind of even out a little bit more. And that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like me and Chad, we have 7 of the top 15 offensive players. That's
Mhm.
fucking insane. I mean, that's a huge amount that are right here. 8 out of the top, whatever it is, 8 out of the top 30, 10 out of the top 30, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So it's going to be, it's almost easier for other teams to kind of stay closer. They might not be at the top, but it might even it out a little bit more. And that's kind of what I feel like with the pitching a little bit. We might look at a team and be like, wow, they don't have a good rotation, but it might be the 6th or 7th best in the league because the top 2 are so much better than everyone else's.
Also, if your offense ends up being as good as it is on paper, as good as it looks on paper, you don't need the top rotation. If you have like just the
Exactly. Yeah.
fifth, fourth or fifth best rotation, then you're fine. You're right where you need to be because
And that
it's
was my MO
the
last year.
top pitching and the top hitting. It's not
And
going to
that's
happen.
yeah, and that's exactly how I ran it last year. I had a loaded offense last year, and I still had all of those pitching injuries. We're
How'd
saying
that
it
work
went
out for
down.
you?
What's that?
How'd that work out for you?
Silver, best I've done. I'll take it. I'll take it. And I think I even remember saying, like, around the trade deadline, I looked at it and I literally made a choice, not a choice, but I looked at it and I went, Roto, I'm not going to quite catch. Could I maybe get third? Okay, maybe I could maybe get. I knew at some point I was like Roto, Chad's team. I think your team was. It was just like, yeah, I'm just not going to quite get there. I made a couple moves at the deadline that very much went for a head-to-head kind of move. Where I was like, I'm kind of like what I said about Chad's team earlier. I'm going to go out there and win 4 or 5 even offensive categories every single week. And then I just got to win 1 or 2 pitching ones. I could have a shit whip. I think last year my whip got fucking destroyed. I could have a shit this shit, but I could get strikeouts. Maybe I'll get a few saves. As long as I'm winning 4 offensive categories a week and I'm winning 6, 7 head to head total, I'm in the playoffs.
Mhm.
But injuries can happen. So we'll see.
Baseball, anything can happen in the postseason.
Anything can happen.
All right, which brings us to our next team, which is our reigning champ, Lincecum prematurely. We have a pretty solid team on paper here that has some good offensive pieces. You have your Freddie Freemans, your Mike Trouts, your Yordan Alvarez's, Manny Machado, Bryson Stott, even some decent filler pieces like your Spencer Steers, your Kerry Carpenters of the world, maybe your Stephen Kwans, Brendan Donovan for $1, Volpe for 15. In the rotation, you have a decent pitcher, Logan Webb, maybe like a fringe 10 to 15, top 10, 15 guy. Rodon, if he keeps him, maybe like a top 15, 20 guy for 17. Kevin Gausman, probably not keeping for 35. Christopher Sanchez for 6. You got to like that value there for Christopher Sanchez. Overall, primed to be in the mix again next year. However, I'm really just glazing over the fact that I actually don't like this roster at all. I was actually saying a lot of nice things. I don't care for it whatsoever. I
Wow. Oh,
look up
wow.
and
Wow.
down
Wow. Wow.
I look up and down this roster, and if I've clicked on Jordan's roster, I was like, yeah, Jordan likes to make trades. Let me try and see what pieces I want to trade for Jordan. Let me see what I would actually acquire. Who would fit into one of my 12 keepers? Okay, no, 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 no. Maybe Christopher Sanchez. Maybe he has one piece that would be one of my 12 keepers that I would keep over maybe my last guy. I don't like any of the values across this board. Now, as you've mentioned, this team will be good enough because it has enough star talent from top to bottom. But I think it'll be just good enough to be mediocre. And this team is primed for another fifth and sixth place finish. And maybe he'll get lucky in the postseason again. But let's see, he finished in fourth last year in Roto. I don't think this is a fourth place team. I think it's going to be worse than that. I don't like it at all. I think the value of this is bad. He's not going to have a lot of money to spend. Right now, he has $302. Right now, he has negative $2 to spend in the auction. So he's not going to be able to fill any holes. He's not going to be able to get any pitching, and his offense isn't that good, even though he has some name brand guys on here. I don't like it at all. I think he's in bad shape. 2 stars.
Dang, there's a hot take right there. Um, Again, I look at this again. You can look at rosters differently. You can kind of compare. Oh, this one's got this one's got that. But beside me and Chad, I think you can argue this is definitely a top three lineup. I mean,
But
when
because
you're
it's
looking
a full lineup, there's 12 guys there. That's probably
right,
why.
and here's what he's not keeping Trout for 32, right?
I would hope.
We
I
we
mean, I hope
talked
he
about
does, but
we talked about Freeman at 47. I mean, that frees up almost $100 right there.
yeah.
So he's depending on the decisions he makes, he's gonna. But we're talking like a pretty damn full. And granted, I wouldn't keep Stout at 20. I think
Are
that
you
would free
keeping
up.
Machado for 31?
That was another one I looked at. But again, where he's been in, look, go pull up. We can hate Machado as much as we want, dirty player, this or that.
Yeah, I don't like
We
the
pull up
player. I
his
like
stat
the
line. It's just I know he's not stealing. I know sometimes his
11 steals
OBP.
last year, actually.
Yeah, I know sometimes his OBP can be a little bit down where you'd like it, but he's a keeper, yeah. Even Volpe, keeper. But it's just one of those things where I think Jordan's team, I mean, he was in the championship last year. This is a lot of his roster. Yet granted, he made trades with me, which was in the championship. So we're swapping good players, but this was a championship roster last year. He might have not been in the top two. Roto might have slid in there a little bit, but I think this lineup is right there behind me and Chad's. I do think there's a little bit of a gap. I don't think this has as much star power, but
So
there's no doubt that I think this is easily a top 4 or 5 lineup. Pitching wise, I don't think he keeps Gosman either, and I think that's another huge chunk that comes back in. So we're talking he's going to go into the draft with probably more money than me. When you throw Trout back in, when you throw Gosman back in, maybe Stott, I don't know. Webb leading your rotation.
but he's gonna
Rodon
need 2 closers.
going to need to close, and I think he's going to go into the draft with well over $100 to spend. We'll see though. But I really Steer, Machado, Volpe, Jordan. I think his lineup's probably top 4 or 5. I don't know if I can safely say that, but I think it is.
If I look at this lineup from like a snake draft perspective, what we would kind of say is like, okay, from his first round pick, he doesn't have one. His first round pick would be Jordan Alvarez, who's ADP 18. Then his second round pick would be who would be his, I guess Machado at pick 33. His third round pick, who's his third best player? Spencer Steer. His fourth round pick would be Logan Webb. His fifth round pick would be like Mike Trout, but he's not keeping him anyway. So now
Right.
you're looking at like
You're like your next best. Yeah.
Harry Carpenter, Kevin, Christopher Sanchez, Rodon. So it's just like every time it's just like it'd be like he reached on every single pick and didn't get good value. The contracts, so he does not only does he not have great players, it's not star led, and he doesn't have any money to spend. So I just think it's not in a good position to be
And
successful for 2020 at all.
And that's why looking at the trades between me and him, I'm kind of like I said, I think the trades worked out for both of us. I think there's a lot of good players going back and forth, but I was a little surprised that we did become trade partners because I felt like he was in a similar situation to me where he couldn't really take on big contracts. And I kind of traded 3 away and got Vlad back. When I think you could argue that this is a team that could maybe trade 2 or 3 contracts or a big contract and get something back. So that's where it was kind of odd that we did end up being trade partners. But I still think I was going to say this. There's still 6 teams we have to go over, right? 6 teams. We've gone over the good teams in the league. This is the last one.
Mm, mm,
I mean, this is the last, and I'm not saying it's a great team.
mm.
I think this is still very safely a top 5 team in the league. I think the teams we talked about, me, you, Bryce, Chad, Dana, this is the last good team. The rest of these rosters, you're gonna have to draft really well.
Yeah.
I don't hate this roster as much as you do. I'm not going to give my safe 4 on it because I do think other teams are going into the draft in a better spot with more money or in better, keepers. I'll say 3.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, not that it doesn't have keepers, it's just not desirables. I think Spencer Steer is a good, decent keeper. I think that Brendan Donovan for $1 is a decent keeper. Jordan Alvarez for 46 is a keeper. Kerry Carpenter for 5 is a decent keeper. Christopher Sanchez, decent keeper. I don't know about Logan Webb, Carlos Rodon, like they're okay, but just not guys that I would look to
Right.
acquire via trade at all. They're just not.
And that's where I agree with you because I think me and Chad's teams are more loaded. Your team is more loaded. Where I think even if he went and got a $40 player, I don't think he quite catches up to us yet because like we know he needs a pitcher. Okay, go spend 40 on Garrett Cole. Is his offense better than mine or Chad's? No, still not. Is his pitching better than yours? No. Dana's? No, still not. So I agree with you. I think he's kind of in an interesting spot where I don't know. I think he's a top 6 team. I don't know if there's a path to a top 3 team, but he made the playoffs as the 6th best team last year and won.
Yeah,
So
valid. Yeah, anything can happen once you get to the postseason. And he proved that. All right, so it brings us to our next team, Peter's team, who was rebuilding from, a good chunk of last year. From not too long into the season, he started
yeah,
rebuilding. Pulled off a big trade, trading away a few pieces of Tyler. Um, got several pieces back from Tyler that we like, including the Shohei
wow.
Ohtani of the world, the Paul
That
Skeens
trade still blew my mind last year.
of the world,
Tyler could be in such great spot. Yeah.
and then he made another trade with me, acquiring Brian Wu and Shane McClanahan, and I mean, good on him. I tried getting Jackson Churio from him, and he didn't want to trade him. He's like, I believe in him. I think he's going to break out in the second half of the year, just like Gunnar Henderson. And sure enough, Jackson Churio broke out in the second half of the year, like Gunnar Henderson did, and had himself a decent year. He's primed, and man, Jackson Churio, I think being way overdrafted, but man, the 23rd overall pick
Yeah.
is Churio.
And
Wow.
people laugh at when we wanted prospects to be drafted. This is why, man, someone was going to spend 2025 on either him or Jackson Holiday last year as those big prospects, and it worked. Cheerio is very much worth a $20 player. You know, he worked out. It was good for him.
You said that we were out of contenders when we were done with Jordan. I would much rather be Peter than be Jordan right now. Peter's got a loaded pitching staff. He's got Shohei Ohtani for 11. He's got his closer, Felix Bautista, for 6. He's got Brian Wu for 11. Paul Skeens, the top pitcher in baseball, for 13. He might even keep Frankie Montas for 1. Shane McClanahan for 4. And if you include all those values, all those cheap contracts, that's like $30 between all those guys. It probably makes
Yeah.
sense for him to keep Garrett Cole at 46, which is why I kind of think he just might.
Yeah, see
Maybe
that's where I
maybe
disagree. I think you're right on the rotation. I think McClanahan, Skeens, keep Montas at $1. I think this is right up there with you and Dana as the best rotation.
Mhm.
I completely agree
Absolutely.
with that. So maybe I shouldn't say looking at it with Ohtani. I didn't really even see Ohtani down there and stuff like that, but so that makes a big difference. Bautista too.
Yeah.
I do think this is behind you and Dana. I do think this is the next best rotation, which is why I think it stays
This
that way.
rotation is way better than Dana. Are you nuts?
Oh, I don't know.
So he's got the ace. He's got the number one pitcher in baseball. Shane McClanahan, if he is back to himself, which could be the case. Maybe he is,
Uh,
maybe he isn't, but we assume that he is. He's going to be ready for opening season. He's better than any pitcher that Dana has. Then
right.
you have Shohei Ohtani, who when he's on the mound is just about as good as anybody when he's on the mound. Felix Bautista, top closer in the league, inning for inning, if he's back. And then you round it out with guys like Brian Wu and a 2.89 ERA and a .989 WHIP.
Right.
And
And that's why I
maybe
said he's right there with you and
he's
Dana. I didn't
way
say he was
better than Dana.
behind.
He might even be better than me. I'd still take mine, but I also have much higher salary on mine than he does too.
Right.
His rotation's cheaper. His
But
might
he's
be just as good as mine, but it's even cheaper.
but easy top 3 rotation. That's what I'm saying. When you Dana and Peter have this many of those guys, it's going to make all the other rotations even out a little bit more. And that's why, yes, there's a thinness of pitching, but man, you guys have, and that's why I kind of disagree on him keeping Cole, because I think Peter stays a top three rotation without Garrett Cole.
Yeah.
So I think if
He has innings
anything,
concerns though, and that's why I kind of would like to have the floor of Garrett Cole.
yes, yes, because I do think again, I'm the one that usually stays away. You're usually the innings limit guy that brings it up. I worry a little bit about this team and the innings limits because of McClanahan, because of Skeens. Skeens is not pitching 220 innings if the Pirates have 60 wins in September, guys. It's not happening.
Yeah,
So
but he threw 133 last year. I mean, if the he follows the normal ramp up process, that's 160, 170. That's fine. That's
yeah, that's fine.
most of
Right. But he ain't hitting 200, 220.
yeah,
No,
probably not.
and that's what I'm saying. And I think you could see that with McClanahan. Tampa's very careful with their pitchers. Seattle could arguably have a 6-man rotation this year. Shohei Otani's not getting 30 starts. I think even when he did start for the Angels, granted, you want him in your lineup, no doubt about it. But you're getting one start a week, and you might get 20. I don't even know what his career high in starts is. I think it's around 25 or 26. Again, you're taking it. You're 100% taking it. But I do think there is a little bit of an innings limit worry with this rotation. I think the 200 inning mark is almost becoming an anomaly in itself, where you can't even use that as the barometer. I think you almost have to use 180 now. But I don't know if he's got anyone really that's going to get close to that. Because even Wu last year, as good as he is, as much as you wrote him a lot, great. First year, 87 innings. Last year, 120 innings. So I do like this rotation a lot. He's got depth. He's got arms. It's definitely right there, like I said, with you and Danes. But I do think there's an inning worry. And I think you got to throw back Colin and get a superstar bat, because I'm sorry, Bryce's offense is better than this. You're talking Aaron Judge. You just said you like Cheerio, but you just said he's getting overdrafted. You have Aaron Judge, and then who?
He's getting overdrafted at the 23rd spot, but
Sure,
you're keeping him for 20 for sure.
definitely,
Old Kauser for a
100%.
buck, you're
But
keeping him.
Cheerio's your second best player. Do you love
Yeah, but he's
that?
a second round draft pick, so that makes sense.
Great. Totally. But do you love that?
When your rotation looks as good as it does, absolutely.
But your next best offensive player, and again, this should be addressed in the draft, right? Because we're grading them like what they can do. Your next best player is like we're ADP wise, we're at 150. What is that? Ninth, 10th round pick?
Yeah, so he's got some filling out to do. So if he had the second overall pick, so that would be Aaron Judge. That would mean he would have the 27th pick coming back, right? In a 14 team league. Well, that's where Churio is going off the board at 23. So it's actually kind of like a value. And that's completely ignoring the fact that he also has a couple guys in Skeens and Otani. Well, I guess no, Otani's
Oh,
not being drafted that way.
Peter
Skeens
set
is
up
being
well.
drafted this
I don't
first round.
debate that Peter set up well. I just don't think I think you're a little too hard on Jordan's team in comparison. I mean, I don't I think you could, yes, you could say I would rather be Peter heading into the
This,
draft.
this team
I
also
will,
has an extra $100 to spend over Jordan because even if he doesn't keep Cole, then he's going to have oh gosh, what $160 to spend.
yeah, but even Jordan's going to have over 100. Like I said, I don't think he's kept keeping Eflin and
His team
Trout.
looks a lot worse if you don't keep those players. Even what it is, if you throw away back those salaries of Jordan's
I don't know.
and
Like I
all
said,
those.
I think it's close. I like Peter's team. I do think it's very much 6-7 range, 5-6-7 range, but I'm not taking it over Dana's or Bryce's or yours or mine or Chad's. I'm just not. I mean, it's in a good spot. It's definitely in a good spot. We'll see what he does. But Peter, we also know the owner is
Hmm.
notorious for not having any depth on his team
Yeah,
ever. So
yeah.
I could see him coming out of the draft with his offense still not looking good.
Yeah, I could see it. I could see this was a team last year where we didn't like some of his utilities, some of his other guys, but I would much rather be Peter's team than Jordan's team by a country mile heading into the draft
And I
because
think
I
that's a
still
fair
think that
argument. Yeah.
that you can fill a lot of these spots, and he's going to have a bunch of money to spend, and he can fill out his roster, add an extra outfielder here, add a third baseman here. He'd be a guy that like Bregman would make a lot of sense for if he gets thrown back or whoever else.
Sure.
It's probably going to Austin Riley ends up back in the auction, he'll kind of be in on the Austin Riley sweepstakes there as well. I'll give Peter. I don't want to give everybody 4 stars, but I'm kind of leaning that way. Maybe 3.5. No, no, I'm gonna give him 4. He's getting 4 because I think this rotation is tops in the league. It's up there. It's me and him, a tier above everybody else. And I think the offense is a good start. He's got some work to do in the auction, but he's got the money to spend. And so I think that building your roster, starting with Aaron Judge, Jackson Churio, and even if you include the likes of he had one more in here. I think it might keep Colson Montgomery and even maybe even Lane Thomas for $1 and $6 respectively, and Colton Cowser.
He'll keep Colson Montgomery. He's a White Sox fan. He's got to hold on to some hope.
Exactly. So I don't think it's in bad shape at all. I like the shape that he's in.
I mean, I do too. Like I said, I do think he's got an opportunity to be one of the better teams. I don't disagree with that at all. And so maybe I misspoke a little bit by saying Jordan was the last good team or in a stable team, but let's get to the rest of these.
All right. We got Return to the Blah. Love the team name, Dave. Welcome back. Unfortunately, Jay was not kind to you. He left you with dog scraps. Here, we do not have a lot to work with here on this roster. He's made one trade to acquire Mitch Keller. I think you probably keep Pablo Lopez at 41. I don't love the value, but given everything we've already mentioned on this pod, you might just want to lock that in at 41. I know there's some teams that are looking to acquire Pablo Lopez, so if you're not going to keep him, trade him somewhere to some team that needs an ace, almost ace, a fringe ace type player. He's drafted like one, 59th overall. I love the piece of Marcelo Zuna. I don't know if there's a team out there that can maybe give him 2 or 3 keepers for $13 Marcelo Zuna and maybe, kind of build a little bit that way. But oh man, there's a lot of work to be done in the auction with this team here. He's got a heavy task in front of him.
Yeah, he does, and obviously I don't always look at who's in the lineup as who you're keeping by any means, but I don't know if I keep either of them, but I would personally keep Reynolds over Arenado at this point myself. But that might make his offense look a little bit better. But I agree with you. There's no superstars on this team. There's no
30.
superstar bats, and the bats you are paying for, I would argue, like Altuve, again, landscape of the league, he gets thrown back in. Yeah, he's going to go for 20, $25, but he can't lead your team. I mean, he cannot be your number one bat on the team. He's
No.
also getting older. He's going to be 35 years old.
As
So
you said, not everybody can have 2 or 3 first-round picks. The well is kind of running dry,
it's
and
running dry. It is running dry. But I just think it's Dave's got a tough path because I think he's one of those teams that he needs pitching and hitting. I mean, we're gonna say that about a lot of these teams
he
coming
needs
up.
so much. It's almost like he can't even be in on Tatis
Right.
and Julio and stuff
And
because
and I feel like we're going to say that about a lot of these teams coming up. I hate to say that, but I think when we look at these last 5 teams, that we're going to be saying a lot of the same things here because I just think there's a lot of work to be done, and you got a lot of spots to fill. We're almost all the teams we've talked about so far. You could argue have 12 keepers or 10 or 11.
yeah,
Looking at this,
it's been surprising how many keepers there ended up being on each of these
right?
teams.
And I think that's for the most part, almost every team we've talked about has that.
Yeah,
This
that's
is the first team I've looked at where I'm like, we might have 6 or 7. And again, we
yeah,
talked about this in the last draft. It's tough to go into the draft and get 20 dudes or
yeah.
19 dudes. You want to go in with 12 keepers because then you can go and say, I need 14 guys, not 21 guys. I do
Mhm.
think, and that's where you might have to just keep guys to keep guys. Like, do you just keep Reynolds at 30? Do you just keep Tanner Beebe at 22 because he's a top
Castellanos,
guy?
17.
Right. And that's where you mentioned earlier, Pablo Lopez. I was under the impression, hey, sucked last year, 41. I'm throwing him back in. But again, looking at Dave's team, is that a guy you just go, I kind of got to keep him. I wouldn't keep
Pitched
him
well
on
in the
my
second half. I don't know.
yeah, I wouldn't keep him on my roster, but
Yeah,
does Dave have to keep him on his? You know what I
yeah,
mean? And that's where it's tough because we're starting to get into the rosters where I don't know if the keepers are there and we're in danger zone.
yeah. Dave, it's not your fault, but you're getting 1 star.
Yeah, I'm gonna give 1 star here.
You're lucky I am not giving half a star out to anybody. We have sliding into the DMs, we have a team that is loaded with players, loaded with keepers. I don't know. What do you think?
I here's the thing, and Chris is kind of one of those Dexter teams, I think, as well, where Chris, I mean, I think a lot of these guys, like for example, can you get Alvarez back for $2, $3 probably? But I think Chris is in one of those positions where he's got a pretty balanced offense. Simeon, Witt, I don't think he keeps Robert. I don't even know if he keeps Springer at 18. Yelich, I would keep at 24. Yelich has kind of turned it around. But if you start with that core of Simeon, Witt, and Yelich, it's not bad. But again, I just don't know if a lot of these guys are keepers. I don't think you keep McMahon at 14, Diaz at 6, Alvarez at 9. Edmund at 7. Sure, I guess if you need some. I just feel like he's just got too many guys that are just a little too expensive. If Edmund was 3, sure. If Gurriel was 3, sure. But I think they're at that point in their contracts where you do kind of got a penny pinch a little bit there. Because again, I just don't know if this team's got 12 keepers. On the other hand, looking at the rotation, I think that's where he's got some value because I do think you keep almost every single one of those guys not named Charlie Morton.
Hmm.
I think you keep Munoz, you keep Duran, you keep Peralta, you keep Crochet, you keep Cease. And then again, I think there's a gap. There's a definite gap, but I think you could argue after you, Dana, and Peter, and I think that can compete. But it's also tough. So we'll see. I just there's just too many guys that aren't keepers. I think you got 6, kind of like Dave's team. I think it's better than Dave's team. He's got better values for sure, but I think he's in the same boat of having 6 or 7 keepers.
I have to think he might have a few more than that, because I think he's got several pitchers that he's keeping, and the
That's 6
rotation's
keepers.
pretty
Yeah.
decent. The rotation's pretty decent. This is one of our top strikeout teams in the league. My concern is how does this team kind of break through the purgatory? Because if he's kind of just running it back with kind of what he had last year, how does he kind of get better? If he keeps these high salary guys like Bobby Witt and stuff, that obviously guys you want to have, but how does this team kind of get better? I'll start with the rotation because the rotation is looks pretty good. If he keeps Crochet, which is one of our top values in the league, maybe the top for $1, 2 years at $1 this year, $6 next year. Being drafted 44th overall, you gotta love that. Dylan Cease for 28, probably gonna keep that for the strikeouts low. Never been a Cease fan, but if he's gonna go back to a 1.06 WHIP, that's the Dylan Cease that I didn't see coming because
He's
I
been
never liked
awesome.
Cease with a 1.4 whip like he had before in 2020 when he had 1.44 and in 2023 when he had 1.41 whip. That's when I was completely out on Cease. But man, to completely flip the script and bring a 1.06 whip, that makes him really valuable when you have a 224 strikeouts as well. So I'm probably keeping him for 28. I don't think there's really much doubt about it, especially with this pitching landscape that we're facing here. So to start your rotation, Crochet, Cease, and Freddie Peralta, you're getting a ton of strikeouts. You're getting 620 strikeouts, 630 strikeouts from those 3 guys. I think I would rather have those 3 over Dana's 3. And then you have your Johan Duran, closer most of the time. Munoz, who I think is going to be closing again with Seattle, right?
I would think so, yeah.
Oh, I mean, he has his 2 closers for a total of $20. Then maybe you keep a guy like Clark Schmidt, 2.85 ERA for $5. I think this rotation's actually kind of set, and that's 6 keepers right there just in his
And
rotation.
he's got two
Oh.
two on offense.
Yeah, so let's switch over to the offense. I think he probably keeps Yelich for 24. His stats
Yep.
don't look good because of the back injury. Plus, he plays in the town that Chris lives in, up in Milwaukee there.
Although I do think it's a very hard fringe 24 keeper. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, it
it's
wouldn't
yeah.
be my favorite. I wouldn't love it, but if he even to say so last year he had for how many at bats did he have? He had not even half a season, 270 at bats, 11 homers and still 21 steals. I mean, if
Yeah.
you can't really double it, but if you did, holy cow, 22 homers, 42
Yep.
steals. Yeah, you'd take that with
And
a
you keep Witt and
406 on base
Simeon.
percentage. Yeah,
You
you're
keep Witt and
keeping.
Simeon, so he's at 8 or 9 keepers, but
Yeah.
definitely better shape than Dave. But there's a lot of work still to be done here.
Yeah, so and then you probably keep Bobby Witt. I don't think you keep McMahon or really much of anybody else. Maybe Alvarez, probably not.
Yeah,
So
you
yeah,
can just
there's a
get
little bit of work that needs to be done. So I guess the question is he's I know he has 100 offers in his inbox for Garrett Crochet, including 1 or 2 from me. What do you think is the move here? Do you think that he can put together an offense through the offense, knowing the offense that's available in the auction? Do you think it can even be done to make Chris a contender, or does he have to like maybe make a trade here? I don't even know.
Chad and Chris are perfect trade partners because Chad's got all those salaries. Chris can hold the leverage because Chad's got the salaries and knows he's got to get rid of it. Chad's been
That would
promoting
be a
Corbin.
nightmare if Chad could acquire Garrett Crochet or Dylan Cease or somebody.
Yeah, and that's kind of what have Chris be able to be like, hey, I got the $1 maybe best value in the league. I want Corbin Carroll and I want something else because Chad again, Chris has the leverage. Chad can't go in with that much salary. Chad's
You
got to
need way
give up.
more than Corbin Carroll for that
Yeah.
in another piece because you don't want 1 year of Corbin Carroll basically at value. Dylan's or freaking Garrett Crochet would go for $40 in
And that's what I'm
go for
saying.
$40
And
in
that's
this
what I'm
draft.
saying. Does
Then you
Chad
need to make
trade?
up $39 of keeper value somewhere.
That's what I'm saying. I think Chad, a move that you could make is like Flaherty Sonny
Yeah.
Gray, and Corbin Carroll.
Yeah. You probably wouldn't need Sonny Gray, but maybe sure. Yeah. If
Or
Chad,
sorry, more offense.
okay,
You're right. You're right. It's just tough because there's you could throw Cronenworth in there, or maybe even a Bellinger or something. I don't even know if that's quite enough there, but I know what you mean. But get some. I think Chad and Chris could match up. I really do because again, when we're looking at the teams with 8 or 9 keepers, go to the guys that have 12 or 13. Those are the 2-for-1s that can happen. Me and you can't do a 2-for-1 really. Me and Bryce, me and Dave, it's tough to do because we're stacked up. But a team like Chris, dangle that $1 guy, go and get 2, 3 dudes back.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly here for it. So yeah, I mean, if Chad says Flaherty, if he says Flaherty, I would probably want Lindor. I don't think that he would be wanting to move Lindor in a deal like that. But if it's
And if
Flaherty,
I'm Chris, I'm
Lindor,
doing
and another Pete, maybe and Renhefo, now
maybe I would maybe even do it if it was just for Lindor and Flaherty. I really might. I mean, we got
I
to
still
remember.
that's still not enough value for me.
I don't know, Garrett. Let's not forget Garrett Crochet average. I know he had the 200 strikeouts. I get it, but you've been hearing me say all offseason the dude did not even average 5 innings a start.
Mhm.
You,
Yeah.
look what were his wins quality starts last year because we're and by the way, I had to do a little fact check and some around the horn Tony Reale. Jose Brios, you ready? Zach Wheeler led the league with 26 win quality starts.
Shout
Okay.
out.
The next guy was 22. Brios had 21.
Yeah, I think I had that pulled up here. Yeah, yeah, I did look at that. You were right there. You hit the nail on the head there. Shout out Zach Wheeler. It was Zach Wheeler and Scooble. Between them two, they only had 3 starts on the year where they did not get a win quality start. I looked at the
Yeah.
total number of their total starts and their win quality starts. It was a kind of a wild stat there that I was noticing. So
Right.
basically, 90% of the time you're getting a win quality start from those guys. So,
Yeah.
those
It's
aces
a
are
lot.
kind of hard to find. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely putting Zach Wheeler and pieces on the table for Crochet and others. So you're gonna have to you
Well,
hopefully
and that's why looking at your team, obviously Zach Wheeler's a better pitcher than Crochet, but you also got to realize, is it a thing where you give up Zach Wheeler in a piece to free up that much salary? Or do you look at the draft and
I
see
would give up Wheeler, Riley, and probably a guy like Royce Lewis for Crochet.
straight up 3-for-1?
Yeah.
See, if I was Chris, I would do that
Yeah, maybe. He's been a little tepid. I see him face to face, and he
because
does
that would
not
still
ready to
give
deal.
him
So,
at least $100 to spend on the draft. I would think,
yeah.
even if not more, because again, he doesn't really have expensive keepers.
Mhm.
So I mean, Bobby Witt, obviously, but
Um,
And again, I don't love
I got
Simeon
that.
at 30 either, but I do like Simeon. So it's just tough. There's just a lot of
Like the
offense to
player,
get
not
up.
the price.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's go to Phil's team. We are 2.5 hours in
Woo!
pod. We
That's
have
about that's about par for the course, though.
yeah, and we're still gonna probably save an hour at the end to talk about how we despise the Dodgers and all that kind of stuff. This is gonna be the megalopod here. All right, so we got Christian Walker keeper at 18. I don't think maybe Diaz. I think he likes Diaz. You like Diaz for 6?
Yeah, top 100 player, man. Got to do it.
Yeah. Garcia, I don't he right now they say he's the full-time third baseman for Kansas City. If you get 37 steals out of him for $4, I think you probably keep that too. I didn't
Oh, yeah.
realize he's being drafted as high as he was, 181. He's in the top 200. You probably keep that for 4.
Yep.
Jazz Chisholm, you gotta like him for 19. Wyatt Langford for 6. Yeah, Josh Lowe, he goes back and forth on Josh. He wants to love Josh Lowe. 14's a little too expensive, but
Yeah.
how Josh Lowe at his peak, I mean, he's a close to a 30-30 guy. Well, maybe not 30-30, but I mean, he had 20 homers, 32 stolen bases last year or 2 years ago. Last year, he only had 350 at bats, but he did have 10 homers and 25 steals. So, I mean, if you give Josh Lowe 500, 550 at bats, you're looking at 18 homers, close to 40 stolen bases, maybe. Maybe that is a $14 keeper after all. Mullins, you're not
Got to
keeping.
happen though. He's got to get to 500 at bats.
Yeah,
It's tough to
exactly.
do, and he's never done it.
Yeah, but not a ton after that. A lot of maybes, a lot of injury concern guys. The rotation, Brown probably keeping Baz for 2. And he likes his Merrill Kelly. Class A for 19. He's going to keep him. Turned out to be, I didn't think he'd be a keeper for 19, but yeah, when you put up a .6 ERA and a .65 WHIP, yeah, you're going to hang on to
It's
that guy.
elite.
What's that?
I said that's elite right there.
That is sure is elite. That's my AL Cy Young. Screw you,
No,
Terry
no, no,
School.
no.
And And
I think Hunter
maybe
Brown's a keeper. I'd say Hunter Brown's a
yeah,
keeper.
Hunter Brown's a keeper. He pitched really well in the second half. You know, the 1.27 whip isn't great, but I think in spurts he was really solid. You hope he kind of pieced it together. Lodolo for four, maybe 220 ADP. Probably keeping Singer for one, 228 ADP, but a buck's a buck. So you're probably just
Yep.
going to keep him there. And it's not like Phil has 11 other guys that he would rather keep.
And,
So,
and
um,
Singer's whip was a little high last year, but if you actually look at everything else,
yeah.
you'd be like, oh, that could be my fourth or fifth. I mean, a 370 ERA, not awful. 170 Ks and 179 innings, not awful. The whip was high. The whip 1.275. That's a little high, but that's like you said, for a dollar, you just keep it.
Yeah, so this team has some work to do. This team is not a contender, and it doesn't really have a clear path knowing what's available in the auction. There's not a lot
Peter
of
Scott though at $10 too, right? If he closer.
yeah. It's a you're not going to know. I mean, you're rolling the dice, but with the fact that they've signed all the guys that they signed, and they still have guys that were very effective in the closer role in that bullpen, I'm not willing to take the risk. Maybe for $10 it wouldn't hurt, but like I'm not going to be comfortable putting him in my lineup for a while unless they come out and say he's our guy, he's our
My
closer.
thing though is you're not getting many closers for 10. And I get that, but I don't it's the Dodgers. They spend money. I guess this might sound silly coming out of my mouth. I can't see a team spending $20 million on a seventh, eighth inning guy.
If anybody's going to do it, it's going to be the Dodgers.
It's going to
And
be
it
the
also
Dodgers.
hurts that
I agree with you.
it also
I
hurts that
think
he's a
because
lefty
he's a
though.
I think because he's a lefty and Yates is a righty, I do think more often than not we will see kind of a matchup who's going to get the ninth role. But we're talking about a team that's going to win 105, 110 games. I
Yeah.
don't. I see a world where Yates and Scott both have 20 to 25 saves. So if you're telling me, hey,
Yeah, but if
Scott's
you
going to get you 20 to 25 saves at $10, I'm just going to keep it.
Yeah, but if you keep him in your lineup all year and he only gets you 22 saves, that's not good.
But if
You
he's but
the guys that
if
get
he's
you
giving you
22
the
saves are the
whip.
guys that kind of bounce back and forth or in the role, out of the role. At least you know when to bench him and when not to bench him and
But
stuff.
if you're getting, I mean, you got to think though. He only had 22 saves last year. He had a 1.1. He had a 1.75 ERA. Again, he only had 22 saves last year, so we're talking in that same range. A 1.75 ERA. He had 84 strikeouts. I mean, we're talking pretty elite numbers.
72 innings though. That's a lot of innings.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But I mean, we're still talking. If you're in that 80 to 100 strikeout range as a closer, that's pretty fucking good. So I don't know. 2025
He actually
saves.
pairs with Class A pretty well if you take that
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
approach.
Because Class A is going to be the guy. And that's why I think it's a perfect spot for a guy like, if I was like, oh, Scott's my number one closer, I'd feel like, well, I don't love that. On Phil's team, it's like you said, it's perfect.
Hmm. Yeah, I could kind of see a scenario there. I just the lack of knowing is just I don't like
If he
it.
was even 15, I'd even start going, but I think 10, I like it.
Yeah. Phil and I have had some negotiations. We kind of go back and forth a little bit, as most of us do. Right now, where he's got some interest in Zach Wheeler. Zach Wheeler would be a nice stud to add to this rotation. If Zach Wheeler's your one, and then you kind of chase it with some of these other guys here, then maybe you're talking about a decent top half rotation. But he still kind of needs some work on the offense here.
A lot of work. Yeah.
Chisholm, Langford, and Christian Walker is a good start, but it's not
Ooh,
certainly not star-studded. But
no.
if you take, I don't know, he doesn't have like a first or second round
And
pick.
that's kind of and that's I think that's that team's MO is even on the pitching, there is no star.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Jazz Chisholm's great. I think his numbers improve in New York. I think that's a great spot for him. I love Jazz Chisholm, but I just can't quite say like that's my star number one guy in the lineup. And again, I don't know how much money Phil's going to have. Granted, he does not have big contracts. So again, I do think he's in a very similar spot as Dexter, where he's got to control the market because
But there
this is
isn't much of a market. Yes, he has money, but we also list five other teams that have
right.
every team has
Exactly.
money. So we
Someone's
can't
going to
just
have to.
assume he's going to get Julio Rodriguez.
But and that's my thing. Some team that's in this kind of bottom half of the league needs to go out and overspend. If Phil needs to go and spend 45 on Garrett Cole and then spend 45 on Tatis,
It might
his
be
team,
55 for Garrett
right?
Cole. The way things
It
are
might be,
shaping up.
but his team's better because of it, and he can spend that money. This offense, I don't care if you add one superstar bat, it's just still not there. There's just too many guys. And like you said, okay, now when you spend all that money, he's not keeping all these dudes, right? Torkelson, Mullins. So now you got to fill out the rest of your lineup and make it bare. So I think Phil is in a tough position heading into the draft because I think you can go either way here, and there's no clear course.
So the trade I have to fill is I have Zach Wheeler, Austin Riley, and Josh Hader being sent his way. Now, I don't think he wants. He had some interest in Hader, maybe before the Scott signing. But even I would even like send. I would do like Riley, Wheeler, and Christopher Morel for $7, and I feel like those would be three pieces that would make sense for him to keep. That would
Four
be.
though, we know you're
Oh
Kyle.
well, we're not gonna talk about their.
Okay,
But
because you
then
can make
if
it
you
to
look,
sound nice and easy from one
yeah.
side, then you're asking for the goddamn gauntlet.
He doesn't have the gauntlet. What's the gauntlet on this team?
I bet you are asking for. There's no way you're giving up all that and not at least getting Jazz or Class A back.
We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, there's just no, and again, that's where it's like, okay, do I take on these guys that might not be worth the salary, and now I'm pulling away that from it, to me, that's almost just like a equal kind of move.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But that's the thing is like because this team needs an ace. They almost need two aces because
Yeah,
we don't have a pitcher that's inside the top 100 outside, I guess, Class A here. So like that's why I feel like, and you can't acquire one. There's not an ace in the draft that you can just go and make this
and
rotation
and
a
and
top five
we're
rotation.
and also I think I looked at I always to me OBP in this league is I think it's one of the most important categories, but it's also one of the harder ones to point in on because when you look at how close some teams OBPs are, even when we're in August and September, we're talking sometimes like the second team has like a 360 OBP and like the eighth team is like 356. I mean, we're talking like 3 or 4 point difference. It's scary to me, and I do this every year when I look at rosters. Having a low OBP can drag you down. And when I look at his roster, and if you
It's
looked
like
at mine, there
run.
was not a single dude on my team that was under a 350 OBP for the most part. There's not a single dude on his roster that is a 350 OBP. So,
Yeah.
and that's my thing. There is that this team just needs too much. There's not. It needs this ace. It needs a superstar bat. It need. I mean, I just don't think it's. I don't know. He's in a tough spot.
Yeah. Yeah, he really is. He needs Christian Walker to hit 40 home runs this year. And he needs
Yeah.
Jazz Chisholm to stay healthy. He needs Wyatt Langford to break out. He needs a lot to happen. And he needs to hit on his pitchers in the draft. I mean, there's a small path there, but it's really in the 10th percentile of what
Yeah.
he needs. He's probably going to be below Jordan because I think Jordan's more ready-made to
Yes.
be a
Agreed.
better, well-rounded team, but certainly neither one to be a contender right now.
This is the worst team we've seen outside of Dave's.
You think so?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to say, yeah, probably about 2 stars is what I'd give him.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a star and a half here, and that's not this. Phil can make moves. We've seen it in the past. Phil in the league last year, I think, was the first year he wasn't good. I mean, in the 3 years prior, he's been a very solid team. So it's not that he can't make those moves or make those deals. Like I said, how many years have I not liked your fantasy football team and you make the playoffs? So it, like I said, if anyone's gonna get a path, it's a Carboni, but we'll see.
Before we move on, we didn't give stars to Chris. I can't remember what we said. Chris is
I'm gonna
probably gonna
give
be
him, like I said, we like the rotation, or you really like the
yeah.
or yeah, we like Crochet Creek. I'm gonna give him just because of where he's at. I'm gonna give him around 2.5, two and
That's
a half,
kind of what I was thinking.
right on that fringe.
Kind of what I was thinking. I think he's very clearly not in the echelon Chris this is.
Yeah, I'm leaning
Yeah,
more
I think
towards 2 than 2.5
that's
though.
where I'm at. I'm a 2.5 leaning more towards 2 than I am 3.
Yeah.
All right, so next we have Tyler. We got 2 teams left. Holy cow, this is an endurance race here. All right, so Tyler's got some fringe bats here.
Oh, yeah.
He's
I
got some
always
okay values. I don't really know who's is leading the pack here from an offensive standpoint. This is a weird thing where it's just like I look up and down this roster. Going into the draft, you and I are going to disagree here. I would rather be Tyler than Jordan because I look and I like the value of no. I don't know. I kind of like Jake Berger for 10. I kind of like Pasquantino for 12. I kind of like Adamas for 8. I kind of like I like Benson for 1. If he kind of gives you that PCA for 6. I don't know from a fantasy standpoint what that's going to look like, but if he steals 40 bases, you like that. Garrett Mitchell is if he's going to be healthy, could be provide some value there. So like I like the value, the fantasy point per dollar value of these offensive pieces better than I like Jordan's, but Jordan's is currently better, but I just think that the value here is better. Tyler has the opportunity to do more in the draft. From a pitching standpoint, Burns leading the way, kind of a star in scrubs after that. He's got some arms here that are okay, but I don't know. I'm having a hard time pegging what I feel about this roster.
I think obviously it needs a lot, but here's what I'll say about and oh man, I keep doing the what if when he traded Skeens and Otani last year, and I just it's really really tough because I could
He didn't get
imagine
nothing in
having
return.
what's that?
He didn't get nothing in return. He went for it. It didn't work out, and now he's
I
just
know, but and that's the thing is he went into the draft and got those guys saying, and then mid season's like, you know what, never mind, I'm gonna go for it, and I'm like, that's what I didn't understand because Tyler would be one of the best teams in kind of how Chad, and again, we've talked about this before. Can he really do a true rebuild in this league? It's tough, 3 years contract. You can't do a full on true rebuild, but you can definitely get a lot of assets. Chad proved that. And he proved that by having all those cheap contracts and all those cheap. Imagine this team with a $13 Skeens and an $11 Otani on it with Burns. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. Now all of a sudden, I like a lot of the offense because Chapman at $3 you
hey,
keep.
you know what, Eric?
Adamas
Maybe nobody should trade with nobody then. Maybe nobody should trade at all. We should just all have our
well,
rosters on.
I don't mind trading. I just the philosophy behind it did not make sense to me at all. But Chapman, Adam, I mean, I believe it or not, I think Tyler. I mentioned this about a few teams already, and even you've said, well, every team's going to do this. He's an X factor for me. Tyler is because he's going to have over $200 to spend, right?
Yeah,
Over 200 or more
yeah.
dollars to
If he
spend.
doesn't keep Alonso, then yes, he will have yeah,
Because
just about.
it says he's at 191 right now, right? So even if he does keep Alonso, 191 remaining, is that right or no?
That's that's under the cap. That's
Oh,
not
the
that's draft
330 cap.
wise. So
Okay,
that's
but
to go to 330, not 300. So he's got 161 available. So that would go up to 197 if he doesn't keep Alonso.
and that's kind of where I'm at with him is again, he's one of the X factors in the draft that I think is going to have to drive prices because he's in a really unique position where he's got a lot of offensive guys that can just kind of be plugged in the lineup as like your Berger, 142 ADP, Pasquinato, 104, Pete Crow, don't love
Say that again.
Pasquinato, Pasquinatino. That one always fucks me up. I used to call Hayden Panettiere Terry. I used to have a crush on Hayden Panettiere Terry. Pete Crow Armstrong. I mean, again, I don't love him as a fantasy guy, very much in the Nico Horner kind of thing, but Will Benson for $1, Chapman for 3. I do think there's actually a lot of like just you just keep them to keep them guys here.
Yeah,
Where
there's
I think
keepers here.
Tyler's going to be close to having. I think Tyler will have 12 keepers because you keep Suarez for 3, you keep Severino for 3, you keep Gore for 1. So Tyler's going to have 12, and he's going to have close to $200 to spend. So I think Tyler again is in a very unique position where he needs to go out there and get 3 or 4 superstars. But again, like you said, how many guys are going to be doing that? And that's why I think a lot of these bottom teams are going to be stuck on the bottom because
Not
there's not
enough. There's not enough
guys.
superstars out there for Phil, Dex, Krim, Tyler, Peter, for
There's
all these
just
guys to
not.
get them. There's only a handful.
And that's what I'm saying. But Tyler's one of those guys that needs to drop 50 on Tatis, 50 on Cole. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow. Okay. All
If
right.
if if one year, if the last year we saw Michael Harris go for 42 because he was the only good player that was available that year. And
Right.
that year Cedric Mullins went for 30 or 33 or something
Yeah. I
like
think it
that.
was like 32. Yeah. Something. Yeah.
I mean, what is Acuna? What is Julio? What are Tatis going to go for? I
Yeah.
mean, if they're the only thing in town, 50, 55, 60, 65, because these teams are going to need these
Yeah.
players. And it's
Yep.
not like you have fallback plans. If you don't get Julio, if Tyler does not get one of Julio, Tatis, Acuna, then what?
Yeah.
What do you do then?
Uh,
Because
and I agree. And I think there's a few teams that are like that, which is why I'm really curious to see what happens. Which teams kind of sit back and go, oh, I'll get a bunch of these league average players, and which teams are going to go out and say, I need a superstar. Because now Phil, we talked about Phil, needs a superstar.
yeah,
Tyler needs a superstar. A lot of these teams
Tyler
need
can't
these
go win
top
this
talents.
league by spending $30 on Ian Happ.
No. Mm-mm.
And
No, but and that's what I'm saying though is I kind of again it's not a top 5 team. When I say I just kind of like where Tyler is at least going into the draft compared to some of these other lower teams because I do think Caminero 10, Berger 10, Will Benson for $1, Willie Adamas I think is one of the best values in the league at eight
yeah, I
bucks.
don't like the move to San Francisco, but he's still solid.
Yes, Matt Chapman for 3 was great last year. Pete Alonso again. I like Pete, but I do think he is kind of more of a regress that I don't again, I still don't even love it at 36, but I do think Tyler just keeps him. But again, it's one of those things where I don't know. I think Tyler is in a better spot than most of the worser teams. But man, Otani and Skeens on this team would sure make a fucking difference. But we can't do what if. That was last year.
Would you rather be Chris or Tyler?
Ooh, let me see. Let me do one more quick glance.
I would rather be Chris. So I'm going to give this team two stars. Because I think Chris's rotation is good enough to be at least league average, but there's not a unit here, his offense nor his defense, that I think will be league average, it feels like. So I just don't, Chris has some work to do on the offense.
Yeah,
I don't,
I'd say I'm right there with you. When looking at Chris's team, I think the rotation you can at least say there's that's solid, and I agree with you. I don't think we can look at anything on Tyler's team and say it's solid. I think we can say there's a good groundwork,
Mhm.
and it's not great, but there's good groundwork. And again, if you draft right, who knows what can happen? But a lot of teams got to draft right, and that's where I
If,
think this is
if,
this is
if
what
Tyler
happened
can
last year.
nail the draft,
Huh?
if Tyler can nail the draft and go, he got one of the superstars, he would need, like, if he can get Tatis for 55. And then if he can turn around and get like Jared Jones and Schwellenbach or something, and they hit their peak values, and then he goes Burns, Schwellenbach, Jones, and then Ranger Suarez, Mackenzie Gore is his
Solid.
rotation with Paul Sewald and Estevez as his two closer. I guess Sewald's not a closer anymore because he's on Cleveland.
There'd
So
be
they
worse.
have their closers. So Sewald's not a keeper. I guess that's a decent rotation. So I guess maybe there is a path, especially if we're talking like he has 12 keepers. So he only needs to fill at that point six lineup spots. So he would
Right.
have
He's got 14
$200
total
just.
spots. Yeah, with over $200. Tyler should be out there spending money.
Oh man, now I'm waffling. Now I know I'm gonna upgrade. I think he isn't a better. Dude, I don't know. That's a good question. Would you rather it be him or Chris?
I don't know. It's tough. I would. There's part of me that would rather go into the draft with a little bit more flexibility, which I think Tyler has. But I would, and it's tough too because I think most of their keepers both come from pitching. Because I think a lot of Chris's keepers are pitchers, but I also think a lot of Tyler's Burns, Gore, Severino, Suarez. I don't really think if Severino and Suarez do what they did last year, this is not a bad rotation.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if it's led by a top five pitcher in baseball and Corbin Burns. That's
And he's got the money, like you said, to get
yeah,
Jared Jones, to
yeah.
get, one of those top. He's got enough money to get a superstar bat and a superstar pitcher. He's just got to do it. And I think that's
Well,
what
there is
happened
no
last
superstar
year
pitcher, but
was he
yeah.
was looking too much towards the future.
He has the money for a superstar pitcher, but there isn't one.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see. The Garrett Cole one I'm curious on. I do agree with you. If I had to guess, I think Peter brings him back, but that could be the one that gets thrown back in.
Yeah. Or I wonder if somebody just trades for him.
Yeah.
I could see Phil swooping and just scooping up Garrett Cole if he's
Yeah.
listening to this. I could see somebody doing that. Yeah, I'll go 3 stars. I'm gonna upgrade.
Oh,
I'm gonna go
wow.
Chris at
You
two and a
jumped
half.
up.
I'm gonna go three
I
because
don't know if I'd say that. I'm going to stick at 2.5. I'm going to stick. And again, I think I'm kind of like with Chris. I think I'm closer to 2 than 2.5, but the path is more open for Tyler than it is for other teams.
that's why, because we are talking
Yes.
about going into the draft here, and there is more of a path for this to happen. Because I think I said for Christopher, this is that there's like it's a 10 percentile outcome of Christopher if it all
Yeah.
kind of working out. I think
Same
there's
with Phil. Same with Dave's and
yeah,
Dave's maybe even another tier lower, but
yeah.
Phil, Chris, they're kind of in that. I think in that
But I
same
feel
kind of
like this
spot.
team has a higher percentage of if things go right, he has to nail the draft. But
Yeah.
I just think with that draft, I mean, what happens when Jared Jones, the bid is $37 on Jared Jones.
Yeah.
Tyler Glass now, the bid is $41. Are you going to go to 42? Like when all these
Right.
teams have all this money to spend and that's what's available.
And like we're saying, and this is the crazy thing too, is all the top teams, no one's gonna go into the draft with $20. All the top teams still have around like myself. I think I'm going in with some of the least, and I still have $75.
Yeah,
So
I
there's
still have $70 at
right.
least.
So what's stopping some of these top teams from also just saying, you know what? I'm going to drop 40 on a guy and show the rest of the draft because, and
Yeah,
that's going to thin it out even more. You know
yeah,
what I'm saying?
exactly.
So it's going to be. This is
There's
one of the most curious drafts. I'm always excited for it, but this draft more than any is I'm really curious how it goes because there's so many factors in place.
if we assume that like Tatis is the best player available, there's 13, well, I'd say there's 13 teams that would spend $40 on Tatis. There is probably 9 teams that would spend 45 on Tatis. There's probably 8 teams that would spend 50 on Tatis.
Yeah.
There's probably like 5 teams that would spend 55.
Yeah.
It What else? What else are you going to do with
right?
your money?
Exactly. I mean, the only teams you can count out on people, I think, like for example, big offensive superstars, you could probably count me and Shed out on
Yeah.
that for the most part. But it's one of those things where there's nothing stopping top teams from just widening that gap a little bit more by getting some of the top guys as well.
Yeah. All right. Our last team
Woo!
approaching the 3 hour mark here. We have Bryce Harper. This is Justin's team here. We have Bryce Harper at the top, keeping him for 31. You acquired him. Trey Turner for 37, probably keeping him. Not a whole lot else after that. Not a lot of good guys. Not a lot of guys I'm excited about. He's going to keep Matt Shaw for a buck. Maybe Brandon Lowe for $5 if he can kind of repeat what he did in spurts last year, but also a guy that's never on the field. The pitching staff is decent. It's not very heavy at the top. He's missing an ace here, but in the mid-range, you got Shota Imanaga for 15, pitched very well last year. Another Cubs guy, Justin Steele, who another guy who can just kind of seems like at this point in his career you can kind of rely on him to be close to 3 ERA, just slightly above a 1 whip. Having that as your 1-2 isn't bad. If you can get Robbie Ray back to Robbie Ray form, then maybe you're cooking a little bit. You still need to address the pitching, though. You're going to need at least another arm or two here because there's not much after that. It's not going to be a top rotation. You really got to push the right buttons to get it to the right spot. And the offense is hard to imagine a path here where the offense can add enough in this draft to make an impact on the league.
Yeah, I do like the offense a little bit more than you because I do think honestly, I do like Jace Jung. I would actually keep him at 12 because he was hurt most of last year. But if you look at his rookie year, I do. It's again not amazing, but I do think you keep Jace Jung in that lineup because I think at this point you have to take a couple risks, and I think just kind of
Josh
keep.
Jung for Eugenio Suarez straight up.
No, I wouldn't do that. It's Suarez is way better. Come on now, and cheaper. But no, Jung's got the ceiling. I mean, there's a reason he was a top 20 prospect in baseball. But I actually think when you really break down Harper, Turner, Conforto in the Dodgers. Remember, Conforto's not hitting in San Fran anymore.
Mhm.
Okay, and Conforto last year, you could argue had second best year of his career. Maybe his OBP was actually down more than it usually is, but he's usually a big OBP guy.
Yeah.
But I actually think when you look at Harper, Harris, even just guys like Conforto, Trey Turner, that's a solid four. It does not compete, like I said, with the top offenses. I'm not saying it's top 4 or 5, but I think there is a solid core here. I think Turner Harper, you could argue he's one of the best 1-2s in fantasy. So I like that a lot. And I also think the pitching, we're talking Imanaga and Steele. We as Cubs fans know they have Cy Young all-star capability.
Mhm.
I mean, Justin Steele last year, granted, yeah, he missed 10 starts, but he was just as good. We I remember having this exact show last year. We're like, oh, can we really expect Steele to be the same as he was? Like,
Yeah.
he was the exact same as he was. He just didn't pitch as many innings. I mean, Steele
Hmm.
was still fantastic last year. So I actually think with Imanaga, Steele, Ray, who's usually a strikeout guy, Imanaga's a strikeout guy, even though he wasn't supposed to be. Granted, yes, he needs another ace. Yes, he
Yeah.
needs another bat, but there's not
He's been
really
in on the bidding for Zach Wheeler.
right. There's not really super expensive contracts here where I'm scared of them because Trey Turner 37, Harper 31. Okay, everyone's got a $30 play. Again, here we go with the same circle. Justin's got a lot of money. I
Justin's
like
going to
the
be on the
I
bidding
like
for Castillo. Castillo's been a fan favorite of Justin
yep,
for a while.
it has been. I like the core of Turner, Harper, and Harris. I mean, I really do. So I think he's a like 1 or 2. I don't even think he needs superstar bats. I think he's actually a guy that could go and get 2 or 3 just really solid bats, one more ace, boom. But again, I'm not saying that's playoffs, but I'm just saying that's maybe a path I would go with. But I don't hate it. I think he's not at 12 keepers. This is one of the 3 or 4 worst teams in the league. He's right there with Phil and Chris, and I'm not saying it's not, but again, I think there's more of a path here than there is for Chris or for than Dave or Phil as well.
Yeah, I think I would put this team ahead of Phil's team.
I would. I would.
Um,
I'd put it ahead of Dave's and Phil's. Like I said, I think it's still one of the 4 shakiest, but
I don't know if I'd put it in front of Tyler's. I don't know if I'd put it in front of Chris's. It's right there in that range. I mean, yeah, it has some pieces here. How about Walker Bueller for 10?
no.
Yeah. So
Actually, I don't.
yeah.
No, he got off to a good start, and then he was just all 5 380 or 75 innings. That I don't know, man. That's tough.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at last year's numbers, no, but I mean, Walker Bueller's Walker Bueller, and he's $10. He's going just outside the top
I would
200,
rather keep Yuri Perez than Walker Buehler.
not for 20. Hell no.
Look look
Get
what
that.
Yuri Perez did more recently.
More recently, you got zero, zero, zeros across the board last year.
That's better than the 570 ERA in your
That's
lineup.
true. Yeah, zero is lower than five. I am a math teacher, so I can do that. Yeah,
It's not great, but I like I said, I would still put it in terms of where I would like to be heading into draft night. I'd still say better than Dave, better than Phil.
yeah.
Yeah, and then that might be it. But
You give stars to Phil. I'll give Phil 2 stars and Justin 2.5 stars. 2.5 stars for Justin.
yeah, I'll give Phil two, and I'll say Justin again. I think it's closer to two than 2.5, but I do like his a little bit more. Two 5, I think.
Exactly what you
Because
said
again,
about Chris. You said closer to two than 2.5.
yeah, they're all close, man. And this is kind of what I said last year after the draft. There's 4 to 5 good, and that's why when you blasted Jordan earlier, yeah, I agree. He can't go into the draft and make a lot of moves. He's got a lot of money on his roster, but it's still one of the 6 best rosters. It's
Yeah.
still one of the 7. I mean, it's still if you had to call a playoff teams right now, I mean, it's easier to say because there's only 12 guys on it.
Yeah.
Jordan's still one of the 6 best rosters. So I think a lot of these teams have so much work to do to get in that range. That's
Yeah.
why the only team we're talking about that wasn't a playoff team last year that we're kind of or there's only two teams we're talking about that really weren't in the playoff mix last year, and that's Peter and Dana. And those were the two teams where we're like, okay.
Mhm.
Everybody else, there's a lot of work.
Yeah. No, I don't think Jordan's a playoff team because I do think Peter and Dana will pass them up. I think there will be a lot of similar guys last year. I think you'll be close up there. I think me,
Yeah.
and Dana, Peter, you, Chad, and Bryce, I think are all going to be obviously up there. And I just don't think there's room in the hierarchy for some of these others. So a lot has to go right. I mean, I think like even with like Justin's roster, you know, maybe he gets Castillo and maybe he gets like a James Wood who kind of breaks out for him, and that's kind of what he's going to need. But even then, he still feels like he's going to be behind some of those teams up near the top. So I'm not sure what the path is. I think maybe Justin's kind of stuck in mediocrity, the worst place to be. But
And I don't know if there's really a path right now for Justin to trade in the offseason because I also don't think he really has like, okay, I want to get Zach Wheeler. Well, Kyle, do you see any cheap keepers you'd really want back in return? I mean, and that's
I've been interested in Matt Shaw, for a
yeah.
doubt. You know, especially knowing I think
Are you
sounds.
saying like straight up you would do that? Because Justin
No,
said
I
Jordan.
wanted another piece. I asked about Imanaga and Shaw for Wheeler, and he
Uh-huh.
kind of thought about it for a second, and we're like, probably not. So, but I was like, well, you know, if you're thinking like maybe like an ace or something, makes it.
And that's just the tough part is I just don't see many cheap keepers that he can swing around for that. Really, the only two are Imanaga and Steele, but I also think that's what makes his team have a good groundwork. So, and there's not a lot of pitching in the draft, so I just don't know if that's the way for him to go either. It's
Yeah,
tough.
I could see like Phil maybe swooping on Trey Turner or something, but.
Yeah.
Something like that. All right, so that wraps up our preview for all of our teams. So we kind of talked a little bit about our playoff teams, talked a little bit about this. Anything else you want to add about the league before we kind of go off the rails
Um,
here?
Yeah, no, I'm really excited for this league to get going. Obviously, I'm geared up, ready to go. I think it's going to be exciting. It's going to be a lot of fun. Like I said, I do think a lot of the teams will be similar in terms of at the top, but it's baseball and shocking things happen. Two teams could fall off, injuries could happen, other teams come forward, and that's the fun of playing the season. We've been wrong many times before, but like I said, I do think there's a little bit more of there is still that kind of hierarchy, and we'll see if teams can kind of slide their way in there.
Yeah, I think it's going to be especially difficult to knock off that hierarchy of kind of what we have. It's tough to imagine a path for any of those kind of lower teams from last year really working their way up into the top, you know, unless you really laid the groundwork with some of those injury guys, you know, the way like Peter has and, you know, some of the breakouts the way Dana has. I think they're kind of poised to make the jump. But I think if we look at some of those teams right now that we just look at the rosters and you're like, you have maybe one top 50 player. I don't think
Yeah.
there's really a path for some of those teams to really build an entire team through
I
this
mean,
auction.
going back to Chad's offense, right? He has 5 first-round picks.
Mhm.
Some teams don't have one.
Yeah,
Like you just said, some teams don't have one. I mean, that's some teams don't even have a second round. Like I think Tyler's top guy, and again, we kind of like where Tyler's at. Tyler doesn't even have a second round pick. He's
yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Some guys have 4 or 5. The parity's not there right now.
yeah. So we'll see. I wonder if anybody decides just zag from the start and say, I'm just gonna go in into shoot for 2026. I'm gonna pay my $100 or $250, and then just, I'm gonna play it out this year. I'm gonna maybe acquire one of the stars. I'm gonna go cheap on some of the injured guys. But last year we had more injured. You had your Alcantara's, your
Sure.
McClanahan's, your Woodruffs that were DeGroms that were all hurt in the auction that kind of looking like good values this year. I don't think we really have much
Not
for
as many, no.
even maybe Yuri Perez, who's going to be hurt to start the year. And yeah, maybe one or two others, but I don't know. Maybe we'll probably get more in spring, guys, that'll get hurt in spring. But we'll kind of see. I wonder if anybody decides to zag that way or what other trades we'll see before draft night here.
Heck yeah.
All right. So
Ready?
before we wrap up, we'll do some general baseball talk. Fuck the Dodgers. I asked you kind of at the start of the show, I asked you in between and transition there. Are the Dodgers ruining baseball? I guess that'll be my first question.
This might be a little bit of a hot take. I say no. I don't think we're going to see these off seasons routinely. I think this was a little bit of a unique. I mean, obviously last year was Otani and this and that. This year was Sasaki, and I don't think this is going to be routine. They're not going to be spending like this year in and year out every single year. At some point, there is going to be a little bit of a stall. Every sport knows, ratings wise, we got to have villains,
Yeah,
and
do.
and that. And I think I read a stat the other day that out of the last 15 years, the best record in baseball has won the World Series 6 times.
Hmm.
So it's baseball is the hardest. I will argue with anyone. Baseball is the hardest sport to win multiple championships in a row.
Yeah.
It is the hardest
We
sport to make.
thought the Cubs were poised to win
Yes.
several, didn't we?
Yes, it is the hardest sport to make a dynasty. We've not seen one since early 2000s. I've not seen one pretty much in my life, essentially. We could argue the Giants did 3-6, I think, which was
Yeah,
pretty darn close, but
every other year.
it is so hard to do that even if the Dodgers, even if we could sit here and say, yeah, the Dodgers are going to win 100 games every year for the next 5 years, they might win 2 World Series. So I don't think it's bad for baseball. I think this year it makes I do think some owners this year kind of going a little bit, oh, okay, this is getting a little much. And I agree. It's like, okay, this is getting a little crazy. But to think that this is going to be routine year in and year out, like they're going to do this again next year and again the year after that, I just don't think that's going to happen. So I think they're kind of gearing in for the long haul at this point and kind of digging in with the players they have. But I think it's good for baseball. I really do. You need villains. Everyone's going to be rooting against the Dodgers from here on out, and it's going to be great for the game.
Yeah, I mean, part of it's anticlimactic. It almost feels like the Cubs don't even have a chance at the World Series because they're in the National League with the Dodgers, and you just hope you win the division, you maybe win a playoff series, and then you call it a day. And after that, if in best case scenario, it's hard to imagine beating a team that's like that. They have everything that you would want in a roster, and it does seem a little bit unfair, the haves and the have-nots. But I don't blame the Dodgers. I blame most of the other owners that aren't spending that money. I and I guess my next question would be, do we need a salary cap? Do we need a salary floor? And I know that Chad, amongst other people, saying we need a salary floor. We need a salary floor. Okay, the only way you're getting a salary floor is with a salary cap. And if you want both, how is it working in the NFL? How is it working in the MLB? How is it working in the NBA? Is that really what you want?
Players don't.
Yeah,
I mean, and
don't.
that's the thing, and that
Owners
and, that,
don't. Because
and that's
owners
why
don't want the salary floor, certainly. They
no, the
definitely,
owners do want to. I think the owners do want a salary floor because it would give them a salary cap, and then players getting paid $50 million won't be a thing anymore. I
exactly.
think it's
Yeah. They don't want the salary floor if it means being partnered with a salary cap, and that's the only way it
right
happens.
because here's the thing. Let's pretend the salary floor is 100 million. Oh, so the A's got to spend $30 more million. But now all of a sudden we have a salary cap where we can now, and that's what I'm saying. There might be a little bit. Everyone argues the parity thing. There might be a little bit more parity in that sense, but the players CBA wise, this and that, it's the last sport that has a free market. I don't see a world where the players give that up. And it
Well,
kind of sucks because really it benefits the top earners. It benefits the top 50 MLB players more than it benefits your average everyday major leaguer. But I don't think the players will ever agree to a salary floor.
and if they don't want to, would you give up, let's say this, would you ask the baseball players, how about instead of a salary cap, we'll give you your salary floor, but we're going to do non-guaranteed contracts.
Oh no, yeah, they wouldn't agree to it.
But
No.
baseball players have it so good
Yeah,
because
they
they
do.
have no salary cap. They have guaranteed contracts for their
Yep.
entirety of their deals, unless they have team options built in, which are pretty rare because the players have a lot of leverage when it comes
Yep.
to that. So, like
All
the
the
players
opt
have way
outs
too much
now. You don't
leverage
see
as
opt
is.
outs in other
Yeah.
sports and shit like that. Yeah.
So do you want to go it to be have like the NFL style where it's salary cap? The good teams are still always the good team. You still have your dynasties, your Chiefs, your Patriots that are just always kind of good. You know, Green Bay is always usually hanging around there. Yes, there's a little bit of parity. It kind of goes in waves a little bit with some teams if you find your one quarterback. But then at the same time, like guys are getting cut on the second year of their contract. Guys are getting traded every which direction because teams don't want them, and then they just use them for a little bit.
Right.
Wad them up and you throw them away when you're done with them, and then you just wash your hands of it. Oh, I'm just
Yeah.
gonna finagle it. Like, is that the system that you want in the MLB?
And I think baseball is, and again, I think it matters what game we're playing, because I think baseball is one of the sports, like if football didn't have a salary cap and teams just imagine the Cowboys and
Yeah,
these big teams just being able to spend what they want.
yeah,
Football needs parity, right?
yeah.
Football needs, not that baseball doesn't, but baseball can get away with it because we have those times when the Tampa Bay Rays make the World Series, when the Oakland Athletics stun and win 90 games.
Mhm.
That does not happen in other sports, right? So, and that's why I think that the salary floor isn't necessary. I do think that there's a little bit of things that they need to clean up and fix, and things like you mentioned, the deferred stuff, but that still does go against the luxury tax. But
Oh, you
it's
want to
just
talk
it's
about
just
deferred stuff?
yeah, well, the deferred stuff still does go against the luxury tax.
It sure does. I do not understand the people's problem with the deferred payments. If you
Right.
want to let somebody defer their contract, fucking let them. That's not a
Right.
Dodgers problem. The Dodgers are not ruining baseball by deferring payments. Any team in baseball can defer all the payments that they want. It is not a Dodgers thing. That's not ruining baseball at all. If I was an athlete, I would want deferred payments too. Yeah, let me guarantee that for the rest of my life, I don't have to worry about working because
Right.
I don't trust myself. Now, the smart players aren't doing deferred payments because if you take that $300 million contract and invest it, then you don't have to worry about it. You can live off the investment money of
Sure.
whatever in your portfolio if you actually do it smart. But it's actually some players who can't resist the urge to go ball out, or they have ways that they need to spend the money some other places. They don't
Right.
trust themselves not to spend it. Then yeah, maybe a deferred payment is for you. But like I don't know. I could kind of go both ways on if it's smart or not. It's not necessarily the best financial decision to do because you're losing out on inflation.
And look
Uh,
at what some pitchers are getting. I mean, pitchers are pitching less and less every year. I mean, we're seeing guys that are four or fives in the rotation. I mean, Matthew Boyd got, what did he get, 16, $17 million a year from the
yeah,
Cubs? I
yeah,
mean,
sure.
we're looking at fours and fives in the rotation getting almost $20 million a year. I mean,
Yeah.
that's, and again, it's like they're pitching less and less, they're making more money. Player, as much as fans don't like the Dodgers getting it, the players don't give a fuck. I mean, I'm telling you right now, the players are just like, hey, Cubs fit. Well, if we meet them in a 5 game set, if we beat them 3 times, all right, maybe it can happen.
Yeah.
I don't think the players care. I mean, we had a little issues with the Boris thing last year. I do think Boris was kind of targeted last year, having those players. I think the owners were trying to give him a little what for, but I don't think baseball's in as much of a trouble as some people think there is. I know this offseason was a little wild with the Dodgers stuff, but I think it's still on the up and up.
Yeah. Do you think that there's any way that kind of baseball is like broken at all, or baseball needs to be fixed? Because if we say salary floor is not happening unless you get non-guaranteed contracts or salary cap, which I don't see because you got to give to get. And I feel like if the baseball players decide they want to strike in 2 years in the next CBA because of all the teams not liking contracts, not spending money, but they don't want to give anything up, then that's on the fucking players. And the owners are going to
Right.
spin that and make the players look like shit. So, like, what is the actual fix if there's an actual problem to this?
Yeah, it's tough because again, I mean, the Rays. There's a lot of teams that prove it in and out that the mid-budget team can get it done. Even a team like the Guardians or the Twins, that
Yeah,
they never go much more than 120 million, 130. They're very smart with their money. They do what they can. They don't get sellout crowds in April and May in Cleveland and Minnesota. I don't know, man. It's just baseball's such a magical sport that I think if you threw a salary cap or a salary floor on it, and yet, like we talked about, it would give a little bit more parity in a sense. But at the same time, you know the best players are still going to go to the Dodgers. The best players are still going to want to go to the Yankees. The best players are still going to want to go to the Red Sox. So it's I don't think it's going to change that much. I do think there's a little bit more with the international thing. I think the Sasaki thing stings. I think some of these other ones sting. The fact that these teams can go and get 15, 16-year-olds and sign them and basically say, hey, if you turn out good, we have you. There's no Dominican Republic or Cuban player that wants to go play in Minnesota.
yeah,
There's
no.
no Dominican or Cuban player that wants to go play in Detroit. I mean,
St.
I'm
Louis,
not
St.
saying
Louis
that
is
those
boring.
Right. I'm not saying that those teams don't sign international guys, but Sasaki had no shot of going to those teams. We can pretend he did or not, but a lot of these players that are used to the warm weather, and that's why I kind of brought up like an international draft, because I do think there is a little bit of an unfair advantage with how much the game is growing in some of these countries. The fact that teams like the Royals, the Guardians, even teams like the Orioles, just those Midwest kind of cold,
I
they
wouldn't want to
really
do
have
an
a shot at
international
these
draft
guys.
because if I'm an international player, I'm not going to come over if you tell me I don't get to choose where to go.
Right. And that's another thing. That's 100%. And that's where
Especially at a
they have
place
that agreement with the
like
Korean
St.
league.
Louis where you can't even fly into it.
Yeah, and I get it. They want to stay West Coast. They want to stay closer to Japan or Korea or stuff. I totally get it, but that's also the player's choice to come over here and play baseball. So
Mhm.
I don't know. It's tough for me because I think there is some unfairness to it, but also the lower budget teams get a higher international salary pool. So they try to make it as fair as they can, but it is baseball at the end of the day. So it's tough.
Yeah. So as much as it angers me, it's tough to even imagine what the actual solution would be because I don't have the answers, unfortunately. I think the answer would be Rob Manfred coming out and saying like you guys need to stop being pieces of shit and start spending your money to the teams that aren't, and finding better owners, which I don't think you can just find better owners. You can't just kick guys out for not spending money. So
Right.
like there's not a lot he can do. I don't know what he can and can't do, but also like he is appointed by the owner. The owners are who hire the commissioner, right? Because I'm pretty sure like
Yep.
that's they have to like come
That's
together
their
and
boss.
hire and pay the bills.
Yep.
So like, that's like how that works. So it's if he just starts pissing off the owners, they're just gonna find a new commissioner because that's kind of how it both works.
And
So
then that's what's crazy too is the revenue sharing thing. I don't think people sometimes like it doesn't matter how many jerseys the Dodgers sell or the Cubs sell or this or that. That all goes into a huge merchandise revenue sharing thing where that's where we see those numbers of the Athletics still being in like the top 6, 7 earners in baseball because they're getting 80, 90 million in revenue sharing. And when you're only spending X amount of money on your product, they're
yeah,
not selling jerseys, but baseball selling Otani jerseys ends up helping the Athletics. And
yeah,
again, it's kind of like, oh, that's nice, right? Big market team helping small. But like you said, when those small market teams are still saying, well, fuck that, we're raking this in,
yeah.
then that's when you have a little bit of a problem. And that's what's tough. And I hope that these grievances against the A's do go forward with it. When you look at some of these teams' top contracts ever given, even a team like the White Sox, they're in Chicago. We know they're the second team. We can say it 100 times. Their biggest contract they ever gave out was to Andrew Benintendi for like
Wow.
the 4 years, $72 million. I mean, it's insane how some players are getting these massive deals, and then you look at some of the top deals some of these teams have ever given out, and it's kind of shocking. So yeah, some teams definitely need to buck up.
Yeah, I would agree. Speaking of teams that need to buck up, the Chicago Cubs. Now I do have a little bit of a hot take on the Chicago Cubs. It's not really that hot at all, actually. It's poor ownership. It's ownership that doesn't want to spend money. It's an ownership that really only cares about the bottom line. And we've gone over this in ad nauseum with kind of our with our other Cubs podcast that we did last year or 2 years ago, whenever it was, where I actually think that Jed Hoyer is doing an okay job. I think Jed Hoyer has been given a budget, and after playing our OOTP simulator and seeing owners give budgets, and after watching Moneyball, actually, where Brad Pitt has that meeting with his owner, and he goes, "Hey, I need more money. I got 36 million is what I got. Can you just give? I'm not asking for the moon. Can you just give me a little bit to put some back on the field?" And the owner telling him, "No." 36 million or whatever it was is your budget for the year. I think that Jed Hoyer's operating under a budget of he's got 188 million. And we can sit here and be like, oh, the Cubs are 34 million underneath the salary care, the luxury tax line. I don't think it matters. I think that Jed has been given direct orders that he cannot spend the money, spend money he doesn't have, and whatever else. It doesn't matter how many hotels Ricketts buys, doesn't matter how many hot dogs he sells, how many $16 beers, how many jerseys, how many Winter Wonderland tickets, how many fucking $30 hot chocolates at his goddamn Winter Wonderland. It doesn't matter because I think that and all the bets placed at the sports book, all the freaking marquee network sales, like he has so many different revenue streams, and it's fucking embarrassing. And I'm pissed off that he keeps saying that he's going to put money on the field and doesn't put his goddamn money where his mouth is.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely tough because I mean we like I said I still hate the Cubs over the Schwarber thing during the COVID budget clearing this and that. He's definitely working under a budget. I don't think that's That's crazy to say. I mean, they've tried to stick under that number as much as possible, especially when they're not sure they're there or they're competing. I think that's got a little bit to do with why we didn't re-sign Tucker before arbitration, because we could have essentially signed him before arbitration. Then he would have been making 25-30 million this year, and that would have put us way over. So I think that kind of came down to it a little bit too.
Yeah.
Overall, I mean, as long as the Cubs are in the top 6 or 7 spending teams, I'm not going to go crazy, because again, that's the Dodgers, that's Boston, that's New York, teams like that. When you start seeing, other teams like Seattle and LA and stuff creep up there and stuff like that, you go, okay,
I'm
we're the Cubs. Toronto, another one. It's like, all right, we're the Cubs. Like, let's go. But I like I said, I think Jed actually for the most part has done a solid job. Yeah, I don't know. It's tough, man. I don't
I'm
know.
with you in one respect. It's not like the Cubs haven't spent money.
Yeah.
Let's see here. If we look at the Cubs roster, it's just that they have so many middling mid-level players that
Oh
are
yeah.
eating up a big part of their contract. Like they're instead of having the 40, $50 million guy, they have a bunch of 10 to 15 to $20 million guys, and it eats up. So it's not like the Cubs aren't spending. They are a top 10 team. So if we look at what their AAV here. We have Dansby's making 25, Ian Happ 20, Suzuki 17, Tyone 17, Kyle Tucker 16, Matt Boyd 14, Imanaga 13, Nico Horner 11, Steele 6. So it's like these guys, they're making money, and before we had Bellinger making money, who we
And
kind of
that's
got.
why that ended up being just a dump, because
Yeah.
teams knew. I mean, again, I don't think it's a secret. Teams knew, well, the Cubs can't be over this number.
Mhm.
So when they're trading Bellinger, would Bellinger still, even if we didn't have a spot for him, would Bellinger make our team better in 2025? Yes, he would.
Mhm.
But teams knew that he had to be traded on a salary dump. And that was literally a salary dump, because they knew the Cubs had to get back under that number.
Yeah.
And that's why once we got Tucker, again, we had no leverage in trade talks when it came to Suzuki or Bellinger, because we were like, one of them's got to go. Other teams know one of them's got to go. So that's why we didn't get anything back for him. And I think that's why the team valued Suzuki a little bit more than Bellinger, because
Mhm.
of the salary.
Yeah, I can't really disagree with you there. So the Cubs right now, they're seventh in total payroll for last year. So behind the Mets, Yankees, Astros, Phillies, Dodgers, and Atlanta Braves. The thing where I do have to disagree with you there is we were promised that we would spend like a big market team. We were promised we would be like the Yankees. We were promised we'd be like the Dodgers when we did all of the things addressing the other needs around the ballpark when we got our own baseball network, the marquee network. Well, the big market teams have their own network. Okay, we got our own market. Well, the sports book's going to bring in a lot of money. Okay, we built the sports book. That's been open. We got to build up the hotel first. I got to put money in the hotel. Okay, we built up the hotel. We got to build up the surrounding area, the Cubs Way or whatever they call it out in front, all that kind of stuff where they sell whatever else.
Right.
All that's all been built up. You're in the third largest market in the United States after New York and LA, which is Chicago. There's not a lot of ton of Sox fans that eat up at that market. And even for the Dodgers and the Yankees have the Mets, the Dodgers have the Angels and the Padres, and am I missing one other California team? The Giants and formerly Oakland, all eating up the California kind of stuff. But like we should be a big market team as we were promised we would be. And so even though we're the seventh highest payroll last year, it's still not
We're
good enough.
right there with Philly. We're right there with Houston. I mean, how much more big market can you get? We're not spending 300 million. We never have.
We should. Why should
No.
we when we have all those things in place? We're in Chicago, sportsbook, TV network, all those things that
I
what we
would
were
be
promised.
curious to see what the actual revenue, and I don't know if they actually have true on how much these teams actually net gain. Because yeah, if the Cubs are getting 400-500 million that the Ricketts are pocketing every year, and we refuse to go over the luxury tax, then I could be like, you know what? Yeah, that's like, let's come on, Ricketts. So I really would need to see that data. If the Cubs are in the green by here and there, that sometimes I'm sure they're making money every year without a question, but it's I don't know. We're right there. I mean, if I'm pissed, if I'm a Red Sox fan, I mean, you know what I mean? Like if I'm in the Boston market and I'm sitting there with the 11th highest salary and we've kept trading Dev or Mookie Betts and all these dudes over the years, I'd be pissed. But as a Cubs fan, I don't know. I guess I'm more lenient towards the Cubs than I am with my other teams.
Interesting. That's an interesting take.
Because right now we are the favorite to win the NL Central. I'm not saying we will, right? I'm not saying we're even projected for 95 wins, but right now we know we're not going to make 3 or 4 moves that are going to catch us up with the Dodgers, right? So if we're in an NL Central division that I think is winnable with the team we have right now, if the Cubs are a 90-91 win team and we win the division, I think that that's solid enough where you never know, you get snake 2 or 3 from a team here or there. That this year is such a pivotal year, I think, for the Cubs because we won 83 games with David Ross and we won 83 games with Craig Counsell.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a mistake? Would we have won less with David? Who knows? But it's a very interesting thing to look at
Hey,
because
Ross probably just got stale.
right, and exactly, and it's just one of those things where it's like now he went out there and got probably the best bat the Cubs have had in 8 years since Chris Bryant's been on the team. I actually think the rotation's a lot better than people think. I think that's a very not crazy high, but that's going to be a team that could snake away a few games in the playoffs with Steele, Imanaga, Taillon, stuff like that. We got one of the best farm systems in baseball. I get the Ricketts hate, but I do actually think Jed Hoyer, even though we haven't made the playoffs in a long time, and I'm crazy saying this, I think Jed Hoyer's really done a pretty bang up job.
Yeah, I think he's done okay with what he's been given. And like I said before, like if you're mad at Jed Hoyer for not getting the big fish or not doing more, like what did you want him to do? Like if you
Yeah,
were like, well, why is third base such a big hole? Well, okay, what did you want Jed Hoyer to do? Because we weren't gonna block
Shaw.
Shaw by giving a big contract to a big third baseman last year. We're not gonna do it this year. We didn't know that Matt Chapman would be as good as he was last year with San Francisco. And he was kind of getting older up there in age. I wasn't a big fan of signing Chapman, but you weren't going to give him 5 years, 100 million or whatever, and block the guys that we had. Plus, you needed Chris Morel in the lineup. Yeah, Chris Morel didn't work out, but Chris Morel was our only chance at like a 30, 35 home run guy in our lineup last year. You needed to get him in the lineup somewhere. We already had Nico at second. We already had Dansby at short. And so you needed our outfield's already full. So we needed to see what Morel looked like at third base. It didn't work out. Okay, happens. Not everything's going to work out. So I'm not really mad about that. But it's just like it's not like there's all these big third baseman free agents that like the Cubs should have brought in or
No.
should have done instead. So like I'm kind of whatever when it comes to some of that stuff of what they should have done. I just want to see them maybe make a few trades here and there, maybe spend a little
And
bit
that's why and I totally get I'm a huge prospect guy, you know that. I do not like giving up top prospects in almost any instance. And obviously if Tucker ends up being a rental, that will bite a little bit. But I don't think there was a better player in free agency outside of course, well, no, that Otani obviously was last year. I don't
more.
think there was a better player in free agency that would have made the Cubs lineup better than Kyle Tucker. I
Yeah.
mean, you know what I mean? Like there just wasn't that guy. So there's no one in this free agency class I would have been comfortable giving $300 million to. But
Soto,
Kyle Tucker, I'm comfortable giving $300 million to. So
Juan
again, I
Soto.
like that move. We'll see what happens. But
Yeah.
um, and I really don't think Imanaga, Steele, Tyone. Remember some of those prospects come up, Cade Horton, stuff like that.
Yeah, you're drinking too much Kool-Aid.
I don't
You,
know.
you got
Tyone
you
had a
got
great
Cubs,
ERA last year.
you got red and blue coursing through your blood right
I
now.
do. I do.
Cub love. So what do you think the rest of the offseason looks like, and what do you think the Cubs need to do the rest of the offseason? Are you in on Presley? Because I'm out on Presley. I don't really want Presley.
I
I think
do.
you need somebody to close games, but I don't think Presley's the guy. I think he's getting older in age. The velocity's starting to go down. His contract's big. I don't know if we're gonna have to if Houston's eating any of that contract, but I don't think it's gonna be worth the money of what his actual contract cost is, especially if we're gonna give up prospects on top of it. Why are we
Yeah.
giving up prospects to acquire Presley when we have closers that are still available on the market?
Yeah, and I really don't think Presley would cost much for prospect wise. I really don't. If anything, I think Houston would actually be okay getting out of that salary. They might be asking for like a little bit because he only does have 1 year left, 14 million. So even still, I think it's very middling prospects we would give up for him. That's what makes me want to do it because the thing that irritated me about Jed Hoyer is this would be like a third or fourth season in a row. We have gone into a season without a solidified closer. And you know me and my closers. I don't love them. I don't want to pay them a lot of money, but holy hell is it just a glaring fucking need that is so obvious and it's just not being addressed. And I don't think you can blame Counsell and his bullpen management or this or that. Sometimes you just need to go out there and get the guy. Last year we got the Houston guy. He was ass. Hector Neris. We came
Yeah.
off a good season. I mean, I'm not even saying Presley won't continue to digress, but you
Yeah.
need to do something. You can't go in with the guys we got.
Yeah. I mean, some people like Porter Hodge, but yeah, he's so unproven. I'd rather give him some
Yeah,
time in the middle relief or, the seventh inning to see if he actually has the stuff. And then if he does, then you evaluate next offseason. Be like,
exactly. Because 3 weeks into the season, if we stay in house and we have 3 or 4 blown saves in the first month, all the talking heads are going to be, well, why the hell wasn't this addressed in the offseason? Everybody saw it and nobody did anything. So they have to do something with that.
I'm not
That's
I'm
why
not
I'm
crazy about Finnegan and
me neither, but they got to do
Estevez.
something. Finnegan, his ERA was if you could tell me right now, I know a 3 ERA isn't like amazing for a closer,
It's
but
like
if you could tell me right
3.6
now, the
last year.
Cubs, what's that?
He was like 3.6 last year for him or
Right.
something.
If you could tell me right now that even the Cubs closer, if you could tell me, hey, we're going to get you a guy that could get a 3.2 or 3.3 ERA all season long, I would probably take that in the ninth inning role. It's not elite. It's not your 1.7 or 2.1, but the Cubs just need someone that they can just kind of count on at least 70% of the time to go out there and make a save.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to something like that. So, and then I mean, then they're going to bring back Robertson. It sounds like too, which is
Yeah.
like whatever. I don't
Bullpens are the
it's not like
hardest things to deal with, man. It's tough.
yeah. It's I almost feel like we're bringing back too many bullpen arms because we've acquired a few guys this offseason too.
Yeah.
Um, but I guess you can never have too many bullpen arms, right?
Right. And like we talked about, I think the addition of Kyle Tucker was literally, we talked about it last year. It was the perfect thing they needed. They needed a bopper, a guy that can go 30 and 100, this and this and that. And I think with the lineup they have, like you said, we've talked, they have a lot of similar-ish guys, Suzuki, Hap, Michael Bush, this and that. But now looking at it with the addition of Tucker, it makes so much of a difference where I think the Cubs very easily could be a top 3, 4 scoring offense in the NL. I mean, Philly, LA, maybe San Diego. Another guy I would really like, I know he's kind of injured, but just to add a little bit more infield depth, I don't know how much he'll cost, is Hae-Sung Kim.
Mm, yeah.
You know, I would really like that. If a Nico goes down, if a Dansby go, he can play third. He can place. I would love to get him on a deal. He's still not signed somewhere. Add a little depth piece there. We need another middle
I
infielder, I
don't think
think.
he's going to go somewhere and be full-time bench because we don't have a spot for him.
No, we don't. And I don't
Because
know if
you're
and I
not
don't know
going
if
to
he's
bring
getting
Shaw
started.
up and play him half the time.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to ever bench Dansby, Nico, Bush, or really anybody in the outfield. And we already have DH covered now, spoken for by
But there's
Sale.
also nothing wrong even signing a guy like, and I know he's missing the first few weeks, so this doesn't totally add up. But there's nothing wrong with getting kind of like a veteran third baseman type of guy and still making. They're going to make Shaw work for it. There's nothing stopping them from sitting him in the first month.
It sounds like the guy I've probably wanted for a while that a lot of guys have said is Moncada. I'll take a shot at you on Moncada.
Exactly, and he's a perfect guy. A 1 year, $2 million. Hey, come in, make the guy work for it. If you hit 180 in the first couple weeks, cool. Send you packing. Let's call the kid up. But those are moves that definitely are makeable. Yeah.
Yeah. Where are you at on Bregman?
I'm right there with the Cubs. If you could get him on like, it's very much like we just talked about payroll and how they really can't go over. But if they can somehow do like a 2 year, $50 million, even if they had to be like, hey, we'll give you 30 million a year, 2 year, $60 million deal. I don't think that pushes Shaw too far back. It's one of those where, hey, even if Bregman hit 250 with 25, I I don't hate it. I really don't. I think there's room for it. But no, 4 or 5 years, no, I can't go. But apparently, from what I saw recently, he's got multiple 5 year offers. So I
Yeah.
don't really think it's going to happen for the Cubs.
I'm all the way out on Alex Bregman.
Are you?
I don't think his swing would fit Wrigley Field well. I don't think he really hits the ball hard enough to really power the ball out on those cold days. I think he'd need to make his bread hitting doubles and stuff like that. I think he's too similar of a bat to a guy like Ian Happ, like a guy like Seiya Suzuki, in regards
What
to what
about an Alec Baum?
no. They want way too much for him. But
Okay.
I just if you're not going to sign a third baseman last offseason, you're not going to sign a third baseman this offseason because you don't want to block Shaw, then you're not just going to bring in freaking uh what Bregman on a like 4 or 5 year deal. And I don't think we have the money to give him 30 million over 1 or 2 years either.
Right.
And then like you'd have to basically if you could do that and then trade Nico Horner for a top starting pitcher with Seattle or something, maybe if you trade him for Kirby or something like that with another piece, then maybe you could talk me into it. But I just don't think we have the kind of money for it. There's part of me that should said there's no reason why the Cubs shouldn't spend all the money and be a big market kind of team that just don't make excuses to go get Bregman. Yeah, I'd love to sit here because that's the truth of what should really happen. But
Right.
unfortunately, I'm realistic that would never happen. And
That's
I
why I
think
say
it's
an Alec
all
Baum thing too. I don't know how much they would be asking for Alec Baum. And again, I don't want to like push people back or this or that, but Alec Baum's another one of those 2 years left service time. You could throw
isn't he
him
just
in.
Paredes 2.0?
No, I don't think so. But Baum's a little bit more consistent.
Yeah, but he's a consistent 18 home runs.
Plays better defense. He hit like 290 last year or
Yeah,
280.
so isn't that like what Paredes does?
I don't know if he hits that high. He might back to back seasons and 97 RBIs for Baum. I mean, it's
Yeah,
not
much
bad.
better Phillies lineup,
And
hitting
here's my
behind
worry about
Bryce Harper and and Trey Turner, yeah, you're getting more RBI
And
opportunities.
here's my worry. I like Michael Bush as a player, but I think I mentioned this the last time we were on too. He's just so he I hope he's great, but it's one of those things where last year really was his rookie year. I wonder a little bit if there is a little bit. We're just penciling him in as first base, middle of the order.
Yeah.
What if he does suck? What if he does somehow slump? And that's a big detriment. Like we're just knocking him in as like that. Oop 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 boom. There it is,
Oh, he
guy.
might slump a little bit, but if he was just gonna suck, he would have sucked last year a little bit more. Like he
Right.
has established that he is good.
Yeah.
Like he may not be great, but he is solid. He is serviceable, and I think he proved that well enough last year.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I'm excited. It's going to be a fun season. And again, it's one of those seasons going in. I wouldn't be shocked if the Cubs won 83 games. I wouldn't be shocked if they won 90. They're going to be kind of in that same spot again. You got to have things go right. But I think the division itself is a little bit worse. So I think St. Louis is a little bit worse. I think Milwaukee, but it's winnable. We'll see.
Yeah. All right. I say we should probably just wrap up there,
I'd say
Eric.
so.
Thanks for joining me for this megalodon of an episode. 3.5 hours here. We're going
Woo!
breaking records of longest podcasts ever.
And this is even with full rosters, man. We're in trouble.
Yeah, we are in trouble. Get ready for your 5 hour post draft podcast next time we see you. All right, Eric, thanks for joining me.
Same, man. Good stuff.